Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku's quirk was a game changer part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. So let's start the video. Shatterpoint. It had been a hard week for him. Beyond hard actually, as Aizawa-sensei seemed determined to stick Izuku into any and all situations that involved Bakugo. The green-haired teen couldn't understand why the man was intent on punishing him in such a way, but it was really starting to take a toll on him. It was the week before finals, and Izuku was busy studying for the written part while also still participating in the hero courses as well. He was getting exhausted from trying to cram as much information into his head so he could pass that he was hardly sleeping at all. Then the freckled boy had to deal with his childhood friend every day in any situation presented during class. If there was one word that Izuku had to describe his once friend with, it would be volatile. And it was 10 times worse whenever someone put the freckled boy in the vicinity of the blonde, which meant he was left wondering what the ever-living hell his teachers were thinking when they continually paired him up with the boy for classes. Izuku had lost count on how many times he had been blasted across the course in classes, in fields, and other places whenever he tried to even so much as breathe next to the other. He had tried to work around him then, by hitting the others when Bakugo nowhere near them. He got attacked by the blonde instead, all because he thought Izuku was trying to take the glory for himself. That was the point where he had just sat off to the side of the exercise of the day and watched Bakugo blow up the entire area as he tried to beat whoever they were faced against, though that just got him yelled at by All Might. You can't just leave your partner to face against villains. What would happen if they were deadly injured and you weren't there to cover them? Izuku had just nodded his head and agreed. I'll be better, All Might, I promise. Not that he actually would, but he hated seeing that disappointed look on the older man's face. He knew that the man expected a lot from him since he had taken on one for all, but at the same time you couldn't make someone work with another if they didn't want to. That same day, Aizawa had called him out after classes ended for the day to speak. I was told that you just stood there while Bakugo fought against Ishido and Yaoyorozu. His eyes were darkened with annoyance, and the student could only assume that it was the fact Izuku hadn't tried to work with the blonde. There wasn't a whole lot he could do about the accusation though, because it had been true. Yeah, he bowed his head so that he wouldn't look at the other man. It was silent for a long moment and then a sigh and shuffle of papers. The man must be collecting papers to grade later. Not that Izuku really cared. The man deserved to suffer for making the greenette suffer. An eye for an eye after all. Though he doubted Aizawa-sensei would agree with him. I know that he's hard to work with, but I'm expecting you to be the better person. He grit his teeth at that and kept his head bowed. Do better, problem child. Don't make me force my hand. With that, the teacher left with that ominous statement, and all Izuku could do was grind his teeth and try and figure out how it was him that was always getting scolded and not Bakugo. The blonde was the one who needed to be told off and told to work with others better and to be punished when he didn't. Why was it always Izuku's fault that he was getting blasted across the damn courtyard or building? Why was it his fault that Bakugo couldn't just stop and listen to him and try and control his anger long enough to make a plan to win? Why was it always his fault when the blonde refused to work with him and instead beat him when they should have been working together? Why was it his fault for defending himself against the other? Why did Izuku have to be the bigger person? Why did he have to apologize? Why did he get scolded? Why was it okay to hurt Izuku but not Bakugo? It was all frustrating, and all Izuku could do was stand there, head bowed, fists clenched, and take the scolding even though he was already doing everything he could. He couldn't make Bakugo work with him, and he couldn't make him listen or talk to him. He couldn't make the blonde act like a decent human being. It wasn't his job but the teacher's, so why were they always telling him and making him work with the blonde instead of figuring something else out? Either way, there was nothing he could do to stop the teachers from pairing them up together, or nothing he could do from making them stop scolding him for things he couldn't control. It was like middle school all over again, except worse because now he had a quirk to defend himself. Only he couldn't use it to defend himself. He couldn't stop Bakugo because he, Izuku, would be the one in trouble and not the blonde. Just like in middle school where the teachers always believed Bakugo just because he had a flashy quirk. It was exhausting, and he really didn't have the energy anymore to deal with it. All he wanted to do at this point was drop into general education and let some poor sucker deal with the blonde and leaving him the hell alone. But he wouldn't do that. He had worked too hard for Bakugo knock him out of the hero course by just being himself. He would stick with it and complete his dream. Despite all the haters and all those who had tried to stop him, he would be the best hero he could be and show them all up. With that in mind, he sighed and finally looked up from where he stood in front of the teacher's desk. It was getting late and he needed to go home before his mom began to worry. God, he was so tired. He felt completely frozen as he watched Kirishima's and Sato's battle against 𝗵𝗲𝗄. He wasn't really paying attention to what was happening or how the two were losing horribly at the moment. No, his mind was on his own upcoming battle and how he was going to completely fail this test. There would be no passing it at all because the teachers had followed the same pattern they had the past week. They had put him with Bakugo Katsuki once more. His fate was sealed and there would be no passing. He could feel the exhaustion of depression sinking into his body more and more as the minutes ticked by and more of the battles passed by. His battle would be the very last one of the day. Save the worst and most morbidly entertaining one for last, it seemed, because that's what it was going to be. Amusement for the teachers as Bakugo blasted Izuku away and All Might pounding them into the ground. He didn't respond when each of his friends appeared after their battles before the others left. All he could do was sit there in horror and resignation, knowing that nothing he said would be listened to. Deku, Ochako called to him after her battle with Aoyama. "Hey, are you okay?" she questioned as she touched his arm, only to jerk it back when he jerked so hard that he almost fell off of his seat and into Ida, who was standing behind him. "Midoriya, what's going on?" Ida questioned as he watched with concern as his friend pulled himself away from the speedster. "Nothing, I'm fine," he grunted out as he shook his head. "Just thinking deeply on how to get Kaken to work with me." He sighed as he looked at the two hopelessly. "Looks like you two are going on that camping trip without me." He smiled weakly. The two could only stare at him until he was finally called up to load on the bus with All Might and Bakugo. Neither could think of anything to comfort their friend because they knew that he was right. Izuku just sat quietly on the bus, away from either blonde as he kept to himself. None of his plans would work in this situation. Plans that would get them both safely to the finish gate as long as they worked together. Too bad they wouldn't work together, and it wasn't because of Izuku. He fiddled with his fingers, watching the white gloves twirl with the movement of his hands as he tried to calm himself. His nerves were getting the better of him despite knowing that they were going to fail and that he felt resigned to it. The only reason why they were though was because he still wanted to try. He still wanted to work with Bakugo and beat All Might. He wanted to show that he was adult enough to work with someone difficult and find a way around a villain that was stronger than both of them together. He wanted to prove that he was learning and all the teacher's efforts weren't wasted on him. He wanted to prove himself so bad that he just wanted this all to work out. He wanted Bakugo to listen to him for once in his life and work with him so that they could do this. He just wanted to prove he could be a hero. He gritted his teeth as the bus came to a stop and All Might disappeared into the city to give them the 5 minutes to enter and start either looking for Hero or the exit. Izuku was going to try and use this time to convince the other one more time to work together. "Kaken, listen, I know you want to fight All Might, but..." He started as they took off running into the city, the blonde leading the way. "Neither of us are strong enough to be able to..." He didn't get to finish as a fist slammed into his face, a sharp burning pain adding onto it. Bakugo had used his quirk once more and Izuku forgot what it was like to have that quirk burning into his skin. It had been months since the last time he felt it and he did not miss it at all. "Shut the fuck up, Deku," the teen growled as he glared at the down teen. "I don't need your shitty ass help to take down fucking All Might. I'll take that shitty hero down myself and prove my fucking power." With that he turned on his heel and took off into the city, leaving behind his partner. Izuku ignored the wind that said All Might had appeared and instead laid in the alley the other boy had left him in and stared up at the sky. He was done with this shit. He was so tired and exhausted and his bones felt so heavy that he wasn't sure he could get up and move. Not even the sounds of All Might fighting against Bakugo could rouse him up. Not really fighting actually, more like the younger blonde getting his fucking ass handed to him. That asshat deserved it. He didn't even care that his thoughts had turned angry because it was true. He was angry. He was actually pissed because he finally realized for once what was going on and he was so done being used. Done being used at trying to make Bakugo better. Whether it be a better candidate for getting into you or to try and make Bakugo realize he needed to work with people he could very well hate. And boy did Bakugo hate Izuku. So if the blonde could work with the greenette, then he should be able to work with anyone afterwards. That's what was happening here. He was just being used to make Bakugo better. Either a better human being or a better hero, it didn't matter. He was just being used. "Where are you, young Midoriya?" All Might called out and Izuku didn't bother moving or calling out. There was no point because they had already lost. It didn't even matter that Bakugo didn't want to work with him at this point. No, they could still win even then. But it was because Izuku just couldn't make himself to try anymore. Why try for himself when this wasn't even for him? It was all for Bakugo, just like it always was. So what was the point in him trying when it didn't concern him in any fucking way to begin with? "Your fight is with me," Bakugo cried out somewhere. "Not with that shitty useless fucking Deku." A growl ripped from Izuku's throat at that and he struggled up onto his feet. It was harder than it should be to stand, especially since he wasn't terribly hurt. Just his cheek that had swollen and burned terribly, most likely with second-degree burns. So standing shouldn't have been a problem. But it was because his bones felt weighed down and his spirit felt drowned in turmoil. That is no way to talk about your partner. All Might spoke. They really must have been close by for him to hear them so clearly. Someone must have told All Might where he was located and the number one hero must have directed them to Izuku's area. You must work together if you even want to have a chance at passing. Who the fuck cares about that shit? Oh, he knew where this is going. I can fucking beat the shit out of you and win without that shitty nerd. Oh, that was it. He was done with this shit. He was done playing the teacher's fucking games. He didn't give a goddamn second about disappointing All Might at this point. No, he was just plain fucking done. With that thought, he crouched down and waited until he could hear Bakugo attacking All Might once more before activating his full cowl. With that, he moved along the shadows, stopping whenever he heard the two get a little too close and he needed to move from them. He had experienced disappearing into the shadows from middle school and trying to avoid the explosion boy and his cronies. So hiding in the shadows here and avoiding the two battling individuals was easy. It only got harder when All Might did eventually come after him. Come now, Midoriya, don't you want to save your friend? He wanted to scream at the older man and say he could keep the asshat all he wanted. He kept quiet though and moved silently, pulling on all of his experience at disappearing to the forefront. He really is quite injured. Don't you want to save him? Don't you want to be his hero? Fuck that shit. It would only be worst if the man brought up the slime villain. You going to leave him to the villain, Hero Deku? He narrowed his eyes. All Might was starting to dig deep and was obviously getting desperate for Izuku to show himself. Don't you want to save him like that day of the slime villain? He bit his tongue so hard he could taste blood, and he was sure that he'd need Recovery Girl to heal it to stop him from choking on it later. For now, he just spat the blood out of his mouth and kept moving, which was fine because it was apparent that Bakugo had woken up and renewed his attack on the hero. Fuck you. Izuku rolled his eyes as he took this chance to speed up. He knew the gate was up ahead and he wasn't going to care anymore. He was going to fucking get the hell out of here and be done with this test. The consecutive explosions was his quest and he took off at full speed, leaping across the top of the buildings and then launched himself right through the gates. He didn't stop running though when he heard that little voice announcing their victory. Instead, he kept running. He knew the way back to the tents where Recovery Girl and the others were all waiting. He wasn't going to ride a bus back with a pissed-off Bakugo Katsuki and a disappointed All Might. He was panting by the time he got to the tent, but he made it long before either of the blondes even had a chance to realize what he had done. But that didn't stop Aizawa from being there waiting for him with a glare on his face and his capture weapon flaring around him. His quirk wasn't activated, but that didn't make the sight any less terrifying. Too bad Izuku was too pissed off to give a flying fuck. You passed, Aizawa growled lowly, but you just cost the life of your partner in his own passing grade. Izuku snarled, ignoring the blood leaking from the corners of his mouth, angrily as his quirk flared back to life around him. Then you should have put him with someone fucking else. He spat out. Blood spatter from his mouth and landed at the teacher's feet. How fucking stupid are you to put me with him when you know he won't listen? It's to make the two of you to work together, to make you better. Aizawa started, watching the teen warily and prepared to activate his quirk if needed. Bullshit. Izuku cut off, startling the teacher even more. The boy had never cut off anyone like that with such a tone before. It was like he was projecting Bakugo at the moment. It's to make Bakugo better. It's to make him better, not me. I can work with anyone and apprehend the villain. This was about making that fucking jackass realize he has to work with others to win. This had nothing to fucking to do with me. Silence in the tent as everyone stared at the panting teen, watching as he spat globs of blood. Midoriya, Aizawa started, raising a hand slowly into the air as if to calm a wild animal. That's not true, he began but stopped as a crackle of lightning warned him to stop right there. What was I supposed to learn? Izuku questioned with narrowed eyes. What was it that I was supposed to learn from this farce of a test? To work with young Bakugo, All Might said sternly as he entered the tent, said teen limping and right behind him. This was to show that the two of you could work together and prove how much you've grown. The man met the glare the greenette sent at him with disappointed eyes. And you have proven how much you are still just a child. The punch he got to the face was completely surprising and the power behind it as well. It sent him stumbling backwards in surprise and blinking at the snarling boy. He had never once seen the boy so upset in all the time he had known him. I'm still the fucking child here. Izuku glared at the two adults, ignoring how his classmates were whispering around them, ignoring how Ochako and Todoroki were all trying to come up close to calm him. He sent glares that stopped him cold. He turned back to the adults as he started up again. I fucking tried to work with him. I tried all week and in the months before this shit show. I can't make someone do shit when they don't fucking want to. Then you should have worked around that. Aizawa shrugged at his matter-of-fact statement. Most heroes had to do that amongst themselves before. Most heroes had to do that when Endeavor was involved. I already fucking tried that and you wanna know what he did? He questioned as his finger pointed at the snarling blonde. Only being held back by Kirishima. He fucking attacked me before he thought I was trying to take his glory. He spat again, the glob of blood annoying this time as his tongue stung from where he had bitten it. He fucking attacked me and he didn't get punished at all. I was just told to work with him. Tears were now starting to blue his vision and he was starting to feel that tightening in his chest telling of a panic attack and then the exhaustion of dealing with the blonde and all of this shit show. He just wanted to go home and hide in his bed and just not come out anymore. This was just pure torture now. This wasn't for me. This wasn't a test for me, and this shit has never been for my betterment. He remembered all the shit he had been through this week, working with Bakugo or get his ass handed to him the entire time. This is about making Bakugo a better hero, making him the center of this shitty place. Hua had been his dream school, even if the other had been there. He still wanted to be here to learn and become a hero. He wanted to help people, especially those who were quirkless and told that they couldn't because they didn't have a quirk. He wanted to help those who were him in a way that still ate away at him even now. Stop using me. I'm not a fucking tool to make that fucking piece of shit better. I'm here to learn to be a hero and I'm willing to learn. But I fucking won't be used to make this asshat a better person. I won't do your job for you. Tears were falling down his face now and his tongue was really starting to hurt as the adrenaline from his run was fading. His cheek was burning and he knew that it was most like blistered now. He wanted to go home. He wanted his mom. He wanted to hide in his bed. He just wished this had never happened. It seems that we've miscalculated, 𝗫𝗠 said as he stepped forward, watching as the green-suited teen fell to his knees and curled into himself. No one approached him though as his quirk still crackled around him warningly. We seem have done you quite the disservice, Mr. Midoriya. Izuku said nothing as he fought to bring himself back under control. He's had many panic attacks, so he knew the tactics to bring himself out of one. But there was nothing he would be able to do about the exhaustion claiming his body. Fucking Deku is just faking it. Bakugo barked at them, bringing the attention onto him and where he was still in the rock-hard hold of his red-headed classmate. He did this shit when we were younger for attention. Fury roared through his veins, and that gave him energy to shoot back up and get into the blonde's face. The blood dripping from his mouth and the cracking of his cheek must have been terrifying because Bakugo could only stand there and stare at him in surprise. Fucking say that again, I dare you, he hissed angrily. That knocked the blonde back into the present and he snarled right back. You fucking faked all that shit for attention. He smirked, believing he had won, only to jerk his head back as Izuku shoved his face forward and pointed at his cheek. So I fucking slammed my face into your fist for shits and giggles? He questioned with glowing eyes. His power was increasing at his anger and All Might was starting to worry that he would push past his limit and harm not just himself, but everyone here. Should have stayed the fuck out of my way, shitty nerd. Was barked at him. I was trying to fucking help you. Izuku was having enough. Nothing he said was getting through this blonde and he was so done trying to help him. He didn't want to help him anymore and he didn't want to be manipulated into helping him. It just wasn't worth it anymore. I've always been trying to fucking help you, but all I got are shitty scars and jacked up bruises and fucking pain for it. Then stay in your place. My place is fucking helping people while you deserve to be nothing but a fucking villain, you piece of shit. That made Bakugo break free of Kirishima and the entire class scrambled to pull the blonde and green-haired teens apart. It wasn't until All Might was able to grab a hold of Izuku by the biceps and Aizawa had Bakugo wrapped in his capture weapon that anything calmed down. That's enough. Aizawa glared at the two, staring at a still raging Bakugo and a suddenly limp and lifeless Midori. He sent a worried look for the teen before turning his full attention onto Bakugo. They all knew Midoriya's control had gotten better, but it was better safe than sorry. He could see a bleeding nose and several forming bruises on the other's face and most like other places. But he was breathing easily and moved without restraint, so he assumed that there weren't any broken limbs. He then turned back to Midoriya, who still wasn't moving despite being settled down onto his knees and released. He could see several holes in his costume where bright red burns had already formed and his cheek had swollen and cracked greatly. He was surprised the boy could talk with the amount of blood leaking from his mouth. Worst of all though, Midoriya just looked defeated. He turned to Bakugo with a glare. Stop it. This is enough, he stated before turning the boy to face his beaten down classmate. Look at him, Bakugo, and tell me he is faking that. Tell me. Bakugo had stopped moving but said nothing. No one said anything. Not even Midoriya when All Might kneeled next to him with a hand on his shoulder and 𝗫𝗠, who was standing in front of him, looking up at his face with his paws behind his back. Go home, you're all dismissed, Aizawa said as he released the explosive boy as most of the teachers began to usher the students out of the tent. Those still injured can see recovery girl at the infirmary in the school. With that he turned back to Midoriya with only All Might and 𝗫𝗠 with them. Midoriya, All Might questioned, giving his shoulder a small shake. 𝗫𝗠 stopped him a second later with a raised paw. He was at the perfect height to see the blank and dead-looking eyes the boy had hidden behind his long curly bangs. That will not do anything for him, Toshinori. Is he having an attack? Aizawa questioned as he slouched forward, hands shoved into his pockets. He looked the teen over with tired and worried eyes. Do we need to have recovery girl look at him? He will be looked at either way. Bakugo didn't hold back on his blasts. The principal pointed at the burns that were now black and cracking. It was obvious third-degree burns, and they were lucky the boy wasn't screaming ... or well. Unlucky he wasn't at the moment. Mr. Midoriya, can you hear me? Can you understand me? It was silent for what seemed hours, but was only really minutes before the boy spoke up. It wasn't something they thought they would ever hear from the boy. "I want to transfer, young Midoriya," All Might exclaimed in clear horror as he stared at the boy, who was looking at Nezu with dead-looking eyes. "You worked so hard to get into UA and you just want to leave? What's the point of staying in a school where I'm only being used to better another student?" he questioned without turning to the blonde. He kept his eyes on Nezu instead, knowing that if he wanted the transfer then he needed the principal to approve it. "I want to be a hero." His voice cracked as tears began to fall down his face once more. "I don't want it to be a punching bag aga again," he cried as he brought a hand up and rubbed at his face, hissing at the pain of his injured cheek. Blood and pus from the burn began to run down it, but he ignored the stinging of tears running into the open wounds. Nezu watched the boy for a long time, watching as All Might tried to comfort and as Aizawa looked away. He didn't think the two realized the grave error that they had all made concerning the two boys, both thinking they were still in the right, but he could see it. He could see the damage to a boy that had been through too much at the hand of another for too long. "How long has Bakugo been abusing you?" he questioned. That startled the boy to stare at him in surprise, jaw dropping. Apparently no one had realized what the connection between the two had been before now. Not even All Might or Aizawa, from the looks on their faces, which was really sad. Midoriya looked back down at the ground as he answered. "It started when we were 4. The two heroes stared in horror and Nezu could only sigh in disappointment. "If anything is to be done, Midoriya, then it should be Bakugo being expelled from UA." Aizawa expected the Greenette to raise his head and protest against that, but when he didn't, he finally realized the damage that had been done. Midoriya was one of those that would fight for another because he saw the good in them, but when he stopped fighting for that, then you knew something was wrong. "Midoriya, do you want Bakugo's expulsion?" he questioned. The teen shrugged his shoulders as he didn't look at any of them. "My boy, do you really wish to end young Bakugo's career here?" All Might asked seriously. "From the way he assaulted you, which I'm sure is on camera, we could have him expelled," he assured the boy, knowing that at this point he couldn't cheer him up. All he could do was be there for this decision. I know ... No, he can be great," Midoriya finally said as he wrapped his arms around himself for comfort. "He'll always been strong." He gulped as he looked at Nezu, not ready to face his two teachers who had been there to see the abuse of Bakugo and hardly did anything to deter it. Yes, they saw it and spoke to the blonde about it, but they hadn't really stopped it. It was mostly Izuku being told to handle it and deal with it and work with the blonde. He knew it wasn't really the blonde's fault for the failure to punish him for his attitude and treatment of his classmates. I don't want to take this away from him. There are other things that can be done other than expulsion," Nezu assured. "I do not want you to transfer from UA. You have such potential and possibilities that I think we can open up if we would just take the time to focus on you." His eyes snapped to All Might and Aizawa accordingly. "Give UA another chance, and if you are still miserable, then I will make sure you get into whatever hero school of your choosing." It would be a great loss, but he didn't want Midoriya to stop wanting to be a hero. There was too much at stake for him to do that now. Izuku sniffled as he looked back at the principal before speaking. What other ways are there? What'll happen to Bakugo?" he questioned. He wasn't going to make this decision lightly and just based on words. He wanted action taken now before he believed anything anymore. He was done just trusting. Nezu's eyes glinted in approval before he spoke. "Bakugo will start going to mandatory anger management classes, and he will also be participating in the mandatory classes during the camping trip," he assured the boy. "You will be trading seats with Kirishima and no longer be paired with Bakugo in any way, shape, or form." Aizawa spoke up next. "If he tries to go after you, I want you to go to a teacher immediately and he will be suspended. He'll get 3 chances before he gets expelled." The teen looked at them for a long time, wondering if he should believe anything they said or not. He had been hurt for so long by the blonde and everyone around him take that teen's side. He couldn't help but hate how it was always Bakugo they took the side of. It was at that point where he expected no one to take his side at all. It hurt to have that thought process. It made him exhausted and tired and not wanting to try. He was tired of trying and just being proven wrong again and again and again. He wasn't going to believe them. Not until they actually did what they were saying. "Prove it," he stated finally with a heavy sigh as he met Nezu's eyes straight on. It would be the principal he talked to right now as he was the one with the most power here. He wasn't going to believe the other two as they had proven how untrustworthy they really were. Nezu hadn't done anything to him and had this chance to prove himself to Izuku. "Prove what you say with actions." He clenched his teeth as the tears started up again and his shoulders shook with exhaustion and sorrow. The faculty could only watch as this teen, a 15-year-old kid, broke down from having the world on his shoulders and constant abuse for 11 years. A child that was failed in every way possible. "I will follow through, Mr. Midoriya. Do not worry," Nezu assured calmly. "There is something I want from you in return." Izuku stared at the rat dog bear thing for long moments, trying to decide what it possibly be that he wanted. What? He rasped out between sobs and gasps. I want you to see a therapist that you will pay for, was the demand. I would also like to speak with your mother. The teen didn't even care at this point and just nodded his head. He would see that therapist, but he wanted to see Bakugo in those classes first and punishments doled out when the blonde attacked him in any shape or form. He would only then do that. Apparently Nezu understood this and nodded his head. We will make this better, Mr. Midoriya. All I ask is that you give us that chance to do so. He was just so tired and fed up with everything. He really was, and he didn't want to believe in the principal, but at the same time he didn't want to leave you or get Bakugo expelled. He just wanted to go to bed and sleep for a century. So he just nodded his head in agreement as he curled back into himself and swallowed the blood pooling in his mouth once more. God, he just wanted to go to bed. It wasn't until he was curled in his bed, healed by Recovery Girl, and plied with copious amounts of katsudon from his mother that he realized something that broke something deep in his heart. He hadn't thought or called Bakugo Katsuki as Kaken the entire day. SBA. There you go. Another one shot that I've had on my mind for like ever and finally wrote down. I think a lot of what they did to Izuku wasn't really fair, especially concerning Bakugo. Really, it's just not fair. I don't condone bullying and abuse of any sort and know if you are then reach out of help. You aren't alone and more people will be more than happy to help. I would like everyone to think about some of the authors on fanfiction that died recently or a while ago. Some of them died in tragic accidents or illnesses and have left stories unfinished or had others finish them for them in memory. I would like everyone reading this to lower their heads, clasp their hands together and pray for those who have been lost. Allow there to be a moment of silence for wherever you, the reader, are, and remember not just the writers here on this site but those who have been lost in your life or in tragic events. Please remember that life is short and that you should love those in your life while you can and show your appreciation for what comes into your life. Again, thanks to those who have lost their lives for spreading inspiration through their works. Groundbreaking. He was already sitting at his desk by the time Ida showed up. He didn't say anything to the other boy, just nodded his head and then settled back against his arms and watched the front of the room. He didn't raise his head again as the others started to enter the class. He would nod his head at the greetings of the others, cautious and wary of his reaction to them if they overstepped themselves in some way. Most had seen his fit after the finals and now were unsure of how to treat him. Izuku knew he should have expected the tiptoeing from the others, but it didn't mean he didn't hate it any less. He made sure to bury his face into his arms when Bakugo sat in front of him with a snarl, but he was just going to ignore the blonde. He wanted to see if Aizawa would keep his end of the bargain or not. If he didn't, then it was just another teacher that he shouldn't trust and that he needed to keep his eyes on and distance far. Just like in middle school, he breathed deeply when he felt a hand touch his hair and ruffle it gently. The hand was colder than it probably should have been for a normal human, so he knew it was Todoroki. He ignored it just like he was ignoring the growling from in front of him. It seemed like eternity before the final bell rang and Aizawa slammed the door open to the class. He listened to the man step up to the front of the room and could feel those eyes land on him. He didn't look up. Kirishima switched places with Midoriya. Oh, yeah, sure, the redhead said slowly, and Izuku stood up, taking his bag with him as he went and sat behind Kaminari instead. He settled his head back on his arms and hid his face from those around him. He didn't want to look around at anyone at the moment. He didn't think he could bear it. You all did well during your finals, Aizawa stated as he looked at the group. Those of you who didn't pass will attend summer school and supplementary classes to help you catch up with the others. Hope you guys have fun without us. Ashido cried out, and he could imagine the tears falling from her eyes. We'll make sure to study hard, so have fun for us, Kaminari stated next from in front of him. You'll have to tell us how it went when you get back, Kirishima said with a slight shake to his voice. The thumbs up to the class Izuku didn't even need to visually see to get. With that said, Aizawa said as his eyes roved over the class, ignoring how the problem child was keeping his face hidden. You'll all be going with to the summer camp, including those who failed the finals. No way, the failed students exclaimed in excitement. You'll all be expected to work hard and improve during this time. Don't disappoint us, he stated with a scowl at the class. You are meant to be the next generation of heroes, and that means being the best you possibly can be. Don't slack now and push forward harder than ever. He glared at all the excited grins before sighing and running a hand over his eyes. With that said, you are dismissed. Bakugo, stay after class. We have to go and talk to Principal Nezu. Izuku was the first out the door. He wasn't intent on staying behind and talking to anyone. Not like he could even if he wanted to. The room was dark and he was leaning against the wall while sitting on his bed. A pillow was hugged to his chest and he stared down at his phone with a blank face. Deku. 𝗲𝗄𝗧𝗏, will you come to the mall with the rest of us? 𝗲𝗄𝗧𝗏, we're getting supplies for the camp. 𝗲𝗄𝗧𝗏, yes, it would not be the same without you, Midoriya. 𝗲𝗄𝗧𝗏, come and join in our preparations. Frozen fire, I won't be making it. I'll be visiting my mother. Frozen Fire. You'll have to go and enjoy the time at the mall for me. Earphone Jack. Though I don't know if Bakugo is coming. Kirishima hasn't said if he is yet or not. 𝗏𝗧𝗏. It could be rather dangerous if the two of them were to clash at the mall. 𝗬𝗏𝗏. Then we help Deku. He never starts the fights and normally he just takes it. 𝗬𝗏𝗏. How is Bakugo bullying him his fault? 𝗏𝗏𝗏. I never said it was his fault. I just worry about the repercussions on if they both decide to come. Red Riot. Doesn't matter anyways. 𝗵𝘃𝗲 isn't coming. Says he already has everything he needs for the camp. So it should be fine for 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏 to come with. Pikachu. That'd be great. Pikachu. Hey. Who changed my nickname? Red Riot. Don't know. Red Riot. I do want to know why Aizawa-sensei made me and Midoriya change seats though. He hasn't had a problem with them sitting near each other before. 𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏. It's about time he did something. 𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗧. Midoriya should not have had to suffer for as long as he has because of Bakugo's poor decision making. Frozen Fire. I don't think the teachers really saw it that way. Frozen Fire. I think they were just like that. Frozen Fire. Though it is sad that it took this long for them to do something. 𝗵𝘃𝗲. They should have done something after that first battle class. 𝗵𝘃𝗲. Ribbit. 𝗵𝘃𝗲. They just let Bakugo do as he wanted without repercussions. Red Riot. He was just trying to show how manly he was. 𝗵𝘃𝗲. No, he was trying to show who the dominant one was. 𝗵𝘃𝗲. Don't you remember that attack he used against Midori near the end? Frozen Fire. Almost took Midoriya's arm off. 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏. More like almost killed him. 𝗵𝘃𝗲. Either way, something should have been done by the teachers, and when they didn't, we should have. Pikachu. We kinda just stood around and let Bakugo do whatever he wanted though. Red Riot. Uraraka has stood up for him a lot though. Red Riot. As has Todoroki, Iida, and Tsuyu. 𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏. I cannot condone such treatment of a classmate, let alone one of my good friends. 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏. Yeah. 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏. Deku is my friend and he deserves better. 𝗵𝘃𝗏𝗏. Though he was really quiet today in class. 𝗵𝘃𝗏𝗏. Did he say anything at all? 𝗵𝘃𝗏𝗏. Ribbit. 𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Now that you mention it. 𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. All he did today was nod at me when I greeted him. Red Riot. He just nodded to me too. Red Riot. I didn't get that 10,000-watt smile I normally do. Earphone Jack. He kept his head down most of the time too. 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. He was not the same. 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. I believe he is still suffering from the finals. 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. He hasn't even talked on the chat either. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. He's normally one of the first ones on our chat as well. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Should we be worried for him? Frozen Fire. Give him some time. Frozen Fire. A lot happened at the finals and I don't think it'll be good to push him at the moment. 𝗵𝘃𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Todoroki is right. 𝗵𝘃𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Ribbit. 𝗵𝘃𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 has agreed to help as well at night. Pikachu, all right, Pikachu, I'll help out as well. Earphone Jack, we'll tell the others to keep an eye on him too. Earphone Jack, we'll all need to work together to make sure he's all right. Creaty, we'll need to keep Bakugo away from him though. Frozen Fire, agreed. Gravity, all right, the make sure Class 1A's cinnamon roll is okay is now underway. Froppy, he really is like a cinnamon roll, isn't he? Izuku sighed as he allowed his body to fall to the side, dropping his phone on his bed and burying his face into his pillow. He was too tired for this shit. GB. He stared at the rice in front of him, ignoring the scrambled eggs and miso soup. He wasn't particularly hungry, but he knew he had to eat to help keep some of his mother's worry down. He was already making her worry more than ever since after the finals, but he couldn't really help it. He had no trust in the teachers at the moment. Even after he had switched seats and confirmation of Bakugo's enrollment and anger management had come, it meant nothing. His mother hadn't received a call and no appointment had been set for Izuku to see a therapist. He wondered if Nezu had been telling the truth about that or if that had been an empty promise. Izuku, dear. He lifted his head to stare at him mother, tilting his head to the side. Are you sure you want to go on this trip? She fidgeted with her chopsticks as she looked him in the eye. He could see the fear and worry for him there, and he knew that she would sign him off the trip if he made it clear he didn't want to go. All Might would find a way to train him if he decided he wanted to stay home instead. He ended up sighing and nodding his head instead. He was already acting weird, his classmates having already noticed from that last class. He couldn't not go or it would just rile the entire class up and worry the teachers. He really didn't feel like dealing with that. She nodded her head and gave a small smile. Okay, just know that if you want to come home, all you have to do is let me know. I don't care if I have to drive up there and get you. The look in her eyes reminded him just how much he loved his mother, and he couldn't stop the small smile on his face even if he tried. He was so happy that he had his mother there with him. GB, he was really tempted to stay home now. His breathing was ragged and his throat throbbed with pain as he held it, shaking heavily as he curled forward into himself. He had ended up going to the mall with the others, though he had separated from them almost immediately to get some distance from them. He knew they were already worried about him and he didn't really feel like giving them any more reason to worry. though, after Uraraka had seen him sitting on that bench with Shigaraki sat next to him, he felt that was going to be inevitable at this point. He kept his lips sealed as Uraraka fretted over him, her voice high-pitched as she talked to the police on the other end. He really just wanted her to stop touching him, but she wouldn't. She was continually patting his shoulders and arms and head, checking for injuries. That made it harder for him to breathe as he wasn't given the space to try and calm down. He clenched his eyes shut as he tried to regulate his breathing, but he couldn't get control over it. Tears falling down his cheeks. He struggled to gain control again, but his mind wasn't cooperating with him. All it was doing was replaying times of when he was held against walls by his neck and heat radiated from the hands holding him. The pain of fists colliding with his stomach and the feeling of burns decimating skin ran through his mind. He whimpered soundlessly as his breathing turned into hyperventilating as more hands began to touch him, ones at his neck and wrists, and the back of one on his forehead. It was all too much. He welcomed the darkness that overtook him. He woke in a hospital, his mother at his bedside with crochet hook and a halfway done hat in her hands. He blinked as he looked at her, wondering why he was there in the first place. Then his neck throbbed. His hand instantly moved towards the pain, feeling bandages under his fingertip instead of skin. His eyes caught sight of an IV in the back of his hand a second afterwards. "Oh, you're awake," 𝐭 cried out as she threw her crocheting to the side and stood up, grabbing his hand and pulling it away from his neck. "You had me worried sick, Izuku," she exclaimed with wet eyes. He blinked at her and tilted his head to the side. His chest felt heavy and his mind was foggy as he took in the sight of tears falling from his mother's eyes. Though that wasn't anything new, the paleness to her skin was. "You were attacked at the mall, honey," she explained as calmly as she could. Izuku blinked at that, accepting the hand that had settled in his hair and ran through the curls. He couldn't really remember a whole lot except for burning pain and screams of terror. "That nasty villain, Shigaraki, apparently had you by the neck and gave you some bruises. You'll be okay, but your throat is going to be sore for a while. You'll also feel tired from the panic attack you had." His eyes widened as the memories came back to him. He felt a cold sweat break over his skin as he remembered the fingers around his neck, one just away from disintegrating him to the afterlife. "It'll be okay, Izuku. You're safe now," 𝐭 assured as she squeezed his hand in hers and continued to run her hand through his hair gently. Izuku gulped but nodded his head, wondering if that was really true or a platitude for herself. Either way, he soaked up the comfort from his mother and ignored the tears that fell down his face from the panic and fear radiating through his body. He dug out fresh notebooks after the mall incident. He needed to keep his mind off of the conversation with the villain the best he could, and so decided he would work on notes for all of his classmates and then all of his teachers and then move on to some of the other heroes he knew about. He just needed a distraction, and analyzing heroes was what he did best after all. He spent most of his days before the camp just writing in his notebooks. He drew pictures of each of his classmates carefully so that they were recognizable to anyone who read them. He hoped to keep them from villains, but Bakugo had already been able to grab one already, so he wrote them in code instead. He wanted to write about his classmates, not give villains a chance to use the information against them if he ever lost it. His mom left him be most of the time, knowing that this was his way of coping with the stress and anxiety and all the other emotions that were tearing him apart. She would ask questions about what he was doing, and he would show her and tap against places for specifics if she wanted. She knew his code almost better than he did sometimes, and so had no problem reading his notes. After a while, she would sit with him though and let him lean against her when he wanted. She also allowed them to eat in the living room so that he could continue to lean against her during meals, and would let him settle his head in her lap and hide his face in her stomach. She would stroke his hair when he did this, and he'd wake up with a blanket over him at some point during the night, tucked in and warm. Man, he really loved his mom. The day for them to leave for the summer camp came, and Izuku wasn't sure how he felt about it. He was excited to train and become stronger. He was scared that he would just be used to improve the others. He was eager to see who would be there. He was scared he'd be treated like crap. He gulped as he sat in a chair, Todoroki taking the outside seat a second later. The greenette sighed in relief as the half-and-half quirk user did so, knowing that the other would understand when he didn't respond to him. If anyone knew what abuse was like, it would be Todoroki Shoto. With that, he pulled out the third notebook he had begun when he started his note spree, carefully accentuating Jiro's eyes as she glared out of his book at him. He had already gotten the outline done, but now he wanted to start on the actual details of her hero costume before he started on the actual notes. Todoroki glanced at the notebook, but said nothing. The half-and-half boy soon grew weary as he leaned back against the seat and his eyes began to droop. Izuku used his yellow backpack to keep the other propped up and out of his way while he drew. "Hey, what are you doing there, Deku?" Uraraka questioned as she looked over the seat. She was sitting behind the two boys with Tsuyu and had decided to try and get the boy to talk to her. Izuku glanced up from where he was just finishing Jiro's boots, making sure the speakers were visible. He moved the notebook so she could look at it and got a gasp in return. "Oh wow, that really does look like J.I.R.O. she exclaimed, gaining the attention of several of the others' attention and startling Todoroki awake. What about me now? Said current model questioned as she looked over from where she was sitting next to Yaoyorozu. Deku drew a really good picture of you. It looks just like you when you're in your hero costume. The gravity girl explained with a wide smile. You'll have to see it when we come to a stop. I see. I can't wait, she said with a smile at Izuku, who gave an unsure one back before turning back to his notebook. He listened to the girls behind him chat and then listened as the boy next to him fell asleep again. He didn't look up from where he was now writing down copious notes about Earphone Jack, making sure to write down all of his thoughts and observations about her. That included her personality, likes and dislikes, abilities, and then notes on how she could possibly improve on them. That took up several pages worth, and then he had moved on to Zero. He really only had 7 of his classmates left, and that would most likely finish off this notebook. That is what he did the entire bus ride as well, writing notes on his classmates and drawing their pictures from memory. It's several hours later when they came to a stop, and he had just started on the drawing for Tokoyami's page when the bus came to a stop. He looked down and smiled at the half-started bird head with sharp feathers and a sharp beak. Tokoyami was a good friend and would be a fantastic hero, so having ideas might come in handy later if he ever had the courage to show the boy his notebook, though he doubted he ever would. Not after the explosion when Izuku had shown Bakugo his own profile back in middle school. He didn't want to be called a creeper or a stalker again. Thank you very much. All right, get off, Aizawa said and watched as each student rose and moved off of the bus. His eyes narrowed though when he noticed that Todoroki and Midoriya had yet to move at all. It was only once everyone else was off the bus, mostly Bakugo, that the two stood and moved to leave themselves. He held a hand out and stopped the problem child from getting off the bus, glaring at Todoroki. We'll be right off. Go, he ordered sternly. The teen looked unsure, looking to Midoriya. Izuku shrugged before nodding his head. He would follow the other off soon enough. Once the other boy was off the bus, he looked at the teacher with a blank look in his eyes and waited. Aizawa looked the teen over, taking in the details that he could pick up with narrowed eyes. The boy had lost weight. Not a significant amount, but he was going to make sure he ate while they were here. Then there was the pale skin and the dark bags under his eyes. It was obvious the boy was exhausted and he wasn't about to allow him go with the others. The teen would stay with him. You will stay right next to me the entire time. Do not leave my side. Izuku's eyes narrowed before he let out a huff of air and nodded. Aizawa watched him for a few more seconds before nodding and moving aside so the other could climb off the bus. Only once the both of them were off did the wild pussycats make their appearance. Izuku watched as they introduced themselves and then blinked as his class was sent flying off of the cliff and down into the forest. He looked at Aizawa, wondering why his teacher hadn't sent him with the others. He was sure that the whole point of this was to make sure he and his classmates got stronger during this camp, so why was he being held back from this? Yo, Eraserhead, how's it going? Mandalay questioned as she approached the teacher, Pixie Bob right behind her. Fine, he grunted as he tilted his head. We should get going if we want to be there when they reach the training grounds. Yep, that's the plan, Pixie Bob agreed before her eyes fell to the smaller green-haired teen with curious eyes. Why'd you keep this one? Izuku looked at his teacher, waiting to hear the answer even as he felt a slight relief of pressure from his chest. He wasn't sure he could handle being around Bakugo just yet, not after everything that had been happening lately. Not when the other teen was obviously going to be using his quirk. He could hear it from here, faint as it was, and didn't want to think about how loud the sound would be closer to the blonde. It brought up bad memoirs, and he shuddered as the fear it provoked in him. He's not in good condition to work with the other students at the moment, Aizawa stated as he moved his hands in a pattern that Izuku recognized immediately. What do you want me to tell them? The greenette stared in surprise before looking up at his teacher, wondering when the other had figured it out. The man raised a brow before moving his hands again. Not hard to figure out, but I also called your mother. She explained what was happening. I learned sign language a while back. Present Mike is deaf, was explained. Izuku sighed before he signed back. Tell them whatever, since I don't even know why you kept me here either. He's currently mute at the moment and his classmates don't know. Only one of them knows sign language, and it wouldn't be helpful if he couldn't communicate with them. Aizawa shrugged his shoulders at the disbelief and doubt. He'll be riding with us either way, so let's get moving. GB, that little brat deserved what Izuku did to him. He scoffed as he looked down at his book, taking in Todoroki's face that was half lit in flames and then half frosted over. He was starting on the body of his subject next as his mind went over the meeting with 𝗏𝗏. The little brat had been introduced to him and the two had looked at each other for a long moment, neither saying anything. He had been lucky when he saw the shift of the kid's feet and knew that he was about to get kicked, so he had swiped the brat's feet from underneath him and then walked away. He had determinedly ignored the snort from Aizawa and the yelling of the pussycats. He was only defending himself from being kicked in the dick and balls, something he'd rather not suffer from. Now he sat several yards away from the forest, notebook open as he continued to work on his notes. He was going to be there to greet the others as they arrived. It also meant that he could stand the hell away from Class 1B as they moved around the building and training area with Vlad King yelling at them to finish the preparations for that night's meal. It annoyed him that they had to deal with the annoyance that was Monoma the entire camp. Most of the copycats class was okay, but the blonde rubbed him wrong, just like Bakugo did. He'd have to make a notebook on that class as he learned about their quirks and skill levels. He growled when he felt footsteps coming his way, warning whoever it was to stay the ever-living hell away from him. Cool it Midoriya. Izuku couldn't help but blink in surprise when the man sat next to him, arms tossed over his bent knees as he watched the forest with the teen. They had arrived just as 1B had made it to the camp after a long night of traversing the forest, and he had been talking with the teacher of that class for a while now. So having the man come and sit with him is a little worrying. He looks at the man from the corner of his eye before turning back towards his notebook, embellishing a part of Todoroki's costume from his memory of the boys' finals with Momo. It was a much better improvement than what his first design had been. What had the boy been thinking by making half his body covered in ice with that creepy cyborg-like red eye? Neither teacher nor student talk for a long while, but then Aizawa leans over towards him and looks into the notebook, raising a brow when he sees half the body of Endeavor's son. It was intricate and very detailed, not to mention lifelike on all accounts. That's a really good depiction. Do you just draw all of your classmates? He questions. Izuku knows that the others know about his notebooks and the notes he's taken on other heroes, so he's sure that Aizawa most likely knows about them too. That begs the question of why the teacher is questioning him about them though. He shrugs in the end as he flips back to the start of the book and shows Aizawa the depiction of Aoyama and then the coded text that follows a good 3 pages after before going to Ashido. He sets the book on his lap as he moves his hands quickly, hearing explosions somewhere in the forest that's still too far for Wana to be anywhere near close yet. Their notes on everyone, abilities, weaknesses, strengths, ideas on strengthening them all around, how to combat them if I fight them. Aizawa nods his head along, his eyes roving over the text, as if he can read them. Good job coding them. With how often your class is attacked by villains, this'll keep pertinent information from being used if this falls into the wrong hands. I've burnt all the other ones I had, he informs morosely, head falling to the side. All that hard work before I realized how detrimental it was to keep such things. Aizawa chuckles at that before he falls serious. It's true it was dangerous to keep that information, but you've learned and have changed it so that it won't harm anyone. I assume only you know how to decipher this. He hesitates for a moment before he replies. There's actually 2 people who know his code as he created this back when he was just a child. It was supposed to be a secret way for communication. With one other person, he scrunches his nose up at the memory before sighing and answering. My mother and Bakugo. He turns back to his book as he returns to Todoroki's page, continuing on his drawing of his friend. He was hesitant to call the other that after all the other had put him through at the sports festival. His change was too fast and too sudden. Much like Bakugo's had been back in daycare. He'd have to wait and see if Todoroki's attitude changed again before he made a final decision on him. Just to be safe, I came to talk to you for a reason, his teacher finally states, but Izuku doesn't turn to him. He makes sure the other knows he's listening, but otherwise he continues to work on his current profile. I was against you coming on this trip. That makes him pause in a stroke before continuing. He wished he could say he was surprised, but he really isn't. Aizawa had always told them that he would expel them the first sign of any potential disappearing in them. To know he would refuse a student on a trip because of a mental hiccup didn't really come as a huge surprise in that respect, especially after your mother called and told us what was going on. I felt it best that you stay back in the town to start your therapy sessions. He can hear the scowl in the other's voice. Nezu and All Might ... They believe it would be best to give you the chance to see we are invested in your growth, not just the others. That made sense. Izuku nodded along with that thought process, though he wasn't sure how this talk was meant to go in making him realize that. He had a feeling Aizawa wasn't even supposed to tell him that in the first place. I wasn't supposed to tell you that. He snorted before continuing on, ignoring the smirk that fell on the teen's face. But I felt we have done enough to jeopardize the trust you had in us, so I'm being upfront with you now. I want you to return home and recuperate before the next term starts. That makes him pause once more, staring down at where he had just started on a hand that would be engulfed with flames. He sets his pencil down and settles the notebook down as well before looking up at his teacher. He couldn't really say what the man saw in his eyes, but he hoped it would be a fire and anger and determination and hatred and strength. The two look at each other for long moments before the man sighs and runs a hand over his face in exhaustion. Izuku could sympathize. Fine then. He nods as he falls back on the grass, Izuku watching with curious eyes as his teacher settles there with his head pillowing on his arms even as he looks up at the sky. You'll be training with me and me alone. The Pussycats can handle the rest of the class. We'll start here in a few minutes, so finish what you're doing. He blinks in surprise at that, unsure of what to think for long moments before shrugging and returning to his notebook. Maybe it was just Aizawa wanting to keep Izuku away from the others for a while, to show he could pay the teen attention he needed to get better, or just keep him away from Bakugo. Either way, it wouldn't matter in the end. It would only occur here and then he would be left on his own again. Just like always. E.g., why the fuck was Deku not sent through that shit? Is the first thing Izuku hears from one as they appear from the forest. They're all covered in dirt, twigs, leaves, and mud. Many of them are scuffed up with bruises and cuts but otherwise walking along fine. Izuku himself had just taken a hit from Aizawa from their sparring match that didn't include quirks but just skills. The teen had his ass handed to him so many times, he lost count. Like he just did now, and that was why he was on the ground, staring at the blonde from the ground even as he approached with a growl. He's not in the condition to go through traipsing the forest with you lot. Aizawa stepped in between the two teens, glaring at the blonde. Do remember some of what your extra classes have been teaching you. The blonde growls at the warning before turning away and stomping off to where Kirishima stands, the redhead grinning tiredly at the blonde. Glad to see all of you have made it, 𝗵𝗃 says with a soft smile. It took you much longer than 3 hours to make it here. There was no way we could do that in 3 hours, Kaminari exclaims, especially with those beasts. Ashido adds on, oh, I'm sorry, I think the 3 hours were actually meant for the time we can make it in. Pixie Bob exclaims next with a wave. You all made it here a lot faster than we thought you would. Much faster than the others made it the other day. Ragdoll makes an appearance with a wave of her paws. They took until just after 7 this morning to get here. You all made it much faster, which is impressive, 𝗵𝗃 states before waving her hand towards where a giant feast was waiting for the tired group of students. Now here is your reward. Dinner, and then you can all go take a bath and then bed. Know that we won't be making the meals for you the rest of this trip, that'll be your duty. The teens all cried out in joy as they fell upon the meal with ravish mindsets. Izuku watches from where he sits with wide eyes. He wonders what sort of hell they went through to be that ravenous and vicious. He winces when he saw Yaoyorozu actually bite Kaminari's hand when the blonde tried to steal a piece of meat off of her plate. Come on, stand up. His attention is dragged back to his teacher as he looks up at glaring eyes. We've still got plenty of daylight for a few more spars. He winces but stands up determinedly and falls back into a stance the man had taught him. He recognizes it for the stance that Eraserhead uses in battles and has no problems adapting to the style. He could incorporate this, All Mights, Gran Torinos, and Bakugos all together to make one kick-ass fighting style. Villains wouldn't know what hit them. Doesn't stop him from getting his ass handed to him 7 more times until he can go and join the others in the outside bath. Gee, he hadn't thought this through at all. He grimaced as he looked at all the other boys in the open-air bath before looking back down at himself in only a towel. He was hiding behind a corner just before the bath and he wasn't sure wanted to go and join the others. He desperately needed to soak though as his entire body was screaming at him from how sore and tired he was. Fighting against Aizawa was a hard thing in itself and he wasn't sure how much he could take of fighting the pro. Not that he thought the pro was actually going all out, but still holding back had hurt Izuku was more than he had thought. That was why he was here to soak in the warm water, but he had forgotten all about the scars that littered his arms, legs, chest, and back from years of repeated abuse. He had been able to hide it in the locker rooms by either waiting till everyone was done or using one of the bathroom stalls. The scars on his arms were mostly covered by the scars from the sports festival and could be explained by Bakugo's attack on him during that first battle simulation, not so much for the ones that covered the other 90% of his body. There was no way he could explain that many scars from just one encounter from Bakugo, no matter how violent that boy could get during said encounter. He gulped before deciding that he would wait for the others to leave before he went to climb in and turn to leave, only to jump out into the open when dull brown eyes looked at him with a raised brow. He was really starting to hate Aizawa. Yo, Midoriya, there you are, Kirishima called with a wave of his hand and huge smile on his face. We were starting to wonder if we needed to send out a search party. Izuku gulped again, glancing at where his homeroom teacher stood before looking back at the other boys. He'd rather deal with them staring at him than having Aizawa asking questions. With that he walked forward and dropped his towel at the edge of the bath before climbing in. He didn't say a word as he kept his head bowed and he struggled to relax even in the hot water. So, what did you do today while we were running for our lives? Kaminari spoke up, swimming around happily, splashing Zero in the face. I mean, not that you didn't have to work hard or anything, he assured when Izuku looked up at the other boy. He saw some of the frowns marring the others' faces and knew they had seen the scars, even though the heavy mist from the bath obscured some of the lighter ones. He looked at the blonde with a shrug, making hand motions that shot up from his head and then glared at him. The blonde blinked in surprise at the motion, before tilting his head. You were attacked by an angry octopus, he decided on with a wide smile. You fucking idiot. He trained with that shitty insomniac teacher of ours, Bakugo shouted from the other side, sitting heavily against a stack of rocks that had a fountain spewing the hot water bath. The only one even near that was Todoroki, and Izuku was sure it was because of their quirks. It was also a rather sad thing that it was Bakugo who understood him. But then again, the blonde had to deal with several of Izuku's mute phases before and so had been taught to handle them. He nodded at the blonde before raising his hands again. 𝗧𝗵𝗲. The blonde obviously knew what was wanted and growled in agitation. He spared with the shitty teacher and that fucking freak in a skirt. Izuku rolled his eyes at the reference to tiger. Hey, how come you're not talking, Midoriya? Kirishima questioned with a worried frown. It is rather uncharacteristic of you. Tokoyami added on. Normally we can't get you to shut up. Zero grinned and chuckled to show he was joking. Is it because you got a peek on the girls? Mineta yelled out in horror and envy. Izuku frowned at the purple gremlin and shook his head. He knew where that pervert's mind was going. Fucker is selectively mute when he pussyfoots around. Bakugo spoke up again, glaring at the green-haired teen even as Izuku ignored him. Fucker's a coward and weak. This is why I fucking told you, shitty nerd, that you can't be a hero. Izuku growled as he stood up from the bath, sending a venomous glare at the blonde. The two stared off for what seemed a long while, none of the others knowing what to do to disrupt the ominous atmosphere that spoke of trouble. Well, if it isn't Class 1 and their hopeless little freak. The entire class whipped around the glare at the bane that was Monoma. What, getting even more special treatment, Midoriya? Break another bone and need help? He questioned while cackling. The green-haired teen glared at the new blonde before turning back to Bakugo and raising a fist, as if to fight. Midoriya, please, you can't be starting things in the bath. Ada spoke up as he looked at his normally gentle and patient friend in horror. He wasn't sure how he was going to help the other, but if he pushed the other blonde too far, then a fight would surely break out. Only to be shocked more when the green bean flipped the bird at the crimson-haired teen before flipping Monoma off next. With that done, he disappeared from the bathroom, ignoring the shouts for him to return. He didn't have to, and his bed was calling him. Hopefully the rest of the camp would be easier. It was all a fucking conspiracy to make him suffer. He knew it was because both Monoma and Bakugo would take verbal shots at him any moment that they possibly could get. Bakugo was a given. The blonde had been giving him shit since day one of their lives. He had seen the pictures of baby Bakugo pulling on Izuku's cheeks and stealing his bottle, so he knew that was true. It was expected. Monoma, though, he couldn't really figure out what the blonde's problem was since Izuku hadn't really ever done anything to him. The only real thing that he could think of was that he was in Class 1 and they had been attacked by villains. They had survived. They had persevered. They had nightmares. That was the only reason he could think of that the blonde would torture them so, and now was attacking Izuku personally. Because he was an easy target among the class and that he couldn't really fight back with his own words because they weren't there. They were out of his reach. He had informed Aizawa and the man had talked to Vlad King, but the white-haired man hadn't done anything about it. His homeroom teacher had moved him further from the other students though and made sure that Monoma knew his behavior was anything but heroic in any sense of the word. He had watched that with wide eyes and had even thanked the man. After that he had worked harder when he sparred against the man, taking in as much as he could and analyzing even more. Aizawa was proving himself in a way most of his past teachers hadn't before, even All Might. He could return that with respect and by listening to the man more. He sighed as he sat heavily on the ground, looking up at the sky and wondering if this new act of Aizawa's would continue when they returned to the school. He hoped so, as he knew that if he didn't, he would hold true to his threat and transfer to a different school. Hyo wasn't the only hero school in the country, and the number 3 Hero Hawks was proof of that. He stared at the sky, watching as the stars twinkled above him merrily and the breeze ruffled his hair and trees. It was a peaceful night for their second day here. Enjoyable almost, if he wanted to put it that way. He breathed deeply and relaxed his shoulders. It would be a nice night to continue on his notebook. Too bad he had left it in the house with all of his things. He sat there a long time, ignoring the footsteps that came to a stop in front of him. He could believe that it was Aizawa, wanting to talk to him more, and so opened his eyes to speak with his homeroom teacher, only to stare in dark, angry crimson eyes. Fucking Deku. Bakugo growled at him with a snarl on his face. You need to fucking stop being a shitty coward and start damn well talking again. What's it even matter to you? He questioned with his hands, knowing that the other would understand even at the fast pace he was signing. The blonde had perfected everything he had ever learned, and this was no exception. It's not like you ever cared anyways, because you'll fucking bug everyone and those shitty extras don't fucking wanna leave me the damn well enough alone. He growled out, his hands trying to turn into fists, but cramping when he did so. His muscles and sweat glands had to be worked to hell and back after all of that intensive training he had done. Izuku didn't really want to care. He really didn't. The other boy had put him through hell again and again and again. He didn't feel any remorse over the pain he had caused Izuku, and he still felt he was in the right. There was no reason to help his tormentor, only that there was, to make him see that Izuku was better than him. Izuku wanted to be a hero to help people, and part of that was helping people who hated him, much like Bakugo did. He sighed at that and reached up, grabbing the other teen by his wrist and yanking him down onto the ground before the boy could react. Bakugo growled at the unexpected move and caught himself with his free hand, moving to yell but stopped at the first dig into the sore muscles of his hand. The blonde looked constipated for a long minute before sitting cross-legged in front of the other boy with a scowl. They sat quietly as Izuku went over each finger carefully, making sure to work them out before moving on to the next one. "They have me in anger management," Bakugo finally admitted. The gravelly tone of his voice spoke of anger and resentment. "I have a feeling it has something to do with you and our finals." He nodded his head as he moved onto the thumb and then onto the palm and back of the hand. He could feel the muscles clenching painfully there as he dug his fingers into them. He remembered when he had first learned this, just after Bakugo had his quirk appear. His mother had to start massaging his hands when they found the trains the small explosions had been causing to the unused muscles and tendon. He had wanted to help his friend while they were at school or when his mother was there, so the greenette had had Mitsuki teach him how, and he had never forgotten. He kind wish he had though, cause then he could watch as the blonde squirmed in pain after overusing his quirk before. He couldn't bear it though and had made the other allow him to massage his hands in the boys' bathroom during middle school so that he could continue to tear Izuku apart afterward. They said I should talk to you about why I'm so angry." He got out and Izuku glanced up even as he moved his hand up to the other's wrists. He'd go all the way up to the elbow and then shake the arm out before moving on to the next one. There was no need to do a half-assed job of this. He was intent on making sure it was done properly. Said it would help lessen some of the anger. He looked back down at his work, wondering if the other boy would actually say anything. They sat in silence as Izuku laced his hand with Katsuki's and then gave the arm a good shake so the wrist and elbows would loosen up some. He released that one to start on the other hand. He could see the muscles in Bakugo's arms and hands loosen and relax, and with that the shoulders slumped as eyes drooped in relaxation. He wanted to fucking punch the other. This was the same look he would get in middle school when he worked his arms out in the bathrooms. He knew he was good at these and that the other boy enjoyed them, but that didn't help the resentment that burned in his body as he watched those muscles relax. They would just be stronger for the care he put into them, and that could end up hurting him more in the end. He scowled as he finished up the massage with another shake of the arm by their laced-together hand before releasing them. He stared as those arms rested in Bakugo's lap, unmoving. He half expected them to move to slam him into the ground and give him another scar for his collection. "I've been in those shitty things for a good fucking week now." Bakugo spoke up once more, his voice a little more level, a little more even, and a little softer than normal. He wasn't sure how to take that. "I've known for a really fucking long time why I've hated you, Deku." His eyes snapped up to glare back into calmly watching crimson eyes. His mouth went to open but still, no words would come out. He snapped it closed and made his glare stay intent. "It never had to do with you being quirkless." That caused him to blink in shock before his brow furrowed in confusion. He had been shunned and pushed aside as soon as his condition of quirklessness had come to truth, and now he was being told that wasn't the reason. "I mean, it's part of it, but it wasn't the main part." The blonde looked away, an angry scowl appearing on his face as his hands clenched and little explosions occurred. "Then what was it?" he questioned with narrowed eyes. He couldn't understand where this was going, and he was nowhere near ready to deal with the bullshit the other would heap on him. He would expect full blame for whatever to fall onto him. The blonde glowered at the moving hands for a long time before glaring up at the watching emerald eyes. "It's because, if it had been any other quirkless shit stain, they would have never made it." That made him pause as he thought over the information. "If it had been any other quirkless person. But being you, and I knew you would become a hero somehow." The blonde growled as he stood up to his feet and began to pace. It was obvious that he was trying not to lash out. It had only been a week of anger management after all. The blonde couldn't have progressed that far that fast in that amount of time. Though he was still rather impressed that the blonde was talking to him at all about this, even if it was a sign from his classes. Actually being able to tell Izuku why he was always so mad at him was hard, and he felt that old admiration and respect flare up for the explosion boy. "You would have fucking showed the entire world how goddamn great you were. That you could do anything I could fucking do, but I knew at the same time that you couldn't handle all of it." The blonde whipped around to glare at the younger boy. "You would have fucking got hurt, maybe not right away, but you would have. You would have gotten hurt so bad that nothing would have saved you, and then that little quirkless hero would be dead." There was no way that was the only reason why the blonde was pissed. There was no way. He glared up at the other teen as he stood up as well. He wasn't going to face the other on the ground. He wouldn't be put into such a vulnerable place again. "Fuck you," he gritted out, coughing a moment later. It had been a few weeks since he had used his voice, and it was hard to speak louder than a whisper. "That can't be the only shitty reason," he growled out. Bakugo growled as he glared down at the ground, hands shaking at his side. "I didn't want you to get hurt. You fucking tortured me. I wanted to make sure you knew the dangers. You just said I could have been a quirkless hero." Yeah, and then gotten killed when you bit too much off with that fucking overbite of yours. But I could have. Why didn't you help me instead of putting me down all the damn time? Because I didn't want you to fucking die. You told me to jump off the fucking roof. The two heaved at each other, no realizing their shouting had gotten louder and louder until Izuku could taste blood on his tongue. He should have known better than to yell when he hadn't talked in so long. But he couldn't help it. His words had finally returned and he was using them. I didn't mean it. Yeah, well, that doesn't excuse your behavior. He gasped out, spitting out the pink-tinted saliva. You should have just talked to me instead of hurting me. You should have been my friend and helped me instead of giving me so many scars. He felt the tears fill his eyes as he glared at the blonde. He wanted to punch the other teen in the face so badly, but he knew there was no point to it. It wouldn't make him feel better and it would be a waste of energy. I just didn't want you to get hurt trying to play hero. The blonde looked beyond conflicted at the moment. It was obvious he wasn't sure to feel remorseful or go with his anger like always. Then you should have told me instead of telling me to kill myself. That isn't how a friend treats another, and I was remiss to think we ever were. Izuku all but screamed as he turned away from the blonde. He didn't need to hear anything else. He would be the bigger person and just walk away before anything could escalate at the moment. I'm sorry. He stopped but didn't turn around. He tilted his head up to the sky and fought with himself for a long moment. He wondered what he should do at that moment. What should he do? It doesn't matter, he said finally as he looked back at the building where everyone else was most likely sleeping. I can't forgive right now. Maybe I never will. With that he walked away from the still standing Bakugo. Maybe one day he could, but not today and not anytime soon. Explosive breakthrough. It was happening for as long as he could remember. He was pretty sure it had been going on since he had been born. Shut the hell up, you stupid brat. A slap would normally follow, whether to his face or the back of the head. If she was really in a mood, then he would be hit with a wooden spoon or have a plate thrown at him. He'd have to dodge if he didn't want a bruise that his daddy would ask about. He didn't want to get the hag in trouble. She was his mommy after all. I just wanted help with my homework, he grumbled as he ducked his head, just barely avoiding a bottle that had once held apple juice and that would have cracked his head open if he hadn't have dodged. He wasted no time returning to his room and closing the door. Don't slam the fucking doors. He glared at said door before ripping it open and slamming it again, just to piss her off once more. He didn't understand why his mommy was always so angry, but he decided that day that he wasn't going to put up with it anymore. He'd start fighting back, even if it meant getting hit every now and then. I'll do what I want, you stupid hag, he shouted back. He knew exactly what was going to happen when he heard a furious yell and then rapid footsteps. He grinned as he clenched his fists together and waited for the beast that was his mommy. He wouldn't put up with it anymore. After all, he was going to be a hero and protect everyone from beasts like his mother, so he had better start standing up against her now if that was what he was going to do. 𝗵𝗃𝗁, are you okay? Deku asked with a trembling lip, taking in his best friend's blackened cheek and bruised arms. Don't worry, Deku. These are just things I got in a fight. He grinned at the other child with a wide grin. You should see the other guy. He had seen that on a cartoon and thought it would sound good now. I got them just as good. 𝗵𝗃𝗁. Deku placed a hand on the blonde's cheek gently, as if his touch could heal the bruise for the other. It looks like it hurts. 𝗃𝗁 frowned as he took in the worried green eyes that were framed by soft green hair. The boy looked a lot like his mother, just like Katsuki looked like his own mother with his spiky blonde hair and crimson eyes. But because of that, Deku always looked like a bunny about to be eaten by a tiger. Weak and defenseless. Stupid Deku. I can't be a hero if I can't handle a little pain. That's true, the younger boy agreed with a frown. But I'd rather you didn't get hurt. Tears were falling down his cheeks now and Katsuki hardly ever knew what to do when Deku started crying. I don't want you to hurt, he cried out. Shit. He hated it when Deku cried, mostly because he had no idea what he could do to comfort him and make him feel better. For him, whenever he cried, his mother would hit him upside the head and tell him to suck it up. So he was never really sure how to help Deku, except to just hit him. That normally got him to stop. With that he reached out and pinched a cheek as hard as he could. 𝗃𝗁, that hurts, Deku whined even as his tears dried up, leaving behind only the tracks down his face. Then stop with the crying, the blonde exclaimed as he pinched the other cheek, making sure the other boy would be done crying. Nad focused on him. Even if I get hurt while being a hero, I'll still win. Because that's what heroes do. They win. So I'll win all the time and come out just fine. That had the little green bean smiling at him with stars in his eyes once more, cheeks now a bright pink once the blonde had released him. That's so cool. I'll always be there to help too. I want to be a hero with 𝗃𝗁. You can be my sidekick. He agreed easily as he grabbed the little boy's hand and began to run. Come on, Deku. Let's go play hero and villain with the others. We'll work together to beat the bad guy. It was great to run with the green-haired boy and be free from all that was going on at home. He wished he could go back to be a child with Deku, where they didn't have to worry about anything, and all their minds could fathom was being heroes in the future, together at each other's sides. Too bad they had to grow up. And with that, the abuse from his mother only got worse. The smacks became hits that would bruise and leave marks. Sometimes she would repeatedly hit him with the damn spoon, and the plates had more areas to hit now that he was bigger. Though he smirked whenever she missed because that meant he was getting better at dodging. The verbal abuse was the worst though. Her tongue was sharp and her mind strong, even under the effects of alcohol. She knew where to hit him to make it hurt. How his grades were below that of Deku's, and that if he didn't bring them up, then his dream of Yua would be gone and he would be no better than a hack. How he was weak and unable to protect those around him, even with such a great quirk. After all, 𝗵𝗃 was always complaining about her son coming home with bruises and scratches and bruises. How could he be a hero if he couldn't protect his quirkless and weaker friend from those around him? Her drinking also got worse, to the point to where she was drunk almost all of the time. Though his dad rarely saw that as he was gone at work most days. His mother's job as a wedding planner meant that she could leave whenever to meet with clients or just have them at their house. She rarely left and usually had a cup or bottle of alcohol near her at all times. He learned to snatch the bottles when he could, dumping them down the drain to slow her down. She never suspected it because she always finished at least 5 or 6 of them in a day, sometimes even more. It made her dangerous because she lost her ability to control her strength. Her hits became harder and stronger. Her nails would gouge skin, and the nitroglycerin she sweated mixed with his own, burning parts of his body when it did. He hid the burns and the bruises and the scratches. No one knew what was happening at home, not even his father. He took his frustration out on Deku at school. He studied harder than anyone else. He made sure he got into Yua, then he shoved it in that old hag's face just to get a laugh. That weak-ass teacher of his was shoving him to partner up with Deku, to make him work with the lying piece of shit that had treated him like a fool the entire time. He didn't understand why the insomniac was making him with Deku, but he made sure that the greenette knew to stay out of his way. Stay the fuck out of the way, Deku. He snarled as he slammed a fist into his face, knocking him back and away from earphones, right before he blasted her in her stunned face. He proceeded to slam a fist into her stomach and sent her flying into the animal freak. The two were working together in the exercise and he could take them on easily. He didn't need Deku, but the little shit tried to work around him then, taking pot shots at his opponents like Katsuki couldn't handle them on his own. He growled as he grabbed him by the face and blasted him into the ground. Listen here, you shitty nerd. I don't fucking need you, nor do I want your help. Stay the fuck out of my way and away from my fucking opponents. With that, he let off another blast that knocked the nerd out and out of his way for the rest of the fight. Then during classwork, he'd be paired with the shit again. He ignored the idiot for most of it, only blasting him away when he was annoyed or when the shitty nerd said something he didn't like, which, even he could be honest with this, was almost all of the time. He just wanted to do his work and move on with his fucking life. But no, he had to deal with fucking Deku. It went on like that for a long time, until a few days Deku finally just stayed out of his way. He grinned viciously as he shot forward, slamming into long hair while Raccoon Eyes tried go after Deku. He made sure the shitty bitch knew that was a bad idea by slamming a hand into her back and blasting her into the ground. No one would face Deku. The weak little shit would only get hurt and then be in the way. There was no point in that, and Bakugo was going to make sure they knew that. Then their finals came up and they were facing All Might. The perfect opportunity to really show his stuff. To make sure that they all knew that he was number one and he was going to take the fucking symbol of peace's place. It wouldn't be long after that he really would be the top hero, and everyone would know it. Only, it didn't go that way. Deku left. That fucking bitch-ass shitty nerd fucking left him behind. The boy that had said that he would always stay by his side. The boy that had said he would have his back. The boy that said he couldn't wait until they would be heroes together. He had abandoned him and ran through that damned gate by himself. He was pissed. There was a tangle of emotions within him that he couldn't understand. They twisted and curled and clawed at his stomach and chest. His head ached and burned while his eyes burned and tickled with a sensation he hated. His palms were sweating so much that it took a conscious effort to stop explosions. They confused him mostly, and with everything that never made sense to him, he interpreted it as anger and allowed that to grow. He became pissed real fucking quick after that. He was even more pissed when he saw fucking Deku yelling at the shitty insomniac. He wasn't really paying attention to what was being said at the moment, only glaring at the shitty nerd. He took in the blood dribbling from his mouth and the slight slur to his speech, along with the blackened skin on his cheek where he had blasted him early. He hadn't held back and made sure the other knew that he was serious. It wasn't until after the rat of a principal had stepped up that he decided to put his 2 cents in. Fucking Deku is just fucking faking it. He snarled as he glared at the now furious green eyes that were only an inch from his own face. Fucking say that again. He blinked for a second, taking in the fact that the other was cursing, something that normally never happened. I dare you. He wasn't known for turning down a challenge. With a smirk on his lips and confidence in his voice, Katsuki spoke. You fucking faked all that shit for attention. He snarled and jerked backwards when Deku's face got close to his own, pointing at the burn he had left there. So I fucking slammed my face into your fist for shits and giggles. That was a phrase that Katsuki had only ever heard All Might use before. It was strange coming from the normally quiet boy. Should have stayed the fuck out of my way, shitty nerd. He growled back with his famous glare, hoping it would cause the other to back down. He didn't. I was trying to fucking help you, he screamed at the blonde, causing him to wrinkle his nose at his old childhood friend in irritation. I've always been trying to fucking help you, but all I got are shitty scars and jacked up bruises and fucking pain for it. The same things that Katsuki himself carried as well. Though none of them knew that the scars on his arms weren't from training. Not all of them at least. A good portion were once gouges in his skin from sharp manicured nails or from broken glass or porcelain. He would make sure that no one knew about those. Then stay in your place, he snapped, crossing his arms over his chest and positioning his arms to keep the scars hidden better. He wasn't letting anything get to him, not even that. He needed to be strong and controlled. He couldn't let the other rile him up at the moment. He had to be better than the piece of shit that crossed every word he had ever said since they were kids. My place is fucking helping people while you deserve to be nothing but a fucking villain, you piece of shit. His mind ran backwards in an instant. With that shitty attitude of yours, Katsuki, you'll make a much better villain. Isuki crowed as she held a bottle in the air, laughing all the while her child laid on the floor, struggling to stand up and get away. You've got the quirk for it and the attitude. I'm surprised you fucking school of yours hasn't already expelled you for the shit you do to 𝐭𝐽𝐲 boy. That shit right there is rightfully villain crap. She chugged her bottle of Jack quickly, finishing the bottle before throwing it onto Katsuki's back. He bit his tongue as the bottle dug painfully into his spine, but didn't shatter, instead bouncing off and onto the floor. Fuck you, he grunted out as he finally pushed himself up to his feet. I'll be the fucking top hero, you bitch of a hack. Not if you keep using 𝐭𝐽𝐲 boy as a punching bag, she slurred with a vicious glint. You'll be a villain before you can do anything about it. He didn't even remember his body moving after that, only that he was now being pulled away from Deku, his nose and lip burning and the taste of blood on his tongue and lips. He roared as he struggled against the shitty insomniac, just so he could get at the limp form of Deku and beat the ever-living shit out of him. He didn't stop until the shitty teacher faced him with a glare. Stop it. That is enough. He snarled at the blonde, making him pause in his attempts to escape. Then he was rotated so that he could face Deku's kneeling form, arms hanging limply at his sides and his head bowed. Look at him, Bakugo, and tell me he is faking that. Tell me. He could see how the other boy's shoulders slumped and how exhausted the other looked, not to mention how much skinnier he seemed at the moment and how small. A flash of chubby cheeks and a bright smile and even bright emerald eyes flashed before his eyes, but then was replaced with this shadow. This wasn't the Deku he knew. He didn't argue when he was pushed from the tent and sent home. He hid in his room until the trip. He hadn't wanted to deal with the hag the entire time, and he didn't want to have to face his dad at the moment either. Though he got shit from the hag when she found out that he had to go to anger management every day that week, per the school's orders. Not to mention that he was to return after their trip and continue going until he was improved. About fucking time some shit person realized how villainous you are. She roared with laughter, a glass of wine sitting on the counter next to her. Her crimson eyes landed on Katsuki, taking in his hunched shoulders and scowling countenance. Good fucking thing they're paying for that shit, otherwise you'd have been fucking expelled. He snarled at the table as she swigged her wine glass, gulping down half of the liquid. It wasn't like they couldn't have afforded the classes on their own or anything, but his mother always got on him for how expensive a dipshit kid was and how much of a strain he was on their family. It didn't matter that the insurance would have paid for it or that his dad made more than enough to cover the costs either way. He was just a strain on his mother, and that was all he was ever going to be. He shook his head as he stomped out of the house, ignoring the screech about the damn door. He needed to leave right then so he could make it to the named building where he was to take these classes. He hoped that he could just glide through, but with an empath quirk heading the class, he knew that if he didn't improve, then he wouldn't be making it as a hero. He took his seat in the circle of the group of other teens, all in different shapes and colors and wearing different clothes and different hairstyles. He didn't bother to learn anyone's names or remember their faces. They were just stepping stones on his way to becoming the best. Now, we've been over tactics to avoid anger, to calm anger, and meditation techniques. We've gone over how to avoid situations that'll anger you and how to ask for help when you are feeling emotions you are unsure of. Now I wish to move on to talk about the things that makes you all angry, the counselor said as she looked at all of them, eyes landing firmly on Katsuki. The emotions you feel and the many other things in your life that elicits those emotions. And one by one, each teen spoke up. My father always hits me. The bullies just won't leave me alone. I fight with my siblings all the time. School is just so hard. All of which sound like bullshit excuses, even to Katsuki, who had similar problems all around. He didn't want to deal with this and listen to these kids. It all sounded like a bunch of shit, and he knew that there was a chance that it wouldn't help anyways. What really got him was how the counselor of the group was giving advice on what to do about the situations that they were in and how to fix it without anger, how to handle themselves and what they could do to calm themselves and keep calm and then reply to the situation. He wondered for a second if someone would do anything if he said something about his mother. I doubt it, he thought to himself with a scowl as the teacher finally got to him. What about you, Bakugo? What causes you to get angry? She questioned, her calm sea green eyes focusing on him. He knew that she was using her quirk to read him. The ends of her blonde hair would turn a fluorescent orange each time she used it. Because of that, he knew that she was reading his irritation at the situation. But he also knew that he needed to say something. He had already talked about the pebbles in his path, giving him a path to walk to his goal. He talked about the damn teachers that had always shoved him on a pedestal, and now he had ones that shoved him around and tried to keep him on the ground. Then there was one thing he knew he could talk about. Or, well, one person. Fucking Deku. He growled out as he crossed his arms over his chest and glared at her, letting her feel the mess in his chest whenever he thought about the other boy. Doesn't know when to stay the fuck down or when to give the fuck up. Fucker faked being quirkless and lied to me. The counselor's eyes widened, and he dared her to speak before he was done. He fucker was the weakest of us all but didn't give a damn, acting like he was better than us all. He remembered those bright emerald eyes and sunny smile. And that forever optimistic bullshit attitude. His shitty muttering would bug the crap out of me, and he'd take fucking notes on any and everyone who had a quirk. It looks like there's a lot going on there, Bakugo. The shitty counselor finally spoke up as she looked at him with confusion. You don't seem to be angry. I don't fucking know what I am. He grumbled as his chest ached as he continued to think about what he and Deku were, or what they had been and what they had become. He thought about all the shit that he had to deal with at the moment, and then he thought about all the pain he felt when he realized that Deku had lied to him about everything. That he had a quirk and had just been hiding it from him all this time. The counselor smiled gently at him as she leaned forward. Then maybe you should talk with him about how you feel and what you think. That might help you find out what and who you are to him and yourself. He grunted in response. He wasn't actually able to talk to Deku until sometime during their camping trip. He had gone out for a walk, trying to get the spasming and cramping in his arms to stop. He knew that if he could massage them, it would help. But he was hurting too much to do it himself, and he didn't trust anyone but one person to do it for him. Not since the old hag had broken 4 of his fingers, 3 of his right and 1 left, massaging his arms when he had been 6. She had been frustrated as one of her customers had had a bitch fit and shouted at her for an hour in their home. Katsuki had been in his room and so had heard it all and had suffered for it later. He shook his head as he turned to walk off to the side of the building to suffer in silence, but stopped when he saw the mop of green hair of the other teen, sat on the grass with his arms wrapped around his legs and looking up at the stars. He paused as he remembered when they were kids, when he had run to Auntie and Co's for a break from his mother. She would take them out to the park on warm summer nights, a thermos of hot chocolate that she had made from scratch. They'd sit on a blanket and look up at the sky, drinking hot chocolate as Auntie pointed out all of the constellations to them. Fun nights where he felt safe and wanted and loved. He even remembered the times where a white-haired man with bright emerald eyes would ruffle his hair. Deku's dad, he remembered vaguely, would join them on these adventures until he left to work overseas in America. That was what Deku looked like right now. Those nights going over constellations with his mom and dad and Katsuki, calm and collected and content. He walked over to the other, knowing he could hear him walking, but not announcing who he was just yet. Fucking Deku. He growled as he got close, taking a small jolt of pleasure when the other jumped in surprise. He knew that insomniac teacher of theirs had been coming out to get Deku at night, so obviously he wasn't expecting Katsuki to come out. You need to fucking stop being a shitty coward and start damn well talking again. So they could talk for real and maybe Katsuki could really explain himself. What's it even matter to you? Fucking sign. It was a good thing he had learned it after the first time Deku went mute when they were 4. Fuck, it was annoying but useful for when they had wanted to talk without the teacher knowing. It's not like you ever cared anyways. He suppressed a flinch at that, but it wasn't undeserved. He knew he was an asshole, but he was hoping to fix it. Because you'll fucking bug everyone. And those shitty extras don't fucking wanna leave me the damn well enough alone. Which was true. He had been fucking ambushed by the class that first night after Deku left the bathroom. They all asked questioned, including why he was able to interpret for the boy he was supposed to have hated the most so well. He tried to curl into fists as he growled at the other boy, but he ended up hissing instead as they spasmed and cramped. Of course his shitty arms would betray him at the first inopportune time they fucking could. It was annoying as all fuck and it drove him towards anger, something he couldn't afford at the moment. He growled in surprise when his wrist was grabbed and he was forced to sit in front of the other, sitting crisscross so that he could fit comfortably in between the other's spread out legs. He just about groaned in pleasure as the other started to work on his fingers. He felt the digging that began to loosen the muscles and relieve the tension he had built up from training. Katsuki had forgotten how good Deku was at his hand massages, something he had learned from his mother so that he could help the other boy as his quirk developed. He was the only one that the blonde would allow touch his hands and arms, the source of his power, and trust him fully at his most vulnerable of times. God, it was a fucking relief to have those fingers digging into his skin once more. They have me in anger management. He spoke up, letting his shoulders loosen up and his hand to be maneuvered however Deku wanted. I have a feeling it has something to do with you and our finals. He didn't need the nod from Izuku to know he was right. He had known the moment the ultimatum had come from that rat principal almost 2 weeks ago now. He hated it but couldn't say that it wasn't needed. Izuku hit a particular spot in his palm and he felt the rest of the tension in that hand melt away, allowing him to relax a little as the other worked on him. God, he didn't want this to end but he really needed to keep talking, to get this out so that they could fix this and maybe Izuku and he could start over. He paused as he thought about what he wanted to say. It was a worry that he would mess this up, but he still had to try. So he ignored the tightening of his chest, the chaos in his mind, and the roiling of his stomach to continue. They said I should talk to you about why I'm so angry. He could feel his shoulders begin to slump and his body begin to relax further into the massage as Deku moved up to his wrist. Said it would help lessen some of the anger, which was partially true, but it was mostly to figure out why he had such tumultuous emotions with the other. Maybe it would help, maybe it would, but he had to try and see if it did. Deku moved up his arms before lacing their hands together and shaking his arm out. He felt his wrist crack and his elbow pop, almost sending him to the ground in pleasure. He sat there silently for a long time, allowing the other to work his other arm out, getting out all the strain and pain from the training he had been putting himself through. Once the other boy was done, he allowed his arms to fall to his lap and relax there, allowing himself to calm and relax, try to get rid of that aching that was left in his chest and roiling of his stomach. It seemed like forever before he spoke up. I've been in those shitty things for a good fucking week now, he admitted, his voice soft and calm, gentle almost. He didn't want to scare the other away or let him think he was angry at him when he wasn't. He needed to be careful with everything at the moment. I've known for a really fucking long time why I've hated you, Deku. He wondered if he should explain that he didn't really hate the other boy. That Izuku actually made him want to work harder and get better so that they could work together, just like they always dreamed of as children. He ignored the glare that Izuku sent him, knowing that the other had all the rights in the world to be angry with him. It never had to do with you being quirkless. Very true. He knew the other could do anything he put his mind to, even if he was quirkless. I mean, it's part of it, but it wasn't the main part. Well, that wasn't true. His chest tightened painfully, and he felt like he was about to barf up his entire digestive system. He clenched his hands tightly, ignoring the little explosions that were emitting from his hands as he tried to get control of himself. Then what was it? Fucking sign. He wondered what he needed to do to get him to use his voice once more. This sign shit was getting annoying. He growled after staring at his hands for long moments, before he snapped his eyes up and met those jade eyes head on. They weren't anywhere near his normal emerald eyes, but he could see some of that spark he held normally, making its way back painfully slow. It's because, if it had been any other quirkless shit stain, they would have never made it. What the fuck? He hadn't meant to phrase it like that. Not at all. But being you, I knew you would become a hero somehow. That was something he had wanted to say, something he felt in his bones and knew with all of his being. He knew that Izuku could be the greatest hero of them all, with or without a quirk. He shook his head and stood up and began to pace. His chest felt like it was in a vice and it was just clamping down on him crazily. He tasted bile on the back of his tongue, growling as he tried to figure a way to say what he wanted without hurting the other or hurting himself or confusing them all. You would have fucking showed the entire world how goddamn great you were. That you could do anything I could fucking do, but I knew at the same time that you couldn't handle all of it. He couldn't see gentle and sweet Izuku being able to face against the abuse children were treated with. Couldn't see him being able to handle the rapes and the beatings and the straight murders that he knew heroes faced on a daily basis. It would destroy him. You would have fucking got hurt, maybe not right away, but you would have. You would have gotten hurt so bad that nothing would have saved you and then that quirkless hero would be dead. Most likely by his own hand because that heart was just too kind, too gentle to deal with the horrors of the world. It would be that or he would fallen into a depression that would have taken away that spark. Though that's not what he had wanted to say. That was far from it and Katsuki knew that Izuku would take it the wrong way. And he did. Fuck. Katsuki jerked to a stop as he turned to the other, staring at him wide-eyed for a second. You. Izuku coughed for a long moment before whispering, the 3-week period being enough to cause some damage to his throat. That can't be the only shitty reason. All growled out, like he was trying to imitate Katsuki's own tone. He growled back even as his eyes focused on the ground in shame. That wasn't how he wanted to convey that, or say it, or anything of it. But he wasn't sure how to explain his thoughts about the worry and anger and fear and so many other emotions that he felt. I didn't want you to get hurt. You fucking tortured me. He could hear tears in the other's voice and so didn't look up. I wanted to make sure you knew the dangers. There were a lot that even he was learning about at the moment, especially since they had been attacked by actual villains 3 days into their goddamn classes. You just said I could have been a quirkless hero. The first and greatest of them all too. But he couldn't force those past his lips for some reason. Yeah, and then gotten killed when you bit too much off with that fucking overbite of yours. But I could have. Why didn't you help me instead of putting me down all the damn time? Because he was a coward that didn't want to see that spark and big heart to die out. He wanted the other safe from the horrors that plagued the world. Because I didn't want you to fucking die. You told me to jump off the fucking roof. He could see blood on the other's lips, most likely from the shouting they were doing. His throat was obviously not ready for this, but they were having it out anyways, which meant he had to push forward. I didn't mean it, which was true. He had never meant for the other to ever consider that as a way out. He had just wanted the other to run away, to turn the opposite way of Katsuki to stay safe. Yet he also wanted the boy at his side like he always was, to always have his back and to work with him to save others like they had always dreamed. Yeah, well, that doesn't excuse your behavior. Izuku spat and the crimson eyes followed the pink glob before it disappeared in the grass. He was overdoing it too soon after starting speaking again. You should have just talked to me instead of hurting me. You should have been my friend and helped me instead of giving me so many scars. He could see the hate and anger and sorrow in those jade eyes. He knew he had hurt the other, but he had no idea how much damage he had caused. It weighed heavily on his chest and he could feel his knees shaking. He wasn't sure how much longer he could stay standing. I'm sorry. He was so sorry. He wished he could take everything back. Wished his mother wasn't so shitty and that he had a better person to learn from when it came to emotions. Wished he wasn't so much of a fucking psycho and could say all of that to the other and maybe actually get some fucking help to be a better person. Not like it mattered in the end. It doesn't matter, the other said in perfect unison of his mind. I can forgive you right now. Maybe I never will. With that, Katsuki watched Izuku leave back for the building, disappearing inside. Only once he was sure the other was completely out of sight did he allow his knees to buckle and for him to fall to his hands and knees. He heaved as all the contents in his stomach were expelled, tears falling down his face. He knew he had fucked up, knew it for a long time, but he had hoped that he could fix it. But now now he probably would never have that friend that had always been his escape from a shitty mother and a shitty home life. Breaking ground, he stared up at the ceiling, taking in the cracks and creases and little speckled bumps as best he could in the dark. He was supposed to be asleep, but his mind was running 1,000,000 miles an hour, especially after Kirishima had left him with their classmates. I have no right to ask this of you, Midoriya, but we can save him. We can go and save him with our own hands. The redhead held his hands out towards the bedridden student, a hopeful smile on his face even as his eyes burned with determination. What if I don't want to save him? He questioned back with a frown on his face. What if I don't want to put my future, my chances at being a hero, at risk just to save Bakugo? Why should I put my neck on the line when he's done nothing but show hatred for me? Because, despite everything he has ever done to you, you still want to be a hero. Kirishima gulped as he took in the hardened emerald eyes, wondering what he could say to convince his classmate, though he dared not push if it got to a point where he could very well make the small boy his enemy. You want to be better than what he did to you. You want to help people, save them no matter who they are. He frowned as he thought about something that had happened at the camp. That's why you tried to save him during camp, even as injured as you already were. Izuku glared at the other before turning his head away. I'll think about it. Kirishima sighed as his shoulders slumped. Yeah, okay, we can't do anything till tomorrow at the earliest anyways. Just let me know if you decide to help. Then he turned with the rest of their classmates and left. They wanted him to help save Bakugo, to save the childhood tormentor and bring him back to their school, back to his friends, back to his family. He knew that he should, as a hero in training, want to help and save the other boy, but at the same time he wanted to leave the other there with the villains that he had acted like for so many years. Why should he bother? Bakugo had earned the reputation with his behavior. It was his own damn fault for putting himself in that position and then not bothering to try and fix it in any way. Why should he get himself in trouble, bleed and cry and scream, all for someone who had never wanted him to do those things in the first place? He shook his head as he sat up in bed, his abs screaming as his arms were unable to assist at the moment. The questions burned in his head as he tried to figure out why he should do anything to help the blonde that had made his life hell after they had turned 4. Why in the name of All Might should he bother to help the other? He looked at his lap, thinking about everything, thinking about his life up to this point. Would it have been different if Bakugo had never been in his life? Would he have been happier? Would he have been safer? Would he still be alive? He knew that a lot of the abuse in school would have been a lot worse if Bakugo had been the main antagonist that both brought all and scared away the attention to him. No one had wanted to fight Bakugo to get at the quirkless wannabe, only waiting at the side to have their turn at beating the shit out of him. But that didn't make what the blonde did any better. It still hurt and he still suffered and he hurt still now to this day. especially since he had no clue why his once-upon friend had done what he had. Why did he do it? Who did he think he was? Why did he trust the blonde? Why did he break his trust like he had? Why would the blonde swear that he would? Tears stung at his eyes as he remembered when they were kids, playing the backyard at the blonde's house. They always played heroes, always rescued the civilian and saved the day. He remembered those days like it had all happened just yesterday. Come on, Deku, let's go. We have to help All Might. Kaken cried out as he ran forward, his blanket flying behind him. I'm coming, he screamed in eagerness as he followed the older boy. This scenario was never anything new, and it would always end with them winning the day and saving their idol. It was only ever interrupted when Izuku fell or tripped. Come on, Deku, there's no reason to cry. The blonde sighed as he kneeled down next to his friend, wiping at the tears on the other's face. It's only a scrape, you big baby. I know, but I just hate ruining the rescues. He bawled. It was inevitable that they would be playing and he would end up hurting himself in some shape or form, just from trying to keep up with the older boy. Hey, it's fine if you fall. The blonde sat on the ground next to the greenette. Even I, as great as I am, fall down. You just gotta get up again. Don't let things like this scrape stop you from getting up again. He smiled at his friend as he grabbed a hold of his hand. And if you can't stand on your own, I'll help you get up again. Well, Kaken, for real? He questioned as he followed the other boy onto their feet, squeezing his hand tightly. It's a promise, Deku. You're useless without me after all. It was a promise the blonde had broke again and again and again. Bakugo had lied to him, had betrayed him, had left him to waste away in a pit of anxiety and depression. He hadn't helped Izuku back onto his feet. No, he made sure that the greenette was on the ground as much as possible. So why should he bother helping the blonde when he had given up on helping him? He clenched his eyes shut as tears fell down his cheeks. Memories of a warm hand and a bright smile. All Might had picked him up at his lowest point, dragged him from the dark rocky pit and onto a warm sunny beach instead. It had been terrifyingly close to how broken he had been before All Might had raced to find him again. If he hadn't, then Izuku wasn't sure where he would be at the moment. He was glad he didn't have to find out. But still, that didn't help him in figuring out what he should do now. He sighed as he fell back into his bed, figuring he could do this while comfortable. He didn't know if he should help Bakugo out of a desire to help him for him or because that's what heroes would do. It wouldn't matter in the end because he would do the same thing he has always done when it concerned the blonde. He would help him whether he liked it or not, especially when his life was on the line. E.g., honestly, he should have expected it to end the way it had. Deku had saved him more than once before after all. That didn't stop Katsuki from grumbling as he laid back in his bed, glaring up at the ceiling as he listened to his mother shout and scream about what had happened to her son. Though he knew that it was only because she had to deal with the police, paperwork, and now pros patrolling around their neighborhood more often. Oh well, the consequences of being kidnapped by villains. That was something that they would just have to deal with for the time being. Hopefully for not too much longer, as a week had passed since then Kamino Ward incident. Until then, Katsuki could wallow in his room until school started back up and he could return to his classes. Hopefully without any more villain attacks for a few months. He had just decided to take a nap, to block out his mother's screaming, when the doorbell rang. 𝐾𝐸𝐴𝑇SUKI. Get your ass down here right now. Your damn teacher is here for a fucking meeting. His teacher. He sat up and glared at the door for a second before sighing and standing up and slouching out of his room. I'm coming, you old hag, he shouted back as he slammed his room door out of pure spit. You little shit. What the fuck do you think you're doing slamming my doors like that? She glared at her son as he appeared in the living room. He just glared at her before turning to Aizawa, who had his hair in a half ponytail, clean-shaved, and wearing a white button-up shirt and dress pants. The fuck you doing here, sensei? He questioned as he leaned against the wall, ignoring the open spot between his parents on the couch. He wasn't about to get in range for his mother to hiss him. He didn't think he could stand having a hand anywhere near his head at the moment. I'm here because I need to speak with your parents about allowing you to move into the dorms at UA, he announced as he turned to his parents. I know that we failed to protect him while at the training camp, but the dorms will have more pro heroes and more security measures. Take him, Mitsuki stated with a glare at the two pro heroes. I know that he has an attitude, one that I've attributed to greatly, but I've seen improvement in him since he started at UA. She held up a hand to Katsuki, stopping him before he could explode. He was gifted with both brains and a great quirk, but because of that, he's always been praised for shallow things. Honey, I don't think they need to know that, Masaru said with a nervous chuckle. After all, they're dealing with him now, not his past self. But they need to know, she stated just as fiercely. After Katsuki was grabbed at the camp, I realized how horrible I've been. Given, I'm not as bad as some abusive parents out there, but I've never been a good mother. She glared at her hands. Because of that, I missed how off the rails my son has gone and haven't prevented further damage to him because of that. I haven't been able to be there for my son and instead hurt him and my husband. Aizawa frowned as he looked at the blonde woman. Are you admitting to abusing your son? to a pro hero that will be legally obligated to report and take your son out of your care. She met his eyes without any fear, only regret. I am. But know that I will be admitted into an AA facility and am going to get help. While I'm doing that, I ask that you also help my son to continue onto the path of a hero and continue to improve his behavior. She bowed deeply on the couch, ignoring the stunned look from her son and the proud look from her husband. After everything you've said during that conference, I know you are the one that'll lead my son to be a better person. Please, continue to care for Katsuki and make sure he becomes a splendid hero. Katsuki could only gulp as he watched his mother bow and keep her head down for what seemed an eternity. Fucking old hag, I'll make myself a great-ass hero. I don't need no insomniac of a teacher to help, he grumbled, gaining a laugh from his mother and a glare from said teacher. He wondered, though, if his mother could admit that she had made a mistake and own up to it. Could he do it? Could he own up to what he had done to the other boy he had grown up with and become a better person? He wasn't sure, especially after what had happened at Kamino Ward. How could he ever be a good person when he was the reason why All Might was no longer going to be the greatest hero? BG, honestly, he knew that he had questions for Bakugo, but he hadn't thought about asking them anytime soon. He knew that moving into the dorms, even after the scare his mother had given him about being pulled out, would be hard. He'd have to interact and see Bakugo every day, and there would be no real escape. He could hide out in his room and his friends' own rooms. But other than that, there was always a chance at him being caught up with Bakugo. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't ready to see the blonde everywhere every day of the week. He wasn't ready to ask his questions, so he tried his hardest to avoid the blonde. That first day in the dorms felt like an eternity, especially when the class decided to go around and look at each other's rooms and decide who would be the king. Luckily, they decided skipping out on Bakugo's room would be the best course, as no one wanted to incite his rage. Not even the Baka squad. But that still made the day drag on because he was so on edge. He would normally retreat to his room, where he could be left alone and safe, but this wasn't his house. This was the dorms, and there was no guarantee that he would be left alone. Not with all his friends in close proximity, at least. He'd have to just wait until it was polite to disappear to his room. It would only be a little bit longer. It was getting late, and soon everyone would be retreating to their rooms and he would finally be left alone to think. Which didn't happen. Problem child. Of course, Aizawa would show up just in time to ruin his soon-to-be escape. Come with me, we have something to talk about. Izuku could only let his shoulders hunch up around his ears as he followed the teacher. He and the others had been scolded for going to save Bakugo, so he was sure that wasn't what this was about. He wondered what it could be. He followed the teacher out of the dorms, into the school building and into the principal's office, where Nezu and his mother were waiting. Forgive the late meeting, but I felt now would be better than early in the morning or late after school, Nezu stated as he looked at the teen before turning to his mother. Now that we're all here, we can begin. Izuku was hugged by his mother before sitting into a chair next to her. Aizawa moved over to stand next to Nezu. Once their attention returned to the two school personnel, his mother spoke. What exactly is this meeting about? We made a mistake during your son's final some weeks ago, and we have made moves to rectify our previous behaviors. Nezu began as tea appeared in front of him out of nowhere. He passed out the cups and then held his own in his paws as he looked at the woman. One of the things we offered was therapy for your son with a verified therapist. We had wanted him in sooner, but many things occurred rather rapidly, and so we hadn't had the time, especially since we had focused on getting Bakugo into his anger management classes. 𝐭𝐸 blinked for a long moment before a small smile appeared on her face and her hands laced together in her lap. Izuku gulped as he leaned away from his mother and curled up in the chair as much as he could. He knew what that smile meant, and it meant nothing good. Are you telling me that my son was placed in a dangerous situation that you knew could end badly and you didn't bother to call me about it? Izuku watched from his curled position as Aizawa and Nezu glanced at each other before Aizawa spoke. It was, unfortunately, thought of after everything that had occurred. As his homeroom teacher, I apologize for the negligence in my care for your son and keeping you informed of any worries I have had. He bowed to her deeply, his nose almost touching his knees. 𝐭𝐸 kept her gaze steady and calm as she looked at the two. Should I be considering pulling him from this school and transferring him to a different school? The boy made sure not to have eye contact with anyone in the room. He had known that he had asked for a transfer before, but so far, the principal had kept his word and was trying to further keep it. He wondered how the two were going to get out of this one. I will not lie. Your son has asked for a transfer after the incident at the finals, Nezu admitted, startling all in the room. I managed to talk him out of it, and I wish for you to give us a chance to make up for our negligence, just as I asked of your son. He took a sip of his tea before meeting the mother's eyes. Part of our deal was that Bakugo was to be admitted to anger management classes, Midoriya was to change seats in class, and that he no longer be paired with Bakugo in any way. In return, Midoriya would attend therapy sessions to try and combat the abuse he suffered through. Aizawa finished with crossed arms and a slouch, though his eyes burned in anger. 𝐭𝐸 paused before turning to her son. What abuse? Katsuki and Izuku have been friends since they were children, though I was aware there was a disagreement at some point and they became distant. I was unaware of any abuse. Izuku buried himself further into the chair as he tried to curl himself into non-existence. He had never told his mother what was happening at school. He had never allowed her to see the burns, bruises, cuts, and scars he had attained over the years. She was friends with Mitsuki, and so he hadn't wanted to ruin that. So the look his mother was sending him at the moment understandably sent chills of terror down his spine. What abuse, Izuku? She questioned as her eyes narrowed. He gulped as he peeked over at his mother with a weak smile. Aye. He trailed off as he lost any ability to speak and instead curled further into himself. 𝐭𝐸 gave him one more look filled with sympathy before turning back to the teachers. From what I understand from all you've said, Katsuki has abused and injured my son repeatedly this year, and yet you only now take steps to rectify the treatment. She questioned stonily. I hadn't realized it was abuse that he was undergoing at the time. Aizawa admitted with a shrug. I had thought it was just Bakugo's inability to work effectively with others. But you saw what he did to my son. She questioned, and when she got a nod in return, did she continue? So why did you not separate the boys when you realized the treatment? Did he treat other students similarly, or was it just my son? It was only Midoriya, he admitted, looking away from the angry mother. Yet you assumed it was towards everyone in class. I don't know about you, but that in itself is negligence. My son suffered under Katsuki and you continued to place him in danger. Why did you push instead of sitting down and talking with them or calling parents when it was obvious there was danger to my son? Her voice didn't raise at all, but the tone suggested that she dearly wanted to. There was a fierceness in this woman that neither expected at all. We are trained to spot signs of abuse, yes, but that does not make us infallible. We have made a grievous error in our judgment, and so we are trying to make up for it. All we ask is that we are given a chance, Nezu stated as he pushed papers to the mother. Allow us to get Midoriya in to see a therapist. One you can choose from and we will pay for. Then, we shall go from there and see what we can do to better improve the situation in both constitutions of the boys. 𝗏𝐻 kept her stare form for a long moment, silent as she judged the two teaching staff. She opened her mouth, ready to pull her son out of this school this instant despite him just moving into the dorms, only to pause as a weak tug on her skirt caught her attention. Izuku had uncurled himself from his position and made sure his mother was watching before his hands moved rapidly. Let them try. Her shoulders slumped and she sighed before pulling the papers towards her. All right, Izuku and I will go over all of who is here and get back to you. She paused and gave both a firm look that spoke of bodily harm if they didn't do as she said next. But I expect you to inform me of any more harm coming to my boy due to abuse or negligence. If not, I will not hesitate to pull him right out and enroll him elsewhere. We understand and we promise to do our best to keep Izuku safe while in our care. Nezu and Aizawa both bowed deeply as the two greenettes began to go over the list of therapists. E.g., he was exhausted by the time he got back to the dorms. The lights were turned off and all was quiet, and he was hoping to go straight back to bed, only to be stopped when a mop of blonde hair appeared in front of him. Follow me, Bakugo said as he walked out of the dorms. Izuku considered ignoring him for the longest time, not following him and going to bed instead. Except, there were things he wanted to know. Things that he wouldn't unless he asked them. He gulped as he thought about them before sighing and turning to walk out the doors and following the other boy to field beta. What is it you want? Izuku questioned as he looked at the blonde. This was a horribly idea. He should have stayed at the dorms and gone to bed. Why did he do this again? Oh yeah, he had questions. He watched as Bakugo walked until he came to a stop in the middle of one of the streets, Izuku quickly backing away and out of reach so that he could dodge if it came down to it. The greenette watched the blonde's back, waiting to see what the other planned to do. It seemed like an eternity before the blonde finally looked over his shoulder at the other. That power of yours ... you got it from All Might, right? He questioned, narrowing his crimson eyes. His head snapped back as if he was slapped. When he had followed Bakugo out here, that wasn't what he had expected from the other. Since you aren't denying it, I'm assuming I'm right. Fuck. The blonde growled out as he turned to fully face the other. We've both wanted to be like him growing up. What's it got to do with anything? He signed as he watched the other warily. He wasn't sure if the other was paying attention to his hands, but he had to try. The weak little fucking pebble I was going to use to step up and become the best. Bakugo continued. Got the goddamned recognition from him without me ever realizing it. He held a hand out to the other, palm facing up as his shoulders tensed. Because of that, let's fight, here and now. What? Izuku could only stare at the blonde in horror as he stretched out his arms. If you don't want to get hurt, then fight me seriously. The blonde slammed forward, right arm reaching for the greenette. Izuku didn't waste a second as he dodged out of the way, avoiding the blow that would have slammed into his leg if he hadn't moved. He tried to open his mouth and shout at the other, but his voice hadn't returned after the meeting with his mother. He couldn't talk. He couldn't yell. All he could do was dodge as Bakugo slammed forward towards him with explosion after explosion. Fight me. the blonde shouted as Izuku finally flipped back onto his hands and slammed a foot into the other's chest, pushing him backwards away from him so that he couldn't land a hit on him. "Why are you running from me? Why are you not fighting me?" Izuku couldn't respond even as he bounced backwards again. He really should have stayed in the dorms and gone to his room. This was obviously something about the blonde's pride again. Was this really why he had come out here? To scream at him about the fact that he had gained All Might's power and not himself? E.g., why was it that no matter what he did, he was always behind Deku now? Why was he always lagging behind and unable to do anything to push forward and get stronger and stronger than all of them? But Deku had gotten stronger before he had realized. When they were kids, Deku had always ran behind him and the others. He had always been weaker and slower and unable to keep up, always offering to help him when he fell, like he pitied him or something. It made his blood boil. "Why?" he screamed as he shot forward once more, slamming a hand against the other's face and letting off an explosion. It wouldn't be enough to scar, but it would singe and burn for a good day or so before it faded. "Why was it you that was chosen?" he screamed when Deku managed to kick his feet up and knock off one of his explosions, causing him to fall to the ground. He screamed once more as he stood up, ignoring the look Deku sent him, unsure what to do. "Well, it was my fault. My fault that All Might ended up losing everything." He remembered the bony figure, pointing his finger at the camera and the dust flying around the emaciated form. It was a nightmare that he had wished he had never been a part of. It was something he didn't want to admit or deal with. Why was I the one that ended All Might? BG, he couldn't believe it. This bastard. This was why he brought Izuku out here. To scream that it was all his fault that All Might had fallen and that Izuku hadn't have been able to get one for all and become stronger. That pissed him off. "Fuck you," he screamed as he glared at the other teen who was staring at him startled. "You think what happened to All Might was your fault? How self-absorbed can you get? He was there to rescue me, you dipshit." The blonde's hands popped and crackled while his eyes glared determinedly at the greenette. "If I was stronger, faster, a better hero, that would have never happened." "Yes, it would have," Izuku screamed right back as he stomped forward. "You know he had given me his power, a power I'm trying to make my own. Because of that, he was losing his strength already. It would have ended anyways no matter the circumstances. But why did it have to be me? Luck of the fucking draw." Izuku flipped onto his hands and slammed a foot into the other's face, sending him flying. "If this is all you dragged me out here for, then I'm going back to the dorms." "Fuck no it ain't." Bakugo was already up and flying back at the other, and before Izuku could counter, a blast sent him flying backwards. "I'm going to fight you to prove I'm still the best. That a shitty nerd pebble won't stop me from climbing the fucking ladder." Izuku ducked down and slid underneath the other, moving to run, but was instead slammed face down into the concrete. He growled as he pushed power into his arms and legs and instead sent himself flying up into the air. He knew that if he wasn't careful, he would use more power than 5%, but that didn't matter at that moment. So with that in mind, when he slammed into the ground, he shot forward, much faster than before. Katsuki's eyes widened as he crossed his arms to block, taking the blow from those red sneakers head-on before being sent flying backwards. "I'm done being your punching bag," Izuku screamed as he continued to shoot forward. "Bring it on, you shitty nerd." Katsuki moved to slam a blast in the other's face, but Izuku ducked the blow and sent a kick up at the other. The blonde dodged though and instead grabbed the other's ankle and threw him in the air. He followed a second later to take a shot at the other. "He'll think I'll send a kick at him," Izuku thought as he positioned himself to make it look like he was going to kick. "He knows I've changed to kicks to avoid strain to my arms. He won't expect me to use them, even at 5%. With that he moved and instead slammed his fist into the surprised blonde's face, only to howl in anger as Katsuki flipped it, grabbing his wrist and spinning them around so Izuku took the brunt force trauma of when they slammed into the ground due to an explosion that Katsuki sent off. He could only lay there as Katsuki kept a hand on his face. One hand held his arm and his foot kept pressure on his opposite wrist. Izuku hated that the blonde was right. "BG, I'd give you both house arrest. But I don't trust either of you in the same building." Aizawa growled as he glared at the two students. "With that in mind, Midoriya will be working with Nezu and Bakugo will be here for his house arrest." He growled at the two. "You'll also not be allowed to stay alone in the dorms. And Bakugo, count this as strike one. 2 more chances and you'll be expelled." The two didn't look at the teacher and neither looked at each other. Aizawa sighed before waving them off. "Get off to bed. Midoriya, report to Nezu in the morning. Bakugo, you still have anger management classes, so make sure you're ready for those." He watched them walk off with limps and grumbles, Toshinori following them to keep them from further arguing. He wondered how he was going to help either student when all they seemed to do was fight when anywhere near each other, though he was rather proud that Midoriya fought back instead of taking the abuse. Hopefully this was a step further for the green-haired teen to healing, and hopefully they'll be able to help Bakugo heal himself from his own trauma and anger issues. Either way, it would take time to tell for sure. Heartbreaking, he sighed as he trudged his way through the school, wearing his favorite green sweater and some blue jeans. He figured since he wasn't actually going to school, he'd just be comfortable. If Principal 値ū didn't like it, then he could send Izuku back to the dorms to be changed. It'd be more of a hassle for the principal than for him. Either way, he didn't care. He huffed as he passed by the filled classrooms, where all of his classmates were currently sitting and waiting to begin classes. He wondered what it would be that A was going to be doing with the principal. As far as he knew, he hadn't done anything like this before, and it was unprecedented for him to do this. Well, he'd find out either way why, since he was at the principal's door. "Come in, Midoriya," he heard before he could even knock. He entered the room. "Though I would have preferred the school uniform, I do not dislike your current wear." There was tea in front of the creature, and those beady eyes were centered on the student. He grunted as he stepped forward to stand in front of the desk, taking in the phone that was settled directly in front of him. "I have a feeling I'm not going to like what you're about to say," he muttered with a tired sigh, too exhausted to care about what spouted out of his mouth at the moment. "We are going to call your mother and let her know what happened last night, as I agreed to do when any dispute between you and Bakugo occurred." He leaned forward and tapped in his mother's number, the phone already on speakerphone. His shoulders slumped. "Do we really have to?" "Yes." They listened to the ringing. "Hello, this is Midoriya & Co. How can I help you?" The voice was sweet and all, but this was the voice that his mother used with customers. The voice that said she was only putting up with the bullshit because she had to and not because she wanted to. That voice meant she was tired, and that meant she worked night shift. This conversation would not go well at all. "Yes, hello Mrs. Midoriya. This is Principal 値ū of you. I hope I didn't interrupt your morning." The principal's own cheerful chirp made chills go down Izuku's spine. He was sure the two of them together would not help him at all today. There was a pause that made goosebumps pimple on his skin. He didn't like this at all. "It's only been a couple of days since we last met, Principal. What could possibly have happened in the time since then?" "Yes, I know, but it seems that separating them in class was not enough. We'll be further separating them by placing Midoriya into the teacher's dorms so that there will be no chance of him or Bakugo confronting each other." He began to explain as he kept steady eye contact with Izuku. "We are doing this because Bakugo confronted your son and asked him to follow him for a talk. Your son decided it was a wise decision to follow, and the two got into a fight. I will give Mr. Midoriya the fact that A did fight back even after he tried to run away." More silence for a long period of time. "Is he in the room with you?" He gulped heavily. "Hi Mom. I'm proud of you, Izuku, for standing up to him." He blinked in surprise at that. "But I expect better of you. You do not follow your abuser, and you will stay away from Bakugo-kun until I say otherwise. Do you understand me, dear?" The threat was clear in her voice, even as the pride fought to override the disappointment that she obviously felt. "Yes, Mom, I understand." He nodded his head as well, even as he looked away from the principal and to the floor. "All right. Now, as for moving him, I agree. I don't want to separate him from his friends. But I don't want him to have the temptation of confronting Bakugo-kun again. I do hope you will find a way for him to spend time with his friends. I don't want to take that away from Izuku after everything else he's been put through. But of course, I thought that a teacher could supervise in the lounge of the students' dorms. I would even take several shifts as well to prevent confrontation." He explained his plan. This would hopefully allow Midoriya time with his friends while keeping any confrontations to a minimum. He would not be permitted to stay after curfew and would be required to return to the teacher's dormitory with the supervising teacher, as long as the teacher knows that he is to stay in the room until they leave for the night. If they take one eye off of him and something occurs, then I will prohibit visits to the student lounge. Once that occurs, you'll have to figure a different way for him to see his friends outside of class," she stated calmly. But of course, 値ū agreed easily. "Now that we have that covered, we've also decided, because he agreed to leave the dorms after curfew, that he will be spending the week with me. This is a trial period as well, to see if what I've heard is true, and if it is, then I'd like to make it a course for him to work on his analytical skills." Izuku's eyes snapped up as he stared at the principal, who was taking a sip of his tea at that moment. "Ah, you must be talking about his notebooks." Izuku flushed at the mention of them. "I wonder, have you seen them yet? I'm sure they were in his dorm room when we were setting his room up." "Notebooks? I didn't realize there were such things. I'll have to take a look at them then." The principal raised a non-existent brow, watching the boy as his face flushed full and then began to go down his neck. "Ah, yes, you'll have to. Well, if that's all, then I think I'll let you go, Principal." "Izuku, sweetheart, I love you and I'm so proud of you, baby." "Thanks, Mom," he whispered as tears misted over his eyes. "I'll talk to you later." "Okay, baby. Have a good day, Principal." "You too, Ms. Midoriya." With that, the line disconnected and Izuku was left in the office with the principal. "Now, what is this about notebooks?" Izuku could only flush a deeper red than before as he tucked his head down. "HB, this is bullshit." Katsuki growled to himself as he glared at the piles of bags in front of him. All the asshats in his class had taken complete advantage of his house arrest, pushing chore after chore after chore onto him. It was bullshit. He also knew that he deserved it in the end. Either way, he still hated it, especially as this would mean he'd have to go out to the back where the trash cans were and then be right back in. He'd be trapped in the building the rest of the day until his meeting with his counselor, and then he'd return. All the other asshats were in class with that fucking hobo. And the shitty nerd was with the fucking rat. He hated being stuck in here. He sighed as he shook his head and picked up the trash bags. All right, one trip or die. He growled to himself as he began to walk through the dorm to the entrance. He'd have to walk around the entire building to get to the trash since the back had been locked, so he had to take the long way around to get to it. Of all the shitty things, he grumbled as he got to the front entrance, only to come to a stop when ectoplasm and All Might walked through the door. "Ah, young Bakugo, I see we're hard at work." The blonde smiled down at the younger one. "Don't mind us, we've just got to take care of some business here. TCH, whatever." He grunted as he pulled the bags back up and walked out. It didn't matter if the teachers were doing something, it was none of his business. With that in mind, he kept moving towards the garbage, tossing them into the dumpsters. All this bullshit. Well, if you stayed out of trouble, you wouldn't be stuck as you are. He looked at the wall just above the dumpsters and came face to face with a face. What the fuck? Explosions burst from his fists as he leapt back. "Oh, sorry for startling you." The eyes blinked as the head tilted in the wall. "The fuck you did, you creepy-ass dollface." Man, he wanted to slam his fist into the wall and explode it, but he knew that would be going against his counseling, so instead he clenched them and let them smoke instead. "The fuck are you doing in the shitty wall? Shouldn't you be in fucking classes?" "Aw, yeah, see, I just got back from my internship," the guy explained with a bright smile. "I saw you and you looked upset, so I thought I'd try and cheer you up, but it seems like that's just how you look in general." The creepy doll eyes winked at him before disappearing. "Well, better get back to work before you get in more trouble, son of a bitch," he snarled before turning away and stomping away. He didn't know what that creepy doll eyes wanted with him, aside from annoying obviously, but fuck was it weird. Whatever, fucking doll eyes. He grumbled as he shoved his hands into his pockets and returned to the front and moved to walk through the doors, only to step aside as he kept a hold on the door so that ectoplasm and his clones could walk out with boxes loaded up in their arms. The hell is going on? It took another 5 clones to exit the building before All Might left behind, carrying nothing. "Well then, young Bakugo, please return inside. I don't want you to get into trouble for being out of the dorm too long." He sent a smile at the boy and reached over, ruffling the hair gently. "Knock it off, All Might." The blonde quickly knocked the hand away, scowling at the older man. "I'm not shitty Deku, don't fucking treat me like him." He turned and walked back into the building, though his mind was wondering what exactly they removed from the building. Nothing in the common room seemed different than before, same with the kitchen and dining room. Why were they here? He looked around the place, the areas he had the ability to look into, but found nothing different there. What did they remove? To be fair, he had known he was to be moved out of the dorms and moved into the teacher's building, but he hadn't actually thought it would happen. But he was looking at his room, set up like it had been in the students' dorms, but only in the teacher's dorms. Though he had to admit he was going to enjoy his personal living room with the small kitchenette that was in there as well. What made it even weirder was the fact that he was sat between Aizawa-sensei's and All Might's rooms. He sighed as he settled on his bed, laptop on his lap, going over material that Nezu had sent him. Material on analyzation and planning around different types of quirks. There were also quizzes and tests that the principal wanted him to go over and send back. Something about analyzing Izuku's own abilities and capabilities on the mental plane. The principal had asked him to hand all of his notebooks over, requesting that he give them to Aizawa-sensei when he got to the teacher's dorms. The man would then bring the notebooks to him. He didn't understand why he couldn't just bring them to the principal, seeing he was to see the creature every day for the next week. He could bring them with him the next day even and just hand them over to the other. Only he knew that Aizawa-sensei would be here to pick them up soon. The man had to deal with his class, but he would be here soon. He sighed and looked over to where the notebooks were sat on one of his shelves, all 15 of them. 2 having been made during his time here in UA. He wasn't sure if he wanted the principal to actually see his notes. No one but his mother and Bakugo had ever seen them. And really, he had made sure no one else had, though he admits that having rewrote all of them in code. It had taken much of his time while in his dorms, hanging with his friends in his room. It also helped that he had almost all of them coded and the older ones had been destroyed and their ashes flushed. It had hurt him, but he had done it to try and protect those he had written about, especially his classmates. Though he knew that only 2 others had read them, he had felt that others could get their hands on them and use them. The League could have gotten the notebooks. He grimaced at that thought before shaking his head. He had fixed the problem, and since there were only 3 others that knew his code, well, he figured that it was all safe in the end, especially since it would take someone of great creativity to figure out his code. He smirked at the thought of someone looking at his code now, especially without knowing what it all meant. A knock on his door brought his attention from the laptop and the second quiz he had finished. 1 second. He wasn't surprised to find Aizawa-sensei standing at the door, looking at him with his ever-tired expression. "Hello, sensei. I'm assuming Nedzu sent you to get my notebooks." He turned and walked over to the bookshelf. "Problem child. What would Nedzu want with these notebooks? I know you wrote about your classmates, but I couldn't read it." He remembered looking at the page of Todoroki, the pages of his other students that he had created. "I thought of the code you made and applied all the breakers I've known. I don't think I've come close to breaking it at all." Izuku smiled at that as he gathered the notebooks into his arms, looking down at them sadly. He had a feeling that he wasn't going to be seeing them for a very long time, if ever again, though he couldn't tell you why. "Here they are, sensei." He turned and held the notebooks out to the man. "Take good care of them, please." "Of course I will, problem child." Aizawa gave him a nod as he took them into his own arms. He could see the tension in the child's shoulders, as well as a sadness in his eyes, though he didn't understand why. These were only notebooks that he could rewrite if he ever wanted to. "Now, it is getting late. Go to bed." Izuku could only gulp as he watched his teacher leave his room with the door clicking shut behind him. He didn't even try and stop the tears from falling down his face, knowing that a big part of him had been taken away without his teachers knowing or understanding. "HB, have you heard about what happened?" Mina whispered to Kirishima from where they sat on the floor. Zero and Kaminari sat above them on the couch, with Bakugo sat off to the corner where he could look at his little group. "About Midoriya," the redhead muttered back with his own saddened eyes. "Yeah, I heard." "What about Midoriya?" Kaminari questioned next as he turned and looked over the couch to stare at the kitchen table, where the self-proclaimed Deku squad were sitting quietly, all with confused, sad, or blanked looks. "Did he get hurt again?" "It wouldn't be anything new if he did." Zero chuckled as he cracked his neck and stretched his arms above his head. "I'm just wondering what villain he got into a fight with when he was supposed to be in detention. I mean, yeah, that's what normally happens with Mido bro, but I don't think that was the problem this time around," Kirishima admitted when he glanced over at Bakugo. The blonde snarled at the redhead, having heard about what had happened and putting the move of boxes together. "What the fuck are you looking at, shitty hair?" He knew what the other was thinking, honestly. He wasn't worried about it either. Let the shit for brains think what he wants, as it wouldn't affect who he was. He wouldn't just change because the other wanted him to. Not even because he wanted to as well. Kirishima sent him a sad smile before looking away to continue the conversation with the other 3 dumbasses of their so-called squad. He had heard about Deku being moved out of the dorms, had heard him being put somewhere else, all because they had fought the night before. He snarled as his palms exploded with his frustrations. It was all his fault, just like with All Might's end. "HB, read them." The text read on his phone, his eyes blinking tiredly as he held the notebooks in his arms. "What are you up to, you little rat?" he grumbled as he walked into his room, where he had come to a stop as he received the text. The principal wanted him to know something, but he wasn't sure what it was, had no clue as to what he could possibly have planned, especially concerning the coded notebooks. His phone beeped again. He sighed as he looked at a code breaker, one he had never seen before. "Use this to read the 13th notebook. This is the code breaker for that notebook only. The others have different ones." "Well, I guess I better start." He sighed once more as he sat on his couch, notebook in his lap. He opened the notebook to the front and looked at the inside cover. There was coding there, so he would start there, at the beginning. "This is notebook 13. And my name is Midoriya Izuku and I am quirkless." "That can't be right," he mumbled as he looked at the decoder and then back at the notebook. There was no way Nedzu had got this wrong, though there could always be a first, which was completely zero. "Whatever, guess we'll see what Midoriya has hiding in this notebook of his." "HB, so, did you enjoy your assigned reading?" He sipped at his tea as he looked at the teacher in front of him. "I don't know what you are planning, but this isn't going to help." Aizawa snarled as he slammed the notebook on the desk, making it bounce before it settled. "If anything, it's going to make me push him further into counseling than anything. I'm assuming you also read the analyses on the latter pages as well as the first few ones. I asked you to see that one because he has the newest heroes on the scene in them. I wanted to have your opinion on them." He stopped and stared at the other with a raised brow. "But it seems you read the cover and first few pages. I knew the risk, but you still needed to see it, to maybe understand your student a bit better now." Understand how my student was neglected by his previous teachers and abused by his fellow classmates. Understand how he was all alone except for his mother that didn't even believe in him then either. He was practically foaming at the mouth now. How he didn't have a quirk until the entrance exam and so had to work from ground zero all on his own to figure out how to control said quirk. He was breaking goddamn bones. I could have helped if I had known that. Did you not read his files? Nedzu opened a drawer and pulled said file out. It was all in here for you to see. Aizawa could say nothing as he looked at the file. He got his students' files at the start of the year, every year, but he didn't actually read them. It tended to make a biased opinion, and he wanted to look at them with fresh eyes free of opinions. So he hadn't actually looked at it. hadn't even opened it. He realized he had made a mistake because of that. He shook his head as he reached over to the file and picked it up. The notebooks spilled over Nezu's desk. The rat could read them as he pleased. He already knew that Midoriya wouldn't be getting them back from what he read in the one. It was too dangerous to allow a student to keep those notebooks. It could lead to disaster if a villain was able to decipher them. Inside of Midoriya's files were the records from his middle school, records showing a story that didn't match up to his student. From what he was reading, Midoriya shouldn't have even been able to apply to the school. Detentions upon detentions for cheating on tests and assignments, getting into fights, drug dealing, skipping classes, disruption in classes and assemblies. There were even marks for drug use and alcohol consumption. I don't understand, he mumbled as he continued to look over everything. His grades were acceptable, B's mostly, but a couple of A's and C's. There were complaints from teachers of how rude and disruptive he was, how he would not listen and would ignore them. None of this sounds like Midoriya, none of it. I've been doing my own research, Nezu admitted as he steepled his paws together. I was curious about a boy with such a horrendous file would bother applying to UA when he should have known he'd be ignored. That was true as well. UA's screening process was harsh and allowed no exceptions to pass through their doors. You had to have a spotless record with an acceptable grade point average if not higher. How was he accepted into the school? Nezu met the other's eyes with his own as he smirked. The school board normally has the last say on who is allowed in, but in this case, I had an exemplary hero give a glowing recommendation. I would have opened up a spot for him, but because of his records, he had to go through the general application process and exams. A hero recommended him. Even with a recommendation, with his records in the state they were in, he would have been rejected from even taking the exam. It had to be a hero high up in standing for the boy to be allowed. What hero? Come now, Aizawa. You are smart, can't you put the pieces together? God, he hated it when the rat wanted him to think, to be smart, and expect so much from him. It was annoying and tiring. But to be fair, this one was easy to figure out, mostly because All Might couldn't hide how much he cared for the problem child, especially when he was secretly training the boy. Honestly, this is getting ridiculous. He ran a hand over his face before looking at the files. Even still, none of this can be true. The problem child isn't any of this. The principal pushed a cup of coffee towards his employee. I agree, even just from the one session I've had with the boy. This file is false. Everything I've read here is false. I've already started an investigation on the school itself, but there must be an interview done with the principal and some of the teachers there. And you want me to go and deal with them? He sighed as he realized what this meeting was truly about. It was so he could begin to see what was truly going on with his students and their past. That's right, you'll be the hero that'll be investigation the corruption of Adura High. He could only sigh as he realized how busy his hours outside of the school was going to get even more busy than before. He stood in front of the principal's desk, looking at where all of his journals were stacked off to the side, well out of his reach. I've decrypted and read all of them. Your code is highly complicated and difficult, even for me to decode, and I suspect that was exactly what you wanted. What are you going to do with them now? He questioned next, knowing exactly what was written in those notebooks. Years of analyzing and theories and thoughts were mixed in with his blood, tears, and soul. He had a thought about what was going to be said, and he hated it greatly. Because of the information held within, even with how well they are encrypted, it would be dangerous if they were to fall into the wrong hands. We've encountered villains with minds similar to our own, and I suspect they'd be able to decrypt it and use the information inside. He met the teen's eyes, watching as they darkened with a sorrow that only an artist at the loss of their beloved work could experience. You'll be keeping them then, right? He questioned as one of his hands twitched, as if wanting to reach out and clutch the notebooks to himself. Am I ever going to get them back? Eventually, once you are strong enough to protect them or have a secured location to hide them. Until then, I'll be keeping them with me in my own domain. He gave a gentle smile towards the child as he pushed a cup of tea towards him. But fear not, I will not keep them from you. If you ever wish to see them, all you need to do is let me know and I'll allow you to see them here in the office with me. That way we know no one will be taking them and using their information inside. Yes, Principal, he agreed, only because there was nothing he could do about it. His notebooks were a part of him, but he knew the danger they posed as well. That didn't mean it hurt any less to leave them here in the possession of the principal, an individual that could decode his encryption and so could protect them. I know this will hurt, but in time you will understand why I have made this decision. But until you can understand, I'm sorry I must remove them from your possession. He bowed his head shortly before taking in the tear tracks the child was crying. It felt like his heart was being ripped from his chest. The one thing that got him through all of his school career. Writing about heroes and their abilities, trying to find a way for him to be a hero even as he was quirkless, with no real power but the one he had in his head, his mind. But those notebooks had all of him in them. His heart and soul and tears and blood and fears and dreams. They were a part of him that he had leaned so heavily on to survive the hell that had been his life. Now he was losing them. so he couldn't and wouldn't stop the tears, not when a part of him had been ripped from him. He sighed as he looked at the file once more, wondering what he was going to do. He had set up the appointment for 𝗲𝗏 for the next day. He had a substitute set up to watch his classes as well, and he knows that everything would be fine with ectoplasm watching. Clones came in handy in these situations. But then he was also lucky that he wasn't going alone either. 𝐻𝐵 was going as well, thankfully agreeing when he asked. There was a few things he was going to have to keep an eye out for. Also things that 𝐻𝐵 knew to keep an eye out for as well. He shook his head as he remembered the names in the files he needed to speak with. One being the principal. That was going to be a hard one, especially since he was sure the principal was riding the coattails of the problem children, using their success of getting into UA as a way to get better funding. It was the normal thing for schools to do once they get students into a hero school, to use them to get funding and higher standing. This could lead to a load of things that could lead to trouble. It wasn't exactly the ideal situation in general, so Aizawa would have to watch what he said and did at the school. Luckily, with his 𝐻𝐵 going along, he'd have a well-known spotlight hero with him to help talk circles around the principal. Hopefully that would help out to get the information he wanted. Either way, this was going to be troublesome, but it would hopefully lead to a better understanding of the two problem children, or it'll be more trouble. He grumbled as he laid his head on his desk. He really didn't want to deal with this. Shattering View's provisional licenses. The class screamed as they looked at the clone-producing hero. That's right. What those licenses mean, you'll be able to participate as actual heroes while under the guidance of another pro hero. With these experiences, you could grow much more. He looked at the 18 students in front of him. With this in mind, that's why we're here at Gym Gamma, to begin training for the exam. And that's why we're here as well. Midnight exclaimed from next to 𝗵𝗲 with a wide smile on her face. We'll be helping you create super moves. Super moves. Each student looked at each other in confusion for a second before something seemed to click in Momo's mind. Oh, the moves that heroes use that normally finish off an opponent. She looked so excited about the aspect that she was almost bouncing in place. Correct. Super moves are special moves or abilities that a hero has that they use to gain an advantage. 𝗵𝗲 pointed towards ectoplasm, much like his giant bite detention that he used on 𝗵𝗃 and Tsukuyomi. It almost guarantees a victory in battle, but not always. For your provisional license exams, we'll help you develop moves to do just that. Midnight cheered them. We'll be going around to give advice, but otherwise you'll have the run of the building. Just ask 𝗵𝗲 here if you need something special done up, or if you need a partner, ask ectoplasm. I can also give ideas for those with less sparkly quirks. Alright, now get to it. What about Midoriya and Bakugo? Uraraka questioned as she tapped her two fingers together in worry. Will they have enough time to train for the exams too when they get out of detention and house arrest? Don't worry, we'll be taking care of them as well. Midnight assured with a soft smile. We aren't going to let them fall behind, but they've still got to be punished for their fight, especially Bakugo, but we won't let that interfere with their growth. The Gravity hero in training nodded her head, along with several of the others that had stayed behind to hear the answer. Alright. With that she turned to go work on moves. This is going to be awesome, Kirishima shouted as he looked at the area around them. Oh man, time to come up with moves. Yeah, I agree, though I wonder why Aizawa isn't here. J-Iru twirled her earlobes around a finger. Oh yeah, I wonder why too. Normally he's always here during out hero training. Ribbit. Sue held a finger up to her lips. Don't worry about him, he had an important mission to go on today, 𝗵𝗲 stated calmly. He and Present Mike won't be attending classes for the day, so you'll having us instead. Any misbehavior though will be reported to Aizawa, so I would behave if I were you. The class all shuddered at that before nodding and separating. It was time to get to work on their special moves. Asfi, this is bullshit, Bakugo growled as he hauled a bucket up to the 3rd floor of the building. He had to wipe down the windows that day, along with vacuum and wipe down surfaces as well. Between Raccoon Eyes and himself, wiping down the surfaces they touched was important. It was why he had spent so much time cleaning the bathrooms. The chemical compositions could be dangerous, not to mention that if the right type of chemical mixed with them, an ammonia could be made and become noxious. Though it wouldn't be so bad if he had helped to do all of this. But no, he was on his own on this bullshit house arrest while that shitty nerd got to go and spend time with the damned rat. Whatever he was doing there, it was nothing compared to what he was going through at the moment. Well, fuck that. He'd use this to improve himself even a little bit. If he could add some weight to his limbs while training or something. He'd have to think on it, because he knew his classmates were doing special training and he was falling behind already. He could feel it even as it was the first day of the special training. He could sense those stepping stones turning into stairs, and soon it would be mountains he'd have to leap over if he wasn't careful. It would be harder to become number 1 that way, if he was to fall behind. Either way, he'd fight against it and be the best of them all. No matter how strong those extras got, he'd beat them all into the ground. He growled as he wiped at the windows furiously, scowling at his reflection as it became clearer as it got cleaner. He wouldn't fall behind, no matter what. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, your abilities in analysis is rather amazing, Midoriya. I'm surprised I haven't seen them in your grades, 𝗵𝗲 stated as he looked over the results of the tests he had gotten back. All of the IQ scores and puzzle tests told him more about this boy than he had thought, one being that his grades should have been better than what they were. This kid was much smarter than he was letting on, even though he answered several of the questions wrong, so badly that he was sure the boy was faking his abilities with tests. The boy shrugged his shoulders at this, looking down at his hands that were twisting in his green sweater once more. 𝗵𝗲 had allowed him to get away with dressing down at the moment since he wasn't in actual classes, so he shouldn't have to be uncomfortable. I'm just ordinary, really. Nothing special. The mammal's eyes narrowed on the boy at those words, watching him with such intensity that the boy's fidgeting was getting worse the longer he kept it there. He clasped his paws together as he looked away from his computer, taking in the child even more. There was something there that was bugging him, something he wasn't like a single bit as he thought about the file that came from 𝗳𝗲𝗏. Tell me, Izuku, 𝗳𝗲𝗏 wasn't exactly the kindest to you, was it? The rapidness of how fast the boy paled made the mammal think he was going to pass out. 𝗬𝗵𝗲, the middle school was lackluster. That was his first thought as he looked at the plain brown building with several floors worth of classrooms and offices. The iron gates were still wide open to admit students into the clutches of this building. He could see students through the window, all sitting at their desks and writing in their notebooks, though the one on the second floor third window was sleeping. Anyways, he wasn't looking forward to this meeting, to the interviews and the demands for the security tapes and so much more. He sighed as he glanced to the side where his oldest friend stood with a wide grin on his face. Thanks for agreeing to come with me again. But of course, Sho. Mike's grin widened as he glanced over at him as well. Though why we need to investigate this place is beyond me. Mind letting me in on the secret? The other man just shook his head as they entered the building, heading for the main office. The other man would find out soon, though he was sure that having Mike there meant he'd have someone stop him if things got a little out of hand. Hello, welcome to 𝗳𝗲𝗏 Middle School. How can I help you today? The secretary asked, a plain-looking woman with long brown hair and a ponytail, wearing a white blouse and a pink skirt. She was no one impressive but very professional looking at least. We have an appointment with the principal, he stated, cutting straight to the chase. We're representatives from UA. Mike added on with his winning grin, charming the woman almost instantly while she gave Aizawa a weary look. I believe we should have it booked for now if you just take a quick look for me. But of course, 1 second. She tapped at the keyboard before nodding with a smile. Yes, right here, 2 representatives from UA. I'll let the principal know you've arrived right away. She picked up the phone next to her and hit a button. The representatives are here for you, sir. Yes, sir, right away. She waved a hand at a door behind her. The principal will see you now. She gave them both a clean and straight smile before returning to her computer. Aizawa huffed at the obviously fake smile but moved towards the office door anyways. Thanks for the help, listener. Mike waved towards the secretary, but followed the other male. He knocked on the door before the other teacher could slam the door open and scare the shit out of the principal. It was only once they got permission that the voice hero allowed the other to open the door, bouncing off the wall and almost slamming back onto them. Welcome to 𝗳𝗲𝗏, the principal exclaimed from behind his desk, arms spread wide as if to accept them into a hug. I'm so happy to have reps from UA to come to our school. Aizawa nodded his head as he walked to stand in front of the desk, ignoring the chairs set there, though Mike was more than happy to sprawl over one of them. We've come to speak with you about 2 of the students that we've got. He wasn't here to waste time, so he was going to get straight to the point. Ah, I see. The principal's face relaxed but the smile stayed on his face. The man was a warthog, or at least resembled one with his brown skin with a black mohawk that moved from his forehead down towards his neck and disappeared underneath his white dress shirt and blue jacket. His tusks stuck out directly in front of his face and his snout wiggled as a smile overtook his face. It was a little grotesque, but the worst part of the smell of dirt and sweat that permeated strongly from him. I believe you're talking about Bakugo Katsuki and Midoriya Izuku. That's correct. What can you tell us about them yourself? Your opinion is highly appreciated in this situation. Mike sent finger guns at the man. The principal leaned back in his seat as he thought about what he wanted to say. Aizawa was about to prod him with a scathing comment when he opened his mouth. Bakugo Katsuki was one of our best students, a delight to have in class and always polite to his teachers. He was always quick-witted and smart, aced all of his exams and homework. He chuckled and rubbed at his tusks. A good student with an amazing quirk. We all knew he'd make it into UA and would become a great hero. The 2 teachers from UA gave each other raised brow looks. It was obvious that something was definitely going on here. Neither thought it was good. What about Midoriya? Aizawa prodded. Oh, him. The frown on the man's face appeared far too fast at the mention of the green bean. That wasn't a look that should be associated with the teen in any way, especially with how kind and gentle he normally was. Midoriya Izuku. A surprise he was in the end, with how he got into UA. He was always a stubborn, ignoring his teachers and disrupting class with that muttering of his. The man shook his head as he clasped his hands together. Not to mention we're still not sure how he did it, especially considering his condition. Mike sat forward with his hands on his knees, concern decorating his face. There was nothing in his file about a condition. The principal sighed as he looked at the two with pity, as if they had no clue what their question had just done and the damage it would do. We don't know how he faked have a quirk, but we know the truth about his quirklessness. His what now? The blonde raised a brow in disbelief as his dark-haired companion scoffed. You must be wrong because that kid has one of the strongest quirks we've seen in a long while. That's the thing, he must be faking it, the principal stated. He's always been a troublemaker, causing trouble for his classmates, but he's smart enough to figure a way to cheat, like he did in class to pass tests. Everyone knows that those quirkless are too disadvantaged otherwise. The two heroes blinked at this, unable to process that statement. This man couldn't honestly believe that those who were quirkless were stupid, could he? I don't think you're. Either way, he was nothing but trouble. We did all we could to make sure that he got the actual help to pass his classes, tutoring and extra classes. We also made sure he didn't cheat either, though there was only so much we could do and that was only in the classroom. That didn't stop him from doing other things as well. I'm guessing you're talking about the drugs and alcohol in his file, Aizawa stated, his face cold as stone and his voice just about to cross over into his hero voice. Yamada realized that if he didn't do something soon, then the other was going to tear the other man apart. Yes, we found him multiple times in other rooms, surrounded with bottles of beer and needles. He was always rather out of it or asleep when we came upon him, but it was obvious what was happening. The principal waved his hand. Honestly, we should have just expelled him, but until we actually caught him consuming or using just the aftermath, and since his mother is a lawyer, well, we couldn't expel him. He shrugged there. So you just assumed it was him without any actual evidence. Aizawa's voice was deepening and Yamada was just going to sit back and watch this. He could already tell that he wasn't going to be able to stop this now, and honestly, he didn't want to. Midoriya was such an adorable green bean and so polite and kind and attentive in classes. What this pig was saying was something completely out of a fantasy book. No, it was obvious it was him. He was always surrounded and so out of it that it was rather hard not to know. The principal waved his hand. We made sure it got into his records either way. That way any future school would know what kind of trouble he was. The blonde leaned back in his seat and crossed his legs just as his friend slammed his hands onto the desk with his hair flying up into the air. Obviously his quirk was activated. Nothing you're saying is true. He spat at him. The principal snorted in shock and then squealed in anger. I can assure you that I've said nothing that isn't true. I'm sure you think it's true, but nothing that's come out of that mouth of yours sounds anything like those two students. He growled a moment as he stood up straight and his hair fell back around his face. Bakugo isn't a model student. He's rude and disrespectful towards all around him, including his teachers. He's so cocky and overconfident that he has had failed several practicals because he refuses to work with others. He'd make a better villain at this point than a hero. Then Midoriya is so self-sacrificing that he could literally kill himself before he ever becomes a hero. But he's so smart and skilled that 𝗫𝗠 of all people has taken notice of him. Then there's the fact that he is anything but quirkless. He has a powerful strength quirk that has broken his bones more than once before. The principal sat there quietly as he stared up at Hiro, wondering where this was going. Maybe that's her own opinion, but I can assure you that that's what they were like for me. Then you're either acting ignorant or a failure of a teacher in school. You've harmed not only Midoriya but Bakugo as well, and I'll make sure that you pay for such neglect. He glowered at the man. It seems that I'll need to have 𝗫𝗠 to fully come down on this place. I would suggest you relent and follow all demands of the soon arriving investigators for this establishment. That last word was sneered in such a way that the pig shuddered visibly. I think that's our time to go, Yamada said with a tense smile. You'll be getting an email from 𝗫𝗠 soon. I suggest you follow his directions if you don't want to fully lose what standing you have in the school district. With that he stood and walked out of the office. They weren't even going to bother interviewing the other teachers, already knowing what they would get at this point. None of them were looking forward towards this at all. We'll have to talk to them both as well, he said with a tense smile. Aizawa sighed and nodded his head. Yeah, I know. Neither looked back at Alder and Middle. SV classes were over and the students of one had decided they wanted to do something to relax a bit, especially since it was a Friday and they had the weekend off. Come on, I've already gotten permission from Aizawa, and as long as we all stay together, we can go. Mina whined at them all. We can't all go. Bakugo would be left behind and that's not fair, Kirishima stated with a frown. I'm staying behind to keep him company. Yeah, I'll stay behind as well. I'm not interested in going. Xiaoji agreed, with Kuta right behind him. He didn't care for large groups shoved together like that much. I do not enjoy sitting in the dark with strangers to watch a movie we could watch later in the comfort of my own home or setting, Takoyami stated next as he turned from the group. Well, I'll go. We could use a break. Kaminari agreed with a smile, along with the rest of the Baka squad, aside from Kirishima. I'll go to help you stay out of trouble, Ida stated with his arms waving around like always. I'll go too, so will Tsu and Deku. Uraraka gave a smile and peace sign as said people nodded along, and soon the rest of the class agreed to go as well. It was time to get some relaxation and fun time before the provisional licensing exam came as well. What was the movie we wanted to see? Ida questioned with a raised brow, hoping that it wasn't too bad of a one since he wasn't always the best with scary or sexual content. The only real movie that's supposed to be good is called The Attack of Evil, Mina announced with a wave of her pink hand in the air. It's about a spirit that takes over heroes and makes them do horrible things around them before killing themselves. Why would you want to see something like that? The class rep screamed even as the others laughed at it. That could actually happen to us. Relax, Ida. It's only a movie, and even if it does happen in real life, I'm sure it won't be that bad, Uraraka said with her own smile. Come on, it won't hurt to watch it. It's all in good fun. Either way, we'll have to use our IDs to get in. Since it's rated pretty high, they don't want little kids sneaking in without an adult, 𝗵𝗲𝗄 stated as she pulled at her own purse to begin searching. They were already closing in on the theater, so they would need the piece of plastic soon. Make sure you have yours out and ready to use. The class nodded their heads in agreement and each pulled out their wallets or went through a purse to find said piece of plastic. This is going to be great, Minda crowed happily as he looked towards the girls. Being in the dark with all the girls. This is a chance to touch some boobies. God, you're such a scumbag, Minda. Jiru grunted as she slammed an earphone jack in the side of his head. Yeah, we'll make sure he's stuck between us guys. Make sure you girls don't have to worry about him, Izuku stated calmly, pulling his own ID. Thanks, Midoriya, that'll let us enjoy the show even more. Toru waved towards him, the arm of her long-sleeved shirt helping him spot this. Take all my fun away, why don't you? The grape boy grumbled. All right class, line up and be ready to buy your tickets. Have your ID out and ready to use, Ada exclaimed as they came to the theater, quickly lining up to buy their tickets. Hey, should we use our normal IDs or will our school ID work? Kaminari questioned as he looked at his school ID. I would think either one would work, Zero said as he pulled out his normal ID, the one he used to make sure to get money on his train card. Though it sucks we can't get it renewed until we're 18. I don't really like the one I got at 14. Yeah, I know what you mean, Ajiro said with a nervous chuckle. My own looks a little funky because of the hairstyle I had when I was in middle school. He looked down at his ID and saw the mohawk he had sported at the time. Well, we'll be able to change it once we're older. No worries there. Uraraka smiled as she bounced forward in line. She was right behind 𝗵𝗲𝗄 and Tsu was behind her. Let's just enjoy our time out at the moment. Yeah, we don't know when we'll be able to get out again, Ribbit, Tsu added on. All right then, here you go. 𝗵𝗲𝗄 handed over her money before taking her ticket. I can't wait to enjoy this movie with you all. Same, they cheered back, the line steadily moving forward. I can't wait, Izuku said as he looked up at the big theater. It was a bigger and more fancy-looking one than the one in his neighborhood. That one was more small-time and less expensive. It was also the only one that would let him in to see a movie with his mother back in middle school. I haven't been to a theater like this one before. Oh, I would have thought you'd been to this one before. It's pretty close to where you live. Todoroki looked at his friend with a tilted head. The greenette smiled nervously as he rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, well, we didn't really care to watch movies in theaters so much. We mostly just waited until they came out on DVD to get, he explained, though he had to admit to himself that it was more troublesome to try and get into a theater than to just wait for the movie, especially with how some places treated him after seeing his ID or when a classmate outed him in the middle of the theater. I see. He gave a nod before looking forward, the line having moved quickly as they each paid for their ticket. Looks like you're up next. Izuku nodded as he pulled his ID out, placing it at the counter. 1 ticket for The Attack of Evil, please. The attendant looked bored as she picked up his ID and took a long look at it. It was making him nervous and wondered what was going on. It wasn't until he watched her face twist into a disgusted sneer and hate flared in her eyes that he looked at the ID he had handed her. He felt his blood drain from his face and felt completely lightheaded. He'd handed her the wrong ID. Get the fuck out of here, you piece of trash. She spat as she tossed the ID back at him like she had been burned. We don't serve your kind. He stumbled back and into Todoroki, who steadied him with a hand on the shoulder. What do you mean by that? He's a student of UA and a hero in training. The fuck he is, the woman stated as she picked up the phone. Now leave or I'll call the police to remove you from the premises, she warned. I don't understand. What's the problem here? 𝗵𝗲𝗄 questioned as she stepped up, her head tilted in confusion and concern in her eyes. We just want to watch a movie. And he presented his ID like the rest of us. The attendant sneered at her as she hit a button on her phone and said some quick words before hanging up. We don't serve people like him. He's a spot on society and shouldn't be allowed among us normal individuals. What seems to be the problem here? A young man walked forward, dressed in a fancier jacket than the attendant, marking him in a higher position. That kid is quirkless. We don't serve people like him, and I've explained it to them, but they refuse to understand that. The attendant pointed a finger at Izuku, who was holding his ID against his chest with his head bowed. The class burst out laughing at that, giggling as they all looked at the attendant. You must be mistaken. Our friend here isn't quirkless, Mina stated as she tried to control her giggles. If anything, he's one of the most powerful in our class at UA, 𝗧𝗏 stated with his own laugh. He's taken on some pretty big guys too. Not to mention he's got his provisional license as well. May I see the ID you presented to the attendant? The man asked as he held a hand out to Izuku, who looked up at him with dread. But he held it out at the urging of his friends, who just wanted to get in and watch their movie. The man was quiet for a long moment before the sneer appeared on his face as well, and he tossed it back at Izuku like trash. It seems that someone is lying, because his ID says he's quirkless. While we accept many number of quirks here, we do not allow the quirkless in. They are a disgrace to society, and so we do not allow them in our establishment, he explained as he stood straight. The group of soon-to-be heroes all froze at that as they turned towards Izuku, wondering why his ID said that when he had the most powerful quirk among them. But then something else tickled the back of their minds. You refuse service to the quirkless? 𝗂𝗏𝗏 questioned as she turned to the manager, eyes burning with anger. That's correct. We're allowed the choice of who we serve, and we've chosen to refuse that service to the quirkless, he explained calmly. They're of no use to society, and they bring a bad reputation to any establishment they go to. Stupid and useless and unable to do anything correctly. Izuku hunched down further into himself, turning away from the man as his hands began to shake, having trouble putting the ID back in his pocket. But that's quirk discrimination at the worst, Mina exclaimed as she glared at the man. Not to mention that assuming someone is stupid just because of a lack of quirk is ridiculous. It's cruel to think that just because they don't have a quirk that they can't do something either. The vice priest spoke up next, her face firm. This is absolutely cruel in all sense of the word, not to mention inhumane to think of people like that, Todoroki stated as he moved so that he was in front of his friend. Know that I'm the son of Endeavor, the #1 hero. I'll be making sure that everyone I know will avoid this place, and any reputation you had is now dead. He sent an icy glare at the stunned-looking man before turning back to Midoriya. Let's go. I didn't really want to watch that movie anyways. Izuku nodded and followed his friend. Yeah, we didn't want to watch a movie anyways. I want my money back, Mina shouted. Me too, Toru shouted next as they got back in the man's face. Same, give me back my money. 𝗂𝗏𝗏 held her hand out, along with a nodding Tsu. Izuku could only cry as he listened to his classmates and friends all ask for refunds and followed them out of the area. So, why did your ID have quirkless on it? Todoroki questioned with a raised brow, stirring his bowl of cold soba as he thoughtfully stared at his friend. I would have thought you'd have superpower on it. The greenette didn't look up at him, or the rest of the class that was scattered around the restaurant they had found, deciding their money would be better spent on food than a movie. They were all looking at him, waiting for an answer, making sure no one out of the class could come near them to listen in by accident or purpose. Because I was quirkless, Izuku finally admitted as he stared at his pork katsudon, stirring it mindlessly. He hadn't really been hungry, but Todoroki had insisted and even paid for his meal. My quirk didn't show up until the entrance exam. Wow, no way, Kaminari and Mina exclaimed in shock, along with several of the others. But that's impossible. A quirk has never come in that late before, Ada stated as he adjusted his glasses in shock. The latest a person has ever been recorded in gaining their quirk is 6. I've never heard anyone getting theirs at 15. Yamomo held a hand up to her chin in thought, trying to figure out how this was possible. Though with how often he breaks his bones now, I wonder if he would have blown his limbs off before. Ribbit. Everyone turned towards Tsuyu. His body just wasn't ready for the power it held then. It had to grow and get stronger before he could use it. 𝗧𝗏 smiled at that. That makes a lot of sense. Several of them shouted out in excitement. But that means you lived as quirkless for the first 14 years of your life, Todoroki said next as he looked at the greenette. I wonder, the way you were treated at the theater is the same you've been treated everywhere. That quieted the class down as they turned towards the green bean, eyes wide and horrified. He chuckled and nodded his head. Yeah, that's just how quirkless people are treated nowadays. It was quiet for a long time after that, until 𝗂𝗏𝗏 spoke up, rage burning in her voice. You went to middle school with Bakugo, she stated as she looked at him, shoulders stiff and fists clenched. He knew you were quirkless in middle school. Realization was dawning on several of the others' faces, eyes widening in horror and anger. Izuku shrugged at that. I'm going to murder Bakugo, Todoroki stated as his chopsticks lit up in flames. Get in line, the gravity hero stated next. Guys, no. Izuku trailed off at the look the two sent him. He's treated you horribly now, but if you were quirkless before and unable to protect yourself, 𝗃𝗏𝗏 began. Add in the way he attacked you the first day of class and is always calling you Deku, even before you used it as your hero name. Todoroki added on. The way he continually attacks you and calls you useless, the hatred towards you. I would have never have pegged Bakugo as quirkist. The bastard. 𝗃𝗏𝗏 finished. That got everyone's attention, focusing on their food now but none eating anymore. And honestly, Izuku couldn't find it in himself to try and protect Bakugo. There was nothing in him that wanted to protect the boy anymore. He just couldn't. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, what was it you found out about the school? Nezu questioned as he looked at the two teachers with a tilted head. That they're a bunch of bigots that need to be completely destroyed, Aizawa stated with a scowl on his face, glaring down at his hands in his lap and already coming up with multiple different ways for that goal to be accomplished, all without being caught. What he means is that they were cruel to Midoriya in school. I'm sure you've already requested security footage from the school, so we'll know what all was done to the kids soon enough. In the meantime, we can tell you that the descriptions we were given of the two students were complete and utter lies. They stated that Bakugo was perfectly polite and did as told while Midoriya was nothing but a disruption. Aizawa cut in with a glare. It seems we've got more to do to help those two than we thought. We already have them in therapy and Bakugo is already in anger management as well. We'll continue working with them over time, but if we rush it, then it could just end up hurting the boys more. Nezu huffed as he pulled a cup of tea out of nowhere. In the meantime, we'll investigate 𝗏𝗏𝗏 and most likely shut the school down and put the students there in a different school. Aizawa growled but nodded his head. Are we done here? Yes, of course. I'll let you know how things are going with the investigation later. I wish you two a good evening. He waved at the two teachers as they began to walk them out. Continue on with the training for the provisional license exams. The two nodded and walked out, heading towards their own building to get some rest. Hopefully things would work out in the end, but Aizawa wasn't sure, especially after what he found out about Midoriya. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 bastard. Bakugo yelled out in shock as eyes slammed towards him. Todoroki, wait. Ida shouted as Kirishima jumped in front of Bakugo. You can't just attack him out of nowhere like this. Why not? He did the same thing to Midoriya for years. He shouted back, his glare landing on a startled blonde. He tortured him and abused him for years. And for what? Because he was quirkless. Get out of the way. 𝗃𝗏𝗏 screamed as she slammed forward, slapping Kirishima on the shoulder and floating upwards. She slid forwards to get at Bakugo, but was stopped when a tongue wrapped around her waist. You can't be getting riled up like that, Ochako. You'll only get in trouble. Tsuyu stated as she pulled the struggling brunette towards her. We'll figure this out rationally, preferably with Mr. Aizawa here to talk to, Yamomo said as she stepped up. We can't be fighting each other over this, especially 𝗧𝗵𝗏. He's gotten much better than what he was at the start of the year. That doesn't mean he has any right to be here in the hero course. 𝗃𝗏𝗏 screamed as she glared at the blonde. He acted more like a villain than anyone else, picking on Deku like he has been. We know that, but that doesn't mean we get to hurt him, Mina said as she looked at the other boy, trying to figure out how such a strong person could be so cruel as well. We need to be better than him. Not only that, but you need to stay out of it. They all whipped around to stare at Aizawa, his hair standing on end with glowing crimson eyes. His hand was on Izuku's shoulder, holding him at his side. This has nothing to do with the rest of you. But Deku is our friend, 𝗃𝗏𝗏 shouted with Todoroki nodding his head in agreement. We should be able to protect him. Did he ask you to attack Bakugo? The raised brow spoke of the disappointment he felt in the two, who shook their heads but didn't show any repentance. Then you shouldn't be attacking him. Besides, the situation is being handled, and if you bulldoze into it, you could make it worse. The two huffed and stood down at that. Now, I want you all to get ready for bed. You'll have a long day of training tomorrow in Bakugo. You'll be off house arrest now, so you'll be joining as well. He glared at them all. That means working with each other, no matter the feelings you have about the situation. Be the heroes you are trying to become. That means working together. With that, he turned around with Izuku right behind him and walked out of the building. It was quiet for a long moment. 𝗃𝗏𝗏 and Todoroki glaring at the glaring explosive boy. Hey, could you let me down now? Everyone's eyes shot up to stare at Kirishima stuck up against the ceiling. Izuku sat on the couch in his rooms, staring at his hands as Aizawa sat on the table in front of him. What is it you wanted to talk about? He muttered quietly. The older man had been sitting there in front of him for what seemed an eternity. His stare had been on the teen for a very long time now, and it was making him anxious. I want you to write out a statement against 𝗏𝗏𝗏. That caught the green bean's attention, and he stared at his teacher in surprise. Why was he bringing up his old school? President Mike and I made a trip to your old school to see what they would say about you and maybe get a bit more information about you too. It didn't go well, I'm sure you can imagine. He bowed his head and nodded his head. He could just imagine the spiel the principal had about him and how perfect Bakugo was. I wasn't a very good student, he said as he gripped his pants tightly. No, that caught his attention and he looked up to stare at his teacher with wide eyes. They were terrible teachers. They were supposed to help and protect you, to encourage your dreams, and find a way to push you to better yourself. The man's eyes were glowing red and his knuckles were white from how tight he had them fisted. They failed you and were going to make up for it. But to start, I want you to write a statement about the abuse you went through at the hands of students and teachers alike. Midoriya gulped as he felt tears prickle at his eyes, wondering if they would believe anything he wrote down or if they'd take the other school's side. I want it all, Midoriya. Aizawa leaned forward, arms braced against his knees. His eyes were stern and calm, but confident. All of it. The abuse, the apparent drug and alcohol use, the neglect from the teachers. I want it all. I want to know exactly all that has happened to you, and if you want, I'll bring Tsukachi into it so that everything you say will be proven true. Izuku could only stare at the man with wide eyes, trying to figure out what was going on and why it was happening. Why was a teacher helping him now, of all time? Why now? He felt the tears falling down his face a second later and tried to wipe them away, but he couldn't get them to stop. They just kept falling and nothing he tried got them to stop. Aizawa just sat there and waited, letting the student cry and waited for an answer. Okay, I'll do it. Honestly, getting his provisional license was easy and he could hardly believe that he managed to do so with most of his classmates. Todoroki and Bakugo hadn't managed to get theirs though. To be honest, Izuku had known that the blonde wasn't going to be able to get his license due to his attitude. He had improved, yes, but he was still harsh and rash and just rude in general. So the blonde's failing was expected and it made something in his chest purr at the thought of succeeding where the blonde had failed. He had made sure to shove that deep down where no one could see it. Either way, it didn't matter in the end as he sighed and shook his head, especially as the class waited for the day to start and for Aizawa to appear. He felt like something was going to happen this class, especially after they got their licenses. He knew that their teacher would want to do something to increase their training or to give them a different perception. It was how their teacher was after all, throwing curveballs at them at all times. So he wasn't surprised when 3 third years were invited to speak with them, nor when the biggest of the 3 invited them all to fight him at once. See, he wasn't very sure if he wanted to actually fight this guy, especially as he watched him struggle with his pants. After he had taken out Bakugo and Kirishima and Ajiro, he had taken out Ishido, Tsuyu, Ochako, and Kaminari just as quickly. Mineta, Hagakure, Jiru, and Yamomo were next. Ida, Kuda, Satu, Siro, Shoji, and Aoyama all fell in what felt like a blink of the eye next. He gulped and his gaze darted over to where Todoroki was watching next to Aizawa before looking back to where Mirio was standing, smiling at the younger teen. It seems that that's all left of your class now. He shifted as he took a fighting stance, but that smile stayed on his face. Izuku could only stare at him as he realized just how bright the other boy was with that smile on his face, his eyes shining in the light like sapphires. He didn't really know this boy, didn't know what true power he held, but he already knew that he could rival All Might one day. Just from the way he held himself and the way he acted, it was all similar to his mentor and hero. Yeah, I'm the last one, he agreed as he lowered his body close to the ground, taking a stance that he had seen Aizawa-sensei take a few times to give him extra speed and reaction time. That's what he was going to need to face against this 3rd year. Reaction and timing would lead to his victory. He had to remember all that he had learned while under Nezu, if only because it was a week and he was sure there was much more he could gain from the small mammal. He'd use all the enhanced analysis classes to gain ground here and hope he could find a weakness here soon. The only thing he had noticed was when he held his breath just before he fell into the ground. That was the only thing he saw aside from his ability to predict. Permeation, he muttered as he met the surprised teen's eyes, his own widening in realization at why this teen seemed familiar. I had seen you at the last sports festival the year before. The 2nd year that consistently lost his pants and came in complete last place, he stated as he prepared to move, waiting for the right timing. The student that came in last now in the top 3, meaning you either forfeited your chance at winning or you found a way to use your quirk in a way you needed. Oh, well look at that, you seem pretty well informed. I wonder why you didn't inform your class about me. He tilted his head as his eyes narrowed in his own thought. That's because he didn't learn it before just now. Aizawa cut in with a smirk on his face while the others all watched from the sidelines. Believe it or not, Midoriya literally just remembered that just now and put all of what he just saw together. He had seen that spark in the teen's eyes, similar to what Nezu and himself got when they remembered something important or saw something they could use to their advantage. The blonde gave a surprised huff as he stood tall and ready to attack. Either way, unless he knows how I'm attacking, he still doesn't stand a chance, he shouted as he took a step forward and disappeared into the ground. The greenette gulped as he flipped around and ran a solid 5 yards from where he stood before turning back to face where he had originally been and sunk down towards the ground once more. He had to wait. The longest a person has ever held their breath without a quirk's help was about 25 minutes, but he doubted that this guy could hold his breath for that long. He was guessing more towards the 5 to 7 minute range. Then there was the fact that he was popping up out of the ground rapidly and quickly, meaning that his quirk, permeation, was allowing him to fall into the ground. But because basic physics had to come back into play at some point, it meant that his mass couldn't match up with the Earth's and was so forced out of it instead, meaning that he was using that force to pop himself to places he wanted to be, predicting where his opponents would be in those seconds before he reappeared. He had to use that to his advantage. He smirked as he caught the 𝗵𝘃𝗲 of the third year, leaping forward as the other paused for that second. His fist slipped past the other's head before it was grabbed and he was flipped over the other's shoulder in a throw. He couldn't waste a second as he twisted his body to the side and avoided the kick to the stomach and held his arm up to block the fist heading for his face. He didn't close his eyes as the fist phased through his head, instead twisting his arm block into a backwards swing that brushed the top of the other's hair. It was then that he felt a hand grab a hold of his shirt collar. His back hit the floor and the air left his lungs. "I like this one," 𝗵𝘃𝗀 exclaimed as his pants were thrown at him by Aizawa. He predicted a lot of my moves and only lost because I managed to slip through him and grab a hold of his collar when he wasn't looking. Whoa, he was really fast too. I've never seen someone push you around like that before. 𝗫𝗫𝗫 was bouncing on the tips of her toes while 𝐼𝐺𝐿 kept his head bowed. Though you won in the end, so I'm not too terribly surprised by that. 𝗵𝘃𝗀 went full out again. 𝐼𝐺𝐿 shook his head as he looked at all the groaning and grumbling students, some of them still laying on the floor. He really needs to learn to hold back sometimes. 𝗵𝘃𝗀 there, for a punishment for going out after curfew, was under the watchful eye of Principal Nezu. Aizawa sent a small smirk at the three shocked expressions. While under the watch of the principal, he was taught and learned from that rat, so I'm not surprised he was able to keep up with you. I see. 𝗵𝘃𝗀 nodded before smiling and looking at the rest of the class. Well, that's what you could learn from work studies. With that, homeroom ended. See, you've been hiding things from me again, Izuku stated as he stared at the blonde in front of him with tired and sad eyes. It hadn't taken too long to find the older man while he was on his jog, using his quirk to catch up to him in a set pattern that would take him to areas he knew the older man preferred. The older man gave a small cough at that before sighing and nodding his head in agreement. There's more to it than I told you earlier, about my relationship with 𝗫𝗏. The reason why 𝗫𝗏 and I stopped working together is much worse than you think. What was it? He questioned as he looked at the other with worried eyes. There are only so many options that he could choose from to try and fill in the blanks that All Might was leaving out. Gran Torino must have known this too, which was why he had mentioned Sir 𝗫𝗏 as a possible agency to do his work study. The retired bro sighed as he looked at his successor. 𝗫𝗏's ability, foresight, he used it on me while I was recovering from my surgery. Back when I first defeated All for One. He held a hand against his side where his scar was. I'm sure you know what foresight is, and I'm sure you already know that he's never been wrong when using it before. What's that got to do with anything? He could feel his shoulders hunch and he couldn't stop himself from wrapping his arms around his stomach. He had read about 𝗫𝗏, had guessed and hypothesized about what his quirk meant, but he could find little because the man kept it a tight secret. 𝗫𝗏's ability, he's able to see the future, more precisely, a single person's future and all that they will do and will happen to them. The further in the future he gets, the grainier it gets, he explained calmly as he tilted his head off to the side. When he used it on me, against my wishes I might add, he saw my death. That sent a shock through the greenhead, his eyes widening as what was said slammed through his whole being. It was something he knew he had to hear and had to know, but there wasn't much he could do against the actual words. He wasn't sure that he would be able to stop them or to keep All Might from falling to what his once sidekick had told him. How long? He whispered out. The sigh that released from the older man told of weariness and exhaustion, one that kept a firm hold on the man for so long. 6 or 7 years, we weren't quite sure. Either way, I know when it's time, I'll go with a smile, but until then, I'll. No, Izuku shouted as he glared at the stunned man, bright blue eyes staring at him in incomprehension. I don't care what Sir 𝗫𝗏 says. I can't become number one without you. I need you here with me, helping me get control of One for All and use it to save people. You can't die until you see me become the hero you told me I could be. So you have to promise not to give up until then. He held a fist out to the other. Yagi could only stare at his student. Those bright, determined eyes that spoke of such fire. It was something he had seen when he had first offered his quirk and continued to see again and again and again. One he was going to see when this young man became a hero. He smiled as he knocked his fist against the boy's. It's a promise, my boy. Izuku smiled at that. See, he hated himself right now. Completely and utterly hated himself because he fell right back into the habit of trusting heroes that would do nothing but hurt him in the end. He could hardly believe how he had gotten stuck in this situation, but at the same time he could because he had let All Might come up with a way to introduce him to Sir 𝗫𝗏. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 was in a work study under the once sidekick, and so had been Izuku's way into getting into the hero's agency. He had taken it full-heartedly and was excited to meet the sidekick, the one that had gotten All Might to take him on and work well together until their falling out. He just wanted to be a better hero, and he thought that this hero would be able to do so in the end. He had been wrong. "You aren't worthy to be the successor for One for All," 𝗫𝗏 stated as he pointed at the boy in front of him. "But as a favor, I'll allow you a chance to join my agency. All you have to do is take this and stamp your application," he explained as he pushed his glasses up and watched the bowed head of the boy. "You have 3 minutes. Izuku, though, wasn't really listening after that first sentence. Really, who did this guy think he was? Did he really think just because he was the sidekick of All Might so many years ago that he could tell the man who was worthy and who wasn't? Did he think he have any hand in the quirk in the first place? Who the fuck did this guy think he was telling him that he wasn't worthy of the quirk that he was given by one of the greatest men he had known? Sure, All Might sucked as a teacher at the moment. He was constantly stumbling and not really giving any advice that Izuku could really use, much like when he had first received the quirk and then not really trained him after that for a while. It took 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 kick-starting it for the blonde to really get his ass in gear. Not to mention his judgment sucked when it came to people and how they interacted. But then again, that was most people at UA, it seemed. His relationship with Bakugo, for example, was such an interaction the man had thought simple rivalry until Izuku had opened his mouth and stood his ground. But that didn't mean he couldn't make his own choices, that he couldn't make his mind up about something or choose his own path. He was strong and wise enough to do as he pleased with his own quirk and who to pass it on to. He didn't need this guy's permission or blessing or whatever it was he had come here to do. He didn't need this man at all. He could find a way to improve without this asshole in his life. So, with that thought, he bowed to the man instead. "I think I made a mistake," he stated as calmly as he could. "It's obvious I have nothing to learn from you here." The man blinked as he looked at the young man in front of him, brows furrowed as he watched the reel in his mind stutter for a second before continuing on. "Oh, and what was that mistake?" he questioned as he pushed the reel to the side, not seeing anything different than he had earlier on. The boy would still be joining his agency, so nothing had changed. He didn't understand the stutter there for a second. "Because you're no different than the people who told me I couldn't be a hero." The boy stood up then, eyes glowing with a fire even as they darkened with something he couldn't place. "You'll only take me on so you can try and make me give up One for All. That's the only reason you'd take me. To make me give it to someone else you believe deserves it." Correct. 𝗫𝗏𝗧𝗏 didn't bother hiding his intentions, especially as the boy already knew them. "𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 is more deserving of the quirk than you. He has the smile and drive that All Might did and does still possess. He'll be the next symbol of peace, I'm sure of it." He nodded to himself, as if he was truly in the right. "That's why you should hand it over as quickly as possible. The sooner he has time to gain control over the quirk, the better. But that's not a decision you get to make." Izuku growled out as he clenched his fists, lightning flaring up around him. "You didn't have this quirk. You never held it and it was never given to you and you never gave it away. So I don't understand why you think you have any right in thinking where it should go." He could feel the blood beginning to pool where his nails dug into his skin. "So what the fuck do you think telling me what to do with it when you have no control or say in what I do now?" His eyes snapped into a sharpness that caught the hero's breath. The man almost wanted to take a step back but held his ground instead. The film in front of his eyes stuttered again, and this time, he noticed a change in the reel. He no longer saw the flashes of a battle between him and the boy. No, that was completely gone, completely out of sight now. He gasped as he realized that the once stone-solid future he had seen had completely changed. This quirk was All Might's and his choice was me, and now it's mine. Izuku almost completely snarled. "I won't let you make me give it up just because you're an asshole who thinks he has any right to control another person because he's afraid." "Afraid?" he questioned as he focused on the child once more, ignoring the continued stuttering of the film and how it would change minutely at the moment, several paths opening up like he had never seen before. "And why do you say I'm afraid?" "Because you saw All Might's death. You and I both know that's true." They kept their eyes on the other, neither looking away now. "But that doesn't mean you get to decide on how he lives the rest of it. That doesn't mean he can't fight the fate you've seen and make it different. I won't let him break his promise and I won't break mine to him." 𝗫𝗏𝗧𝗏 frowned at that before huffing at the child. "It seems that I might have underestimated you." He walked over to his desk and quickly stamped the document. "I'll hand this in and you can begin working tomorrow with 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏." He needed to figure out how this child had changed the future like he had. He had never seen the reel completely change like that before, and it was something he needed to figure out so that he could save All Might. "I already told you, I'm not going to work here." That made the man pause, staring down at the stamped document before him. "It was a mistake coming here. It's obvious I won't learn a thing from you. You'll only hold me back while trying to make me give up One for All." With that, the teen turned on his heel and walked out of the office, leaving the man stunned. See, honestly, Izuku wasn't sure what he had expected out of the man. That had been a bullshit interview and he wasn't going to harm himself by putting himself in another abusive situation. He had done that with Bakugo and he wasn't doing it with another if he can help it. If that meant he wasn't going to intern with Sir Night-Eye, then so be it. He would find a different hero that could help him improve his techniques. Someone who was similar to his own abilities and capabilities would be ideal. He was so inflamed that he ignored the older third year, waving at him with a smile that quickly halted and turned into a worried frown. He ignored Bubble Girl, who was watching him go with a sad smile and a shake to her head. He ignored 𝗵𝗲𝗃, who was watching him go neutrally. He left the building behind, done with wasting his time on people intent on slowing him down and making him do things they wanted. He had learned from Bakugo to never bow and to never give up. He wasn't going to let a hero take that blonde's place. He was so incensed and ignorant of his surroundings that he was bowled over by a little girl while passing an alleyway. "See, sir?" Mirio questioned as he walked into the office, the door almost completely torn off its hinges from how hard it had slammed into the wall. It was obvious that Midoriya had been incensed and lost control of his quirk. "What happened?" The man sighed as he looked down at the document in front of him, his stamp held tightly in his hand. "It seems that I've miscalculated on how much that boy would take. Is this about one for all again?" Mirio had known about the quirk for some time, Sir having been grooming him to take it on for a while now, though the blonde had thought that he would most likely refuse it if the symbol of peace ever offered it to him. "Yes, it is. That boy that just walked out of my office, he's the inheritor of One for All, an unworthy child that has no idea how to use it and how to be a symbol for the new world," he explained as he turned to face the intern. "I had intended for him to pass it to you, a much more worthy candidate." "Well, that's stupid." Night-Eye stared at the teen in shock, taking in the completely serious look on the other's face. "Mirio, I hadn't told you yet, but I was going to refuse taking the quirk if I was ever offered," the teen stated sternly. "I already have a quirk that's hard to control. Adding on another would have just made it worse, so it's null and void topic to begin with," he explained with a smile on his face. "I'm going to be the best with my own power, not one you made another person give up. I believe that would be the best course, not only for you but for All Might and the rest of humanity," Night-Eye stated. "Not with what I've seen in the future." Blood and screams. The horror of watching All Might fall to his knees as the monster over him reached down with all 5 hands to finish him off once and for all, the skeletal form of the man unable to prevent his coming fate. "But that doesn't mean you try and force someone else to give up." Mirio sighed as he ran a hand through his hair, before smiling. "Midoriya has potential that I've seen, that I've faced. He's the only one out of the first years that lasted more than 5 seconds against me. He predicted my movements and kept up. He isn't someone you just brush aside." Night-Eye could only watch as his protege smiled widely. "I have no doubt he'll be number 1 in the future." That was when Night-Eye felt a tug and he looked back at the reel in the corner of his eyes, gasping at what he had just seen in the next few minutes. "CO, are you okay? You took a bit of a tumble there," Izuku said as he looked at the little girl that was against his side where they were on the sidewalk. She had ran into him so hard that it had knocked him over. He looked her over and took in the long silver hair and the little horn that was extending from the corner of her forehead. She wore a short-sleeved white dress. What really caught his attention though were the bandages that were covering her arms and legs and the trembling encompassing her entire body. It was obvious she was afraid of something that he wasn't understanding. "Hey, are you okay? What's wrong?" He pulled her up into his chest and wrapped a hand around her back and one underneath her bottom. She couldn't be older than a 4-year-old, maybe a 5-year-old, but that was pushing it with her size. "Please," she whispered, and Izuku had to listen closely to hear it. She was so quiet and so scared, he wasn't sure what to do. "It's okay, I'll help you." He stood up, keeping a firm hold on her and holding her tight against his chest. "Let's see about getting some help. Maybe we can find your parents." "There won't be a need for that." A voice called from the alley and Izuku turned to stare at the man that wandered out, white-gloved hands at his sides as the black fur on his green bomber jacket swayed in the breeze. The crimson and gold-plagued doctor mask hid most of his face, but Izuku could see the other's golden eyes and how cold they were. "Come now, Eri, don't bother the teen. He looks like he was just heading somewhere." No worries," Izuku murmured as he hunched over the girl slightly. "I was just heading back home when we ran into each other," he explained, heart beating rapidly in a sense he hadn't felt since he was in middle school, cornered by Bakugo. A sense that said that he was in danger. "Who are you?" "Me, I'm Eri's father, of course." The man held a hand out towards the girl. "If you'll just hand her over, we'll be on our way." The teen gulped as his grip tightened. He didn't understand why, but he felt like this man was lying. His eyes were so cold, and the way that the child in his arms, Eri, stiffened when he was asked to hand her over spoke of more than just a father and daughter. "Please, help me." Eri's whisper reached him, along with the grip on his shirt tightening, and spoke of the terror she was obviously facing. He didn't want to hand her over, he didn't want to let her go, and so he didn't. He had learned to hold his ground, for good or worse. "I'm sorry, but I don't think she's really going to let go," he said softly, hunching tightly towards the girl. "That's fine, but Eri, we need to go. We don't want to waste this young man's time." The man's eyes narrowed as the little girl's trembling began to worsen. After all, I'm sure he has more important things to worry about. No, I don't, not really, Izuku exclaimed with wide eyes as he tried to think of a way to help take care of this girl. I don't really have anything going on. Not like anyone would miss me, he muttered as he thought about what 𝗏𝗏 thought of him, along with Bakugo. He was sure his friends and the teachers would notice he was missing at some point, but it would be a while before it happened. After all, he was supposed to be at the 𝗏𝗏 agency for a while, not expected to return until late that night. Oh, and why's that? The man questioned with a raised brow, now interested in the teen. Oh, because I'm quirkless, he exclaimed, and his eyes widened in horror. He hadn't meant to say that. That wasn't something he had wanted to say to anyone ever again. He wasn't quirkless and he shouldn't be telling people he was, but something inside of him had made him that it was the safer option. The man was quiet for a long moment before he seemingly made a decision and made a come hither motion with his hands. If that's so, then maybe we can help each other. Come with me and we can talk about it. Izuku gulped as he looked down at the girl in his arms. Eri's shaking had increased, but he couldn't make himself let her go, so he made a decision. He followed the man into the alleyway. See Aizawa. He answered his phone with a sigh, tired as he looked over applications in front of him. Some of them were applications for work studies and others for time off of campus for various things. It's 𝗏𝗏, was the clipped answer. Has Midoriya Izuku returned to the dorms yet? That caused the older man's eyes to focus as he sat up straight. No, he hasn't yet. I assumed he was still at your agency with Mirio, discussing a possible work study with you. There was a curse and a fist slamming onto the counter. I had hoped that what I saw wasn't true. Listen to me, Eraserhead. When Midoriya returns, you are to bring him right back here. He'll have information I need. Do not delay a second on this. Millions of lives could be on the line. With that, the man hung up on him before the teacher could respond. He sighed as he rubbed at his eyes, his phone clenched tight in his fist. What the hell did you do this time, problem child? He questioned as he stood up and walked out of his room in the dorms. He headed to the front of the buildings and stood, waiting for the child to return. He nodded at the other students that appeared and walked by him, speaking briefly with those that stopped, but otherwise keeping an eye out for a familiar head of bushy hair. It wasn't until almost 10 past curfew when he showed up. Where have you been? Aizawa growled as he glared at the student in front of him. His eyes narrowed further as he noticed the pallor the child had in the blood that was splattered on his shirt, eyes wide with horror. What happened? Izuku could only gulp as he looked up at his teacher and then collapsed on the ground, grasping at his chest as panic completely swamped him. The teacher was next to the student in a nanosecond, trying to figure out what had happened while trying to calm the other. Whatever it was, I was the reason why 𝗏𝗏 wanted him to bring the teen into his agency immediately. Mama Midoriya versus Endeavor. He had come home after the sports festival, gone up to his room, and tore down or thrown away anything that held Endeavor's face or symbol on it. His stomach churned as he remembered all that he had learned from Todoroki, the boy giving him his entire life story and the horrors that the flame hero had done to his own family. Tears rolled down his face as he tried to keep from throwing up or screaming, maybe even both. In the end, though, he sat on his bed with his head held in his good hand and cried for his classmate. He knew the hate and anger for a father figure, though his was more towards one that had left him and his mom when he had been diagnosed as quirkless. The man had never laid a finger on him but instead had left him behind to go to America, and last Izuku had heard, he had started over with a new wife and child. But that just made his hate for Endeavor even stronger, as he knew that fathers weren't supposed to be like this. They were supposed to love and care for you, much like Uncle Masaru did for Kaken, not leave you behind or abuse you into a weapon against another hero. Unfortunately, the two of them had been tossed into the horrible father pool of the universe, so he cried for the pain and hurt that the two of them felt and the horror the other boy must be going through at the moment at the hands of his father. He was sure the number 2 pro hero was upset at his creation's loss to an unknown. Not that it surprised Izuku that Kaken had won, the blonde being as powerful as he was while Todoroki had refused to use his fire side. Izuku, his head snapped up and he stared at his mother in horror, realizing that he must have been sobbing a lot louder than he had thought. "What's wrong, baby?" she questioned as she walked forward and laid a hand on his shoulder. "What can I do to help?" His mother had always been by his side, always helping him with things that he couldn't handle on his own, though he kept quite a bit away from her as well. The bullying and abuse when he was in middle school was a large part of what he had hidden, not to mention One for All and everything All Might related at this point. But this was too heavy for him to carry on his own, especially since it was too close to his own situation with Kaken and his middle school classmate. So, sobbing heavily, tears rolling down his face, and gasping for air, he explained everything that Todoroki had explained to him. The quirk marriage, the pregnancies, the forced training, his mother having a mental breakdown and tossing boiling water onto her youngest, And the forced separation afterwards. All of it. He told his mom everything the other boy had told him with a heavy heart. 𝗵𝗲 𝗵𝗃 was a meek, timid woman that cried at the drop of a hat. At least, that's what most people who didn't know her would say. And for the most part, they weren't wrong, not entirely at least. They were just missing a piece of the puzzle that would save them a huge bit of trouble if only they knew. But if one was to ask Bakugo Mitsuki, you'd get an entirely different response. 𝗏𝗏, she's not one you want to piss off, because if you do, you're in for a fuckery of a time. Don't expect to come out of that with your ass intact. Which was an apt description, especially when the smaller woman decided she was going to pull out her spine made of steel and give a what for. She wasn't a lawyer for nothing after all. And she had to stand up to more than one villain and criminal in the past, so she was used to holding her ground against much larger individuals with more volatile quirks. With that in mind, it took all her son had to keep her from marching out of the apartment into where Endeavor was, to serve him a child endangerment suit that would end up with that poor boy under her care instead of that abusive asshole's. She could completely destroy that man, because she knew, just like Izuku always knew, that pro heroes had plenty of surveillance in their homes. She was almost 100% positive that the number 2 hero had those cameras in his training room. She was going to use those same videos to destroy him. If only his son would let him. Izuku, I can easily have those videos confiscated and used as evidence, she explained as she tugged at her arm, trying to move, but the boy held his ground. She couldn't gain any more ground. Damn, those muscles were definitely coming in use for him now, without completely breaking anything else. He couldn't afford to break anything else, especially after the surgery he had to have done after the stunt he pulled. You know as well as I do that you have to have a case in progress before requesting those videos, he stated, face blotchy and red all over, and there were still tears making his eyes shiny. And if you go now, you'll give him a heads up and those videos won't be viable in court. You know that, Mom. She huffed as her shoulders slumped. Well, you aren't wrong. She allowed him to lead her back to the living room where they sat on the couch. Looks like we'll have to play the long game here then. Yeah, how are we going to do that? He asked as he picked at his cast. She swatted his hands away and instead placed a pencil in his working hand to allow him to fiddle with that instead. He had to work that anxious energy out somehow. I mean, what do we need to do to even begin a case like this? We'll have to gather some evidence, first of all. She began as she pulled a pad and pen towards her and began to write. If we can get one of the Todoroki children, preferably the youngest as he's taken the biggest amount of abuse, to talk and admit to the abuse, then we'll have a starting line. She quickly wrote down what she was looking for to begin this, hoping that her son, such a smart boy that followed along her work like he did his heroes, would be able to help bring more perspective and ideas to this. Do you think you could convince Todoroki-chan to talk with me and a police officer? The boy frowned as he thought before he shook his head. I doubt it. I'm pretty sure that I'm the only one he's ever told, and that's only because he thought well. He trailed off as his face turned red and he hid his face in his hand. 𝗏𝗏 raised a brow but let it go at the moment. Whatever the youngest Todoroki had been talking about, it wasn't important now. What was important was that they tried to put together a case to remove the boy from the prick. God, she hated abusers, especially child abusers, and always did her best to make sure they were removed from said parents. Only after sufficient investigations were done, of course. She'd seen families, good families, split apart due to insufficient investigations or because of a grudge someone held and those people had money to bribe. She wasn't about to do that now, so she would make sure that all investigations were done properly, went through proper channels, and that there wasn't anything that the asshole could do once the truth was fully found out. Anyways, no, I don't think he'll talk. I think I was just in ... confessor, you know, that one thing that churches have. He tried to explain, and despite have such an expansive vocabulary, he always stumbled over words. It made 𝗏𝗏 chuckle each time he struggled to find the right word for the conversation at hand. Yes, I understand. Well, if you can try and get him to talk, that would be marvelous. I'll do some research and see if I can't get in contact with other members of the family. Maybe we can get one of them to talk. She chewed on her lip for a moment before jotting down mother and circled it several times. We'll help him, she stated. Can we? The warble to his voice caught her attention and she looked up at her, finding his bottom lip trembling. Can we really help him, Mom? Tears fell down his face as he looked down towards his broken arm. I saved him from himself, but can we save him from a hero that's supposed to be protecting him? And wasn't that such a hard thing for her son to take in? Heroes were people that were supposed to save and protect, not to harm and abuse. This was the epitome of destruction to her son's world. Even though he had already lived such a hard life when everyone thought he was quirkless, this was a blow he had not expected, one that she should have prepared him for but hadn't had the heart. We'll do everything that we can to help, she assured him. We may not be able to pull him from his custody anytime soon, but we can do more than that now. For starters, you can invite him over and he could accidentally fall asleep here or I can very insistently make him stay the night. She smiled, gently ran a hand through his hair, bringing his gaze back to her. We can be a safe place for him if he needs it. He smiled and nodded his head. It wouldn't fix everything, but it would be a start. She had an entire list of things she was going to get done by the end of the year or she was going to scream. She had gone over several things that had concerned the Todoroki family, all of which was tragic, and she was surprised someone hadn't already opened a case against the Endeavor Agency and Hiro yet. The first thing was the death of the eldest child, Todoroki Tabata. He had been completely incinerated by his own flames during a training incident with his father. He was only 10 years old. It was almost a year after that Todoroki Ray had a mental breakdown and poured boiling hot water on her youngest's face and was institutionalized. No investigation occurred for either occurrence. There were several reports from nanas and babysitters that something wasn't right with the home. It was cold and quiet and the 3 kids never interacted all together. Only the 2 older kids talked while the youngest was isolated. After a report of possible abuse, no more caregivers of any sort were hired. She looked into the other 2 children of Endeavor and found that Todoroki Fayumi, age 23, the twin to the dead child, was now a teacher that lived at home with her father and younger brother. She was said to be a busybody, quiet and meek, and she kept to herself mostly. She otherwise focused on the kids in her class and was an absolute great teacher. Todoroki Natsuo, age 19, was the second youngest of the once 4 siblings. He was also the one that had completely left the house as soon as he was able and was attending college to become a doctor. He had gone out of the country to attend Harvard and was acing all of his classes at the moment. 𝐭 wasn't sure if she'd be able to get in contact with him or not, but she would try her best. Then there was Todoroki 𝗧𝗵𝗲, the youngest of 4 and the one that Endeavor was currently focused. She already knew what had happened with him and was occurring with him at this very moment. Started training as soon as his quirk began and was drove into the ground in exhaustion. Eaten and bruised and burned and frostbit and so much more. Not to mention the isolation from everything and so much more. She chewed on the end of her pen as she looked at her computer at her desk. She was trying to figure out how she was going to start gathering information and how she was going to start the official case. This was going to be against an actual hero, one in the top 10, top 5 of the hero charts. The commission, as they were always a pain to deal with, would shut this entire thing down as soon as they got even a little whiff of this. She'd have to be careful, which meant that she needed to find an officer that was trustworthy and not under the thumb of the commission. She had met many officers in the past due to her occupation, working with them to make sure that she could keep all sorts of people behind bars for as long as possible. Because of that, she knew several of them that could be of use, as well as many that would screw this entire thing over. With that in mind, she picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Hello, Officer Sansa, it's so nice to speak with you again, but I'm afraid this isn't a friendly call. I need to speak with you but in a place where we can't be overheard." She paused as she listened to the officer. "Yes, the usual place would be lovely. How about Friday at about 6 in the evening?" "Yes, that would be perfect." "All right, I'll speak with you then." She put the phone down and then saved all the information on the Todoroki family before closing them. There wasn't much she could do at the moment but wait to speak with Sansa, as he would be the key to opening this case and running it. Otherwise nothing would be admissible in court. She had to bid her time and she already knew that it would be worth it. "Well, hello there, you must be 𝗧𝗵𝗲. 𝗏 greeted as she looked at the teenager that had accompanied her son home that evening. It was Wednesday, almost a week after the sports festival, and it was a lovely surprise to see her son had brought the other home with him. Midoriya 𝗏, Izuku's mother. She bowed to the teenager lightly, watching as his eye twitched at the bow. "Todoroki 𝗧𝗵𝗲." He gave a soft bow in return before standing up. "I was unaware that Midoriya was speaking of me." "Yes, well, it's not often that Izuku doesn't talk about his friends. He gets so excited now that he has so many of them. He didn't used to have them, you know." She gave her son a bright smile, even as he turned a beet red at her words. "Mom, come on, he doesn't need to know that," he complained, waving his arms around. The right now out of the cast but covered in scars and the fingers were crooked. It didn't seem to bother him at the moment, but 𝗏 knew his pain tolerance was rather high, so she had to keep an eye on that. "Oh well, I guess I'll just have to let you boys head on into the living room and start on your homework. I'll bring in snacks," she said as she shooed them to the living room, ignoring how the boy looked at her with a tilted head. She turned and wandered into the kitchen and began to prepare some snacks for the boys. While she did that, she listened into them. "She called me 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Wow, she couldn't have heard a blanker but more confused tone of voice in her life. That was rather strange, but probably due to his stunted emotional growth. "Ah, yeah, my mom does that. She didn't it with Kakin and Ochako and Ida. She calls them by their names and with Chan for some reason." She heard a nervous laughter and she could just imagine her son rubbing the back of his neck, a habit she had picked up from Masaru. "I hope you don't mind." There was a long silence. "I guess not. I'm just not used to such familiarity." "Which wouldn't be surprising. The boy was isolated for so long that social etiquette had never been taught or learned in his younger years. At least he'll have a chance now that he goes to UA with Izuku. That's good. Alright then, we have that English assignment for present Mike and then that art research project for midnight. Which one do you think we should do first? The boys dove into their homework and 𝗏𝐽 smiled. This was a good start to establishing the apartment as a safe place. 𝗏𝐽 was hoping that a few more visits would allow her the chance to speak with 𝗬𝗪 about maybe testifying against his father. It might take a bit, but she didn't mind, as long as he had a safe place to escape when needed. She just had to make sure that he knew that and that he'd come here. With that thought in mind, she finished the taiyaki and tea and took it out to her son and his friend. 𝗵𝗵𝗲, hello there, are you Todoroki Rei? 𝗏𝐽 asked as she walked into the hospital room. Officer Sansa right behind her. She had dressed in her best suit and carried her suitcase with her, making sure she was as professional as possible. Yes. The woman was skinny, face slightly gaunt, but her snow-white hair was shiny and her eyes shined with life. She wore the typical hospital outfit and sat on her bed with the blanket over her lap. Can I help you with something? It's not so much what you can do for me, but what I can do for you. 𝗏𝐽 started as she walked forward and pulled the chair from where it sat at a table off to the corner, using her quirk so that she could stay in front of the woman. She noted the flinch at the use of her quirk but did not bring attention to it. My name is Midoriya 𝗏𝐽. I'm a lawyer at the Nishimura and Asahi law firm. I've come to speak with you about possibly testifying against your husband, Todoroki 𝗫𝗍. The charges would be illegal quirk marriage, spousal abuse, possibly depending on your account concerning the subject rape, child abuse, child endangerment, child neglect, unlawful hospitalization, and then second-degree murder of a child. She paused here to take in the confused and pale face of the woman that had been kept in the hospital without any real evaluation or investigation into why she had to be here. She was sure that this was overwhelming and confusing, but 𝗏𝐽 really couldn't be subtle with this, mostly because she wanted to make sure that this man paid for what he had done to his family. It didn't matter what anyone else thought, but she knew that she would not continue if this woman or 𝗬𝗪 refused it entirely. She just needed to make sure that this woman understand what she was here for. I'm sorry boo, but I don't understand. The woman brought a hand up to her face, trying to figure out what this little green-haired woman wanted. Her eyes were filled with fire and determination, making Rei feel like this little woman could really take on her husband. You want to? I wish to take 𝗫𝗪 to court for the abuse of his family. She stated back. I understand this is a lot and that this will take a bit of time to think about. She smoothed her skirt gently as she kept eye contact with the other woman. But I want you to know that I know what happened and that I will do all that is in my power to make sure that the bastard pays for what he's done. Rei could only stare at this woman in shock, unsure of what to say or do. She had never thought that anyone would believe what had happened, mostly because her husband was a hero and number 2 at that. She'd always thought they'd take his side because of his position and had mostly been proven right by the way the hospital staff was always ignoring her when it didn't come to her actual care and health. But this woman had come storming in and was offering a way to make this better in a way that could bring her out of reach of her husband and maybe even save her son. But this could also blow up in her face and burn her, putting her into a much more dangerous position. Can you maybe explain how exactly you would do this? She needed something to be concrete and maybe a plan would do that. A solid plan that would work to save not only herself, but her children as well. She'd already lost one to her husband after all. The woman's eyes shined as a smile graced her face. But of course, we'll start here, she stated as she pulled a huge packet of papers out and placed them on the edge of the bed in reach. 𝗏𝐽 wasn't going to waste any time. They had a lot to go over before their allotted time with the woman was over. 𝗵𝗵𝗲, it was just before the summer camp and after Izuku got out of the hospital after his encounter with Shigaraki. 𝗬𝗪 had been coming to their house at least once a week, if not more, and had become comfortable enough in their home that 𝗏𝐽 felt it was time. Izuku, honey, can you run to the store and get a few things for me? She asked, looking at her son as he wrote in a notebook that 𝗬𝗪 was looking at. She met her son's eyes and he blinked as they held a conversation that was entirely silent. It was only a moment before he nodded and stood up. I'll go with, the dual-haired boy said, moving to stand with the other. Only Izuku shook his head with a smile and motioned for the other to stay seated. He walked over to his mother and took the list and the money before leaving the other boy with his mother. 𝗬𝗪 looked blank once more, unsure of himself as he hadn't really been left with the mother of his friend for a long period of time, so he was unsure of how to act. Now then 𝗬𝗪-chan, we have a few things to talk about. She started as she walked over to him and took her son's spot. The boy blinked at her, silent and contemplative, aware in a way that no child should be. He knew that she had never laid a hand on Izuku, disciplining him by taking things away or putting in a corner, but not once had she ever laid a hand on him. She had made that clear when the topic had come around after the incident with Stain, where she had taken away Izuku's notebooks and access to the news and internet. That didn't mean that it completely registered though, that she would never lay a hand on him or take her anger out on him. That was something they would have to work on, and that was only with time. She didn't mind, and she would go slow with all of her movements, making sure that he could see her hands at all times. You see, I've been to talk with your mother, brother, and sister. 𝗏𝗏 began as she reached over to the coffee table and pulled the file of papers she had left there on purpose earlier that morning. I've convinced your brother and mother to testify against your father, while your sister has refused. Now, I could easily take your father to court with the evidence that I've gathered already, but this would cinch it if you were to testify as well. He could only stare at the woman in front of him, stunned at the information that had just been revealed. He had no clue that this woman had started anything against his father, could hardly believe that someone would dare go against the number 2 hero. This had to be fake, unreal, a trick, something that wasn't real at all. What ... how ... He stopped and frowned, unable to form the sentence he wanted. Izuku told me about what you told him during the sports festival. He was so torn up about it. She began, raising a hand at the stormy look that was starting to appear in the boy's eyes. It was right to tell me. I'm a lawyer, and I normally send villains and criminals to jail alongside the police. People like your father deserve to be in jail. You should have never been put through that, and because my son told me, now we can make sure that you never do again. He's the number 2 hero. How do you even think this'll not get swept underneath the rug? He questioned next, putting aside the feeling of betrayal to instead focus on the fact that he could escape his father. He could get away from him and out from underneath his thumb. But he was famous and in a high position of power. He couldn't see it not being tossed aside, like everything with my mother has been. I won't lie to you. It's very possible the Hero Commission will step in and do just that. 𝗏𝗏 stated calmly. It wouldn't be the first time that they've done that to save face with the public. But if they try, then a leak could always occur. She gave him a soft smile. A video here, a file there, and even a simple statement from your mother to the media. We could even slip in a simple few words from you to make people question your father. Todoroki could only stare at the woman in shock, a shock that he had felt when he had faced her son in the sports festival, and when the other had fought so hard to save him. Now he was seeing this little overweight woman with that same smile and glint in her eyes. He really didn't want to be his father right now. Either way, he had trusted Midoriya to have him in the past, and now he was going to trust his mother to help him once more. Okay, what do you need to know? He got the greatest gift as that soft smile turned into a smirk that spoke of trouble for the number 2 hero in the future. Now, we get an official statement from you, and we'll use the officer I've had on this case to do just that. She spat out expletives once after another, glaring at the TV in front of her and taking in the scene that had been caught on it. Don't get her wrong, she was happy that All Might had defeated that villain. Extremely happy to have defeated a villain that could have killed off her son if they had ever crossed paths. But looking at the hero now, taking in the gaunt and skeletal form of the number 1, she knew that it was the end of his tenure as the symbol of peace, which meant that Endeavor was going to take the number 1 spot, which made her case against him for abuse not only harder, but not highly recommended. It would tear the hero community apart even more than what All Might's retirement was going to do. It could even destabilize the entire system if she wasn't careful about how she did this, which meant she had one real viable option that could both release the child from his grip and save the mother from further abuse. She'd have to make a deal with the hero and pray that he took it. It would be a rather attractive one too, because it would mean he would be allowed to stay a hero and keep his license. But he would be required to relinquish his custody rights of his son over to a responsible adult and to accept the restraining order against his wife. She was trying to convince Ray to go through with a divorce, but so far, the woman was fighting against that, saying that it would go against the contract her parents had with Endeavor and they would no longer receive payment, which 𝗏𝗏 had torn apart in seconds. They agreed to sell you like cattle, she had stated as calmly as possible, ignoring the gasp she got from the woman. They sold you and then left you to suffer the abuse alone. I don't care what happens to them. I'm more concerned about you getting the freedom to do as you please and to live your life once more. If that means leaving your parents and the shit they produced to begin with, then so be it. The woman had burst into tears at that, and it had taken several minutes for 𝗏𝗏 to calm her once more. She had agreed to think about it in the end, which is all 𝗏𝗏 could ask for at this time. Now with the man in the number 1 spot, it would be more dire of a situation, but 𝗏𝗏 was sure she could work with that. She wasn't in one of the best law firms in Japan for no reason. She'd make sure Endeavor did as he was supposed to, or she would completely destroy him, number 1 or not. She stared in astonishment at the woman in front of her. She could not believe what she had just told 𝗏𝗏. Could not believe it at all. It had to be an hallucination or something, because Todoroki Ray did not just say what 𝗏𝗏 thought she had just said. You're kidding, she said after a moment, hand going up to her mouth as she thought about everything she had gathered. I'm sorry, I know you've worked so hard for me and my kids, but I honestly think this is the best, Ray admitted as she twisted her scrub pants in her hands, looking at the vase of beautiful lilies and sunflowers, 2 of her favorite flowers 𝗏𝗏 had learned. He's hurt you and your kids. One of them is even dead, 𝗏𝗏 stated as she looked at the woman in bewilderment. You can't honestly tell me that dropping this case is the best decision you can make for any of you. Ray continued to stare at the flowers before sighing and reaching into her pocket and pulling out a small card, sliding it over to 𝐿𝐭. I can't say that I'll ever really forgive him, but he's already proven that he's willing to change. She huffed as she pulled the card into her hands. It was a standard white card that came with bouquets. Nothing special even if it was a bit bigger than normal. Not even Ray's name on the front in a computer-printed font was special. When she opened it though, the words inside said an entirely different story. Ray, I know I have not been the best husband nor father. I've failed in many ways that were not part of my path as a hero. I've allowed my ego and sense of competition to take me over, and it has affected the family as such. I am no husband. I am no father. No matter what anyone says, I have come to realize my failures in these areas, and I am not asking for forgiveness. I do not deserve that from any of you, you and 𝐬𝐻𝗨 especially. No, what I ask is that you do what is best for you and that you advise the children to do the same. Maybe someday in the future, when we've all grown and healed, we can talk again and get to know each other again. 𝐻𝐸 Todoroki. 𝐿𝐭 let a breath through her nose as she looked up at the woman with a sad eye. This wouldn't happen to have anything to do with what happened against him and that monster a couple of days ago. Ray smiled and shook her head. This is the 10th bouquet he's sent to me, a different note with each one. I think he's just writing his mind on the cards and sending them, because they seem to have something different each time. This one is full of remorse and sadness, something I haven't seen out of him since 𝗬𝗨 died so long ago. Are you sure you wish to discontinue the suit though? 𝐭 pressed gently. She knew what it was like feeling unsure and indecisive. It was one of the many reasons why she was still married to Hisashi after all this time apart. Yes, I wish to discontinue my part in the suit. Ray nodded firmly. I want to give him another chance to hopefully become my husband once more. I won't stop the children though. I won't stop 𝗬𝗨 from taking his own closure or escape. If he wants to continue, I won't stop it. 𝐭 looked at the other woman for a long time, trying to decide if she was truly sincere about her decision. In the end, she could only sigh and nod her head. I understand. Know that if you want to continue with any of the procedures in the future, we will always be here to help. Thank you, Midoriya-san. I appreciate all you've done for me, and I hope we can continue our relationship into a friendship in the future. 𝐭 already knew that she was going to bring Mitsuki and knew that the other mother would help put a spine of steel into this broken one. Of course we can. She nodded with her own smile. How about we start by telling each other about our children? She could only smile as Ray's eyes lit up at that and began to tell stories about all of her children while listening to 𝐭's own. This might not have gone the way she wanted, but at least she had gained another friend. That was always a win in the end. She was pouting. She had gotten a phone call from 𝗬𝗨-chan while he was at the dorms with Izuku, after he had gained his license and was going to intern with his father. He didn't want to go through with the suit, and with the two biggest hitters for the case calling out, it was not longer viable. She had evidence of the treatment, but without their testimonies, even with Natsuo's, it would never win. So she had to put the case away until they either changed their mind or more evidence showed up and she didn't need their testimony. Until then, the case was going to be pushed to the shadows, and 𝐭 would just have to suffer with the knowledge that the hero would get away with all that he did. Come on, Mom. You know the other parents and teachers are going to want to talk with you, Izuku said with a smile as he looked at his mother. It had been a while since they had seen each other because of the dorm system and classes. Then add in her job and there was hardly any time to see her baby. Now, she gets to see not only her child but several of his friends and 𝗬𝗨-chan as well. Also, all my friends want to see you again. I know, sweetheart, I know. Just things at work aren't going my way and I got distracted by it, she explained calmly and waved him off as they continued their walk to the Alliance Heights dorms where all of Class 1 and their parents would be. Their homeroom teacher and All Might would be there to speak with. He gave her a concerned look at the mention of look, knowing how obsessed she could get. He got his obsessive tendencies from her after all, not his father. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I don't want you to hurt yourself while diving into your work. She tended to do that when a massive case came her way, doing all she could to make sure that she won. I am, dear, no worries. Now, you'll have to introduce me to some of your classmates and their parents before I speak with Aizawa and All Might. Her son smiled and agreed, opening the door to his dorm and into a loud and chaotic living room. The two dove into the chaos with smiles on their faces, and 𝐭 had no problem socializing with the adults, getting to know the parents of the other children easily and greeting some of the kids she recognized. She even managed to pull Mitsuki away from almost killing a purple-haired woman in a yellow dress that was staring at men and women like they were pieces of meat. She wouldn't want her friend to kill someone in front of heroes. She'd rather do it where no one could witness it and they could hide the body easily. It was all going well, so much in fact that she was able to convince Aizawa to tell her about Izuku, Katsuki, and 𝗬𝗨, even standing in as a parental figure for 𝗬𝗨 since his own couldn't attend the meeting at the moment. At least, that's what they thought before the heat of the building increased and a familiar face appeared in the doorway. 𝗵𝗲𝗏 looked unsure for a moment before his face took on the ever-stoic features he used while as a hero. He was missing the flaming features and was dressed in a casual blue long-sleeve shirt and dark black jeans, and wearing boots. The entire room fell silent as all the parents stared at the #1 hero in awe. At least until the sound of heels hitting the floor caught their attention and they all turned to watch the short, pudgy, and kind green-haired woman march right up to the man. They all stood there as they watched her come to a stop in front of the much taller man and held a hand up towards him. They didn't expect anything to happen, but then the front of his shirt seemed to bunch up, like a fist had wrapped into it. Then they all gasped as his face turned shock and he was pulled downwards, forced to one of his knees, or otherwise his ass would be sticking up in the air, while the bunched up shirt part was slammed into the woman's hands. 𝐭𝐸 ignored the audience behind her as she met the man's eyes, a scowl on her normally kind face. "Now listen here, you sad excuse for a hero," she started, tugging on the shirt when it seemed like the flame here was about to speak. "I know exactly who you are and I know exactly what you've done." He blinked at her, unsure of what to say as he was faced with the fury of a woman he didn't even know. "I don't even," he began, but was silenced once more when she tugged harshly on his shirt. "I have files and evidence that proves the abuse you've put your children and wife through, not to mention the excessive force you've used on criminals and villains in the past. I can have you completely disgraced and destroyed before you can even blink." That caught his attention as his eyes darted over her shoulder and up to where he could see his son standing next to the green-haired boy that had told him off during the sports festival. His eyes were brought back to the woman as she began to speak again. "But luckily for you, Ray and 𝗪𝗪-chan have both asked me to leave it alone because you've apparently pulled that stick out of your ass and realized you were being an asshat." He gulped as he realized how much trouble he could have been in if he hadn't decided to change and improve. He's lucky that he decided to try and change. Otherwise he was sure that this little woman would have destroyed what little he had left of his family. He was cut off again as she yanked the shirt harshly. "Know this though, the moment you step out of line again and hurt them or they decide to pick up the suit once more." Her face turned dark and her eyes glowed with a type of danger he hadn't seen in a very long time. "I will completely destroy you and your career. No one will be able to speak the name 𝗵𝗲𝗏 without disgust and hate." She let his shirt go and straightened up, ignoring how she had the #1 hero on his knees and he still towered over her. "Now then, if you understand, I suggest you go and greet your son and speak with his teacher about his progress. I'm sure you'll be proud of him." With that, she walked away as if nothing had happened. It was silent for a very long moment until someone spoke up. "I don't know where she came from, but that woman is a complete badass." Mitsuki cackled as she watched her best friend come to a stop in front of her son and the two-toned boy, a sweet smile placed back on her face. "That's Midoriya & Co., and you better take my advice in avoiding her fury, because she will completely destroy you if you get it turned onto you." She looked over to where her own son was completely pale and shaking, most likely remembering his own confrontation with the mother. "She's one woman you don't want to piss the fuck off." And all of Class 1 would aspire to avoid doing just that as they watched the #1 hero struggle to get back to his feet, face pale and sweat covering his forehead. The only ones who saw Todoroki Xiaodo smile back at 𝗏𝗏 like she was a god was 𝗏𝗏 herself and her giggling son. The pain that 𝗵𝗏𝗏 had created couldn't be undone and 𝗏𝗏 knew this, but she could make sure that the man never made a move to harm anyone that wasn't a villain again. She would hold all of the evidence over his head for the rest of his life, especially if it kept that odd and astounded look on Xiaodo-chan's face and kept the boy from further harm. Toxic thoughts. This is absolute bullshit, he shrieked as he flumped down onto the couch that was situated in front of Hound Dog's chair. "This is shitty Deku's fault. I just know it." "No, this is all your own fault actually," the pro growled out as he took a seat on the armchair he had brought in so that he was on level with those who came into his office. His desk was only there for him to do his paperwork, not to speak with the students and other heroes that came to see him. Having that degree in psychology was something he would never regret getting. The blonde glared at the muzzled hero, trying to make sense of those words in a way that would make sense to him. Like, he had never been told that it was his fault and that it was everyone else's own. Which, honestly, Hound Dog was sure that was exactly what had happened. He had read the files on both boys, trying to figure out how he was going to help both get to a place they needed to be a hero. Just from this minute interaction with the boy, he realized it would be a long road ahead for him. "You see, the way you've treated Midoriya since you've entered this school has been less than acceptable." He leveled up the pad in his hand and held it out towards the boy. He knocked it aside, ignoring the security of the battle training with All Might and the other extras, of the snarls and growls in the hallways, and the shouting towards all those around him. "I don't give a shit about your fucking opinion. You should, because it'll be my opinion on whether you stay here in you or get expelled." That shut Bakugo up and the boy glowered. "You see, you're here for anger management, to learn to control and direct that excess energy into something more productive than bullying another student." "It's not bullying." That had the blonde up on his feet with a snarl on his face. "I've never once bullied anyone in my fucking life." "Then what do you call your interactions with Midoriya?" The pro hero leaned back in his seat and watched the other, wondering what all he could glean from the teen as he raged. Maybe he would even figure a way out for these conversations to go and get him in a position that was better. Putting the shit stain in his place was the snarl given, and that made something in the pro clench tightly, remembering muzzles and leashes wrapping around his mouth and neck to keep him in his place like the animal he was. He brought himself out of it so that he could look the blonde in the eye. And what place would that be? Below those with quirks in power, with the dirt and shit where he's sniveled since we were kids. The venom that was spat out just made Inui's skin goose pimple. Midoriya has a quirk though. He can rival you in power even. He knew this. He had seen the footage of the kid leaping and jumping with his new control of his quirk. Even before that, he had seen the power the quirk had done during the sports festival. Fucking Deku was quirkless for the first fucking 14 years of his shitty useless life. He was the damned stepping stone I used to get where I am now. So you used him to be a bully? Got it. He stated calmly as he made notes on the emphasis on quirklessness. He'd have to address the discrimination there, but first, he had to do something else. Derail the temper tantrum that was brewing. Tell me, Bakugo, what do you think therapy is? He was genuinely interested in this question, but also knew that he needed to trip the kid up, keep him from raging. Switching topics rapidly normally worked pretty well. And it did. It caused the teen to stall for a solid 20 seconds before huffing and falling back on the couch. To change me, make me into something I'm not. His mind shifted towards Best Jeanist, the hero he had interned with. The man had tried to forcibly change him, and he was pretty sure that therapy would do the same thing. Change what about you though? Your personality, your likes, dislikes, or maybe just the way you act entirely. Is that what you think will happen? He leaned forward, watching the teen as he fidgeted. You think I'm here to correct everything that is wrong with you? He did the air quotations around the word to make sure the other knew there was more to it. Isn't that what I'm here for? For you to fix the fucking shit that the damn hobo hates about me. He leaned back on the couch and man spread with his arms crossed over his chest. It was a defensive position and move, to get away and protect himself. He had seen the teen be nothing but defensive and ready for a fight since he stepped into the room. No, I'm not here to rewrite your entire personality. He chuckled at the disbelieving look from the teen before continuing. Your personality is something you were born, grew, and developed on your own for the most part. I can't change the fact that you might like katsudon instead of a meat bun. I can't change the fact that your favorite color might be red instead of yellow. Your personality is what makes you who you are, and it's not something I want to change. Then what is the fucking point of me being here if it's not to change me? That's the question, now isn't it? No, I'm not here to change you on a personal base. I'm here to help you learn to control your emotions and how to emit them safely for yourself and those around you. I don't do feelings. Inui gave a snarled smile at the snarled frown given to him. Well, you are now, or you can leave now, including leaving you. The boy stayed where he was. Now, we'll start with that anger of yours and go from there. I told you to write a letter explaining your feelings, not to confront him about them and try and apologize. Inui could only stare incredulously at the blonde kid in front of him. How could a kid take his advice and do the exact opposite of what he said? I thought I'd just get straight to the point of the problem. He growled out with a shake of his head. How'd I supposed to know he'd react like that? You'd know if you'd listened to anything I explained last time I talked to you. Yeah, well, apparently it was all bullshit anyways. 'Cause he just fucking hates me more than before. The pro sighed as he rubbed his forehead. This was supposed to be a meeting about what had happened with the league, but the kid seemed hardly affected by that and more what had happened between him and Midoriya. Though he commended Bakugo on trying to fix things by apologizing, it was neither the time nor the right way to do so. Look, what you said isn't the truth. It was. Bakugo growled back as he paced back and forth in front of him. It was my truth that I wanted to give the shitty nerd. It may be a truth, but it wasn't the full truth. He stressed as the blonde turned those angry crimson eyes on him. We've barely touched on this since we've only had a couple of meetings, but you can't honestly tell me you did all that just to protect him. There were much better ways to go about it than that, and you know it. He held his ground as he met the kid's glare head on, waiting to see if he would submit or fight. The kid eventually grumbled and settled back into his seat with his arms crossed. Fuck you, he sighed with that shake of his head. Yeah, now let's see if we can't get to the truth of the matter of this and figure out how you're going to handle it from there. So, your mother ... when did she start hitting you? Inui huffed out as he looked at his notes. The dorms had been built and the teachers had all given him reports on the students and their parents. It was all written down in their files, and Bakugo was no different. Fuck you, the old hag never laid a goddamn hand on me. The snarl ripped out of the blonde. The way the explosions ripped through the air caught the pro hero's attention almost immediately. His shoulders were hunched forward with the palms of his hands facing outwards, towards the counselor, so he knew how defensive this was going to make this kid. Oh, not even once. He had thought that was what Aizawa had meant when he said the kid had been abused. There was more than one type of abuse, of course, but with the reaction he was providing, he was worried there was more to it. With the way you're acting at the moment, you would think that she had. Crimson eyes narrowed at that, unsure of how to respond. Though in truth, the hag had hit him before, on several occasions. Though most didn't leave a mark, there had been a few that had. Mostly those from when he had been hit by that fucking wooden spoon or unable to duck the plates or bottles thrown at him. When he got older, he got faster and able to dodge all of them later. He had taken the slaps easily enough, as they didn't leave a mark on him anymore. Between just having built up a tolerance and the capabilities of nitroglycerin on a person's skin, his skin was smooth all around now. Not even punches from training could leave marks anymore, wiped away by his quirk. Only hits hard enough to break his jaw or knock a tooth out would leave a mark. So really, those slaps he got from the hag now were next to nothing. What's that got to do with anything? He growled, and knew he could have smirked at the dodge. As amateurish as it was something he would allow, especially since he was going to lead this meeting in a more school-like subject. Have you ever heard about nature versus nurture debate? Those crimson eyes narrowed further as the teen leaned forward subconsciously, unsure of where this conversation was going to go. Isn't that some piece of shit for psychologists? Yes, it's part of psychology, correct, but there is more to it. He tilted his head as he thought about how to explain this topic and how the blonde would take it. The debate is mostly about how genetic or learned influences affects an individual's behavior. Like, how I might have inherited my mom's hair while my skin is affected by sun. He wasn't in the top 5 for nothing. He could take a new subject and convert it in a way that he would understand in only a moment's notice. Something like that, yes, but in this case, it's based on how you might be naturally intelligent and analytical from your father's side, a genetic inheritance known as nature. Then there is how your mother might yell and curse and you've picked that up from her, or a learned behavior that leans towards nurture. He set the clipboard to the side so he could lace his hands together and leaned forward himself. The blonde himself was chewing on his lip as he thought it over. Why is it a debate? That was something that was bugging him. Why was it a debate when both sounded rather likely? His behavior was inherited in a way, a short temper that resembled his mother, but he also knew he had his father's analytical mind. But he also knew that he cursed and yelled more because his mother yelled and cursed in front of him. So both had a strong stance and could be right. Well, that would be because not everyone agrees. He tilted his head and thought. When taken to the extremes, some think it's because of nature, a prewiring of sorts in a person's mind that makes them the way they are. Like how some argue that a pedophile is hardwired to like children or how a sociopath is wired to lack emotional responses. They'll blame a lot of things on genetics and try and weed things out that way. He tapped his hands on his knee to gather his thoughts. Others believe that it is all learned behavior from their surroundings. Like a child learns to be kind from their parents while others learn to be mean when they are under abuse from those around them. That's how killers and murderers are made, as well as rapists, con artists, and villains. They are all a product of how they're treated and taught from their surroundings. But that doesn't make any damn sense. Bakugo growled as he ran a hand through his hair. If it was all genetics, then 𝗧𝗵𝗲 would be a piece of shit like his father, or 𝗧𝗵𝗲haired would have gone into cooking instead of heroics. He teach-headed the thought. But then again, if it was all from the shitty surroundings, then Deku would have been a jackass as bad as I am, or even worse. And there lays the problem. Neither are right nor wrong. They hold strong stances and sound reasoning as long as they aren't taken to the extreme. Both are right in the sense that you are affected by an extent, but that they aren't the told all be all. He watched as the blonde thought over the information. So, for your homework assignment, I'd like for you to start a notebook and write down behaviors you have that could be either learned or inherited. I'd also like for you to take your time and really think on it, from childhood to now. The teen's brows furrowed at the thought before huffing angrily. Whatever. He had a few extra notebooks, so he would go ahead and do that. Be truthful about all your behaviors, Bakugo. I want you to go over everything, from your temper, intelligence, pride, and ego. Everything. Don't hold back. He made sure to end it with a growl of warning. Yeah, I got it, you stupid mutt. I'll fucking think it over. And knew he could only hope that the teen would take this seriously. I heard about the licensing exam. You failed. Fucking hell. I know that already. Fuck you and that shitty exam. And knew he raised a brow at the explosive blonde. He knew the blonde would take this hit to his ego hard, just like he had written in his notebook that he had gone through. The blonde was used to always doing things right the first time, always being first, always being praised. At school hadn't done him any favors. Not that Bakugo had fully realized it yet, but he was getting there. Have you thought about why you failed the exam? On that shitty piece of paper, it was because of rude mannerisms while rescuing and telling civilians to save themselves. Fucking hell, it's such a shitty reason to fail. The blonde was raging and explosions were popping from his hands, but they were smaller than normal. That made the pro want to laugh, which he held back, because that was so Bakugo. The student would do that, and most likely in the rudest way possible as well. He wished he could get the tapes to that and see how it actually went down, because he was sure that there was more hilarious content to it than he thought. Either way, he'd leave that for later. It was best to start on the topic for today. Do you think any of the learned behaviors is at fault here? or because of your inherited ones. Right back to the nature versus nurture topic, something he really wanted Bakugo to focus on so they could separate the good from the bad. Probably the impatience, he grumbled as he scowled down at his lap, arms crossed over his chest. And the fucking temper. He scoffed at that and stamped a foot. Impatience is learned and my temper is inherited. He hadn't always been impatient. He had used to waited for Deku to speak all the time, his stutter making his sentences twice as long as needed. It had all disappeared once he got his quirk and was given anything he wanted almost instantly and didn't need to wait. He got his temper from his mother, who was just a naturally angry and rude person, much like Katsuki had become. Good. Now, we're going to explain why those things weren't the best things to lean towards in that situation. The blonde grumbled and lowered his head. It was either he wasn't sure how to phrase it or because they didn't understand why it was a bad thing. Which would be his guess. He had been given the files from Nezu on both Midoriya and Bakugo. He knew the two's class and the way they were treated in middle school thanks to the investigation done by the principal. The boy growled before huffing. The impatience didn't help because a hero has to be calm. They have to understand that civilians aren't used to long treks and so could be slow, especially when injured. He let his head tilt to the side as he continued. The temper is generally bad because you can't be frustrated with civilians, let alone when out in a battle. You could make a mistake or injure someone. Both are good observations, yes. Along with the impatience and temper, your quick observations and sharp tongue are also bad in that situation. Most civilians require soft words and comfort. Then observations are good, but you can't jump to conclusions based off a few seconds. Yes, making quick decisions are important on the field, but don't use the information to build a conclusion you like. They might not have been horribly injured, but they might not have had the pain tolerance to continue on with those injuries or could have had internal injuries you couldn't see. For once, the blonde nodded his head in understanding. He could see that those qualities, while sometimes good, are not always the best. Now, I want you to work on improving those qualities in a way to benefit you. And you placed the notebook. He had already gone over the notes inside, back in front of the boy. This notebook will remain with you and I will no longer be looking inside of it. This is for you to reflect on the day and your reactions to situations. He gave the teen a stern look. Think it over carefully with each situation when you write it down. Think about when you write it down and what other options you could have done. The teen huffed with a couple pops of explosions but nodded his head. Fucking fine already. He nodded and gave out a happy growl. Now, let's try some meditation techniques to try and control that temper of yours. I said write the things down in a notebook. Not get in a fight with the person you were sent to therapy for. And he couldn't help but howl as he sent a glare at the bandaged up student. Fuck you, I needed to fight shitty nerd. Bakugo glared right back at the canine, growling right along with the dog's own. He fucking knew things I needed to damn well know, you shitty mutt. I don't give a care. You threw everything we've talked about to the side and did exactly something I would frown upon. Not to mention could have gotten you expelled if Aizawa wasn't being lenient. He howled again as he slammed his hand down on the table between them. You have taken nothing I've given you and used it to improve. I should just expel you now. That made the teen paused as he stared in horror at the pro hero. He apparently hadn't thought that this could show that he was making no progress despite it only being about a couple months. He should have made somewhat of an improvement, but instead, he tossed it all to the side. Hound Dog huffed a deep breath as he flopped back into his chair, rubbing at his forehead to try and get rid of the headache that was popping up. Why would you confront him like that? I've given you tools to help deflect poor decisions, but you used none of them. You allowed your emotions to control you in a way that was similar to your middle school years. That made the teen startle as he snapped to look at the mutt. The fuck do you mean my middle school years? The principal started an investigation into your middle school not too long ago, to find out why Midoriya is the way he is. He rolled his shoulders. We've noticed worrying behaviors from both you and Midoriya, so the investigation began. The things we've uncovered so far ... they're ... well, more unsettling than I thought it would be. The blonde shifted, but he refused to sit back down. Instead, he stayed standing as he watched the pro hero heave heavily, as if he was being crushed beneath a weight that no one should bear. Thinking about his middle school years and comparing to what he had learned and been told was acceptable here in UA, well, he could understand the weight. He hadn't been the greatest person in middle school, and he did recognize that fact now, especially since he had friends, at least, he thought they were. Shitty hair, raccoon eyes, knockoff Pikachu, and soy sauce face were all individuals that he didn't see as extras. They always had his back and called him out on his shit, even when he got angry. So he could recognize the way he acted in middle school wasn't the way he should have done, but there was little he could do now. Give me a reason why I shouldn't just call you a lost cause now. The hero sat up and stared at the child in front of him, watching as his head lowered and his fists clenched tightly at his side. He could hear the teen clenching and grinding his teeth. The smell of burnt sugar filled the air around them. If the blonde lost control now, he'd just expel him and be done. He was not about to be attacked by a brat that thought he was better than a pro. But then the smell dissipated, didn't completely disappear, but it lessened. He watched as the teen fell back into his seat and his hands fell to the side limply. His eyes were just staring up at the ceiling as his entire body read exhausted. I can't give you a reason. He spoke a moment later. I know that I've been an asshole. There's no denying that, especially after last night. The silence grew between the two for several moments, worrying the pro despite his anger. But I thought I was getting a little better, was whispered out. I still lash out and I can't really figure out my emotions all that well. But I don't feel like ... like I hate everything. That pinged something in Inui and his eyes narrowed at the teen. What do you mean by that, hate everything? The teen scowled as he refused to look at the brow, probably so that he could get his thoughts in order or just to hide his emotions, which he was prone to do no matter what the pro said. I don't know when it started, but all I really remember growing up is just hate. I've hated people for as long as I can remember. It didn't matter who it was, my parents, classmates, teachers, and even fucking Deku and Auntie. I've just always just hated them. And you can't remember when this started or why. This was something he could work with, something that they could unravel and maybe even make a breakthrough with this kid. This could be the reason he stayed. A shrug was his answer. All I know, it was before I turned 4. Fucking started screaming my shitty head off at everything then. This was something he would have to research, but Inui now had a theory that could end up helping the teen out. It was something he himself had gone through as a child, but by no means gave an excuse for the other. It was something that attributed to his attitude. Nothing more than that. I see. I think we'll end this here for today. I want you to write in your notebook about your fight with Midoriya, the emotions and thoughts you had and the actions that coincided with them. I'm not expelled then. The blonde finally looked back at his therapist with raised brows. He obviously thought it was the end for him here. That's right. You'll stay enrolled in UA until I say otherwise. Not even Aizawa will be able to kick you out unless I give the okay. So I suggest continuing these sessions to help you continue your road to heroism. TCH, fine, whatever you say, you damned mutt. He took the smirk sent his way and gave a low gravelly growl in return. So. He sat in his chair, staring at the child in front of him. It had taken much too long to get the teen in here, and it was a concern, especially with what had recently just happened with a possible work study. What questions do you have about what exactly therapy involves? The emerald eyes that took him in were narrowed, and Inui shuddered at the way he was being broken down, because there was no way that stare meant anything else. He had seen it on Netsu one too many times to not believe that that's what was happening. Are you going to make me talk about everything? No, he instantly denied as he leaned back in his chair. This is a place for you to talk about the things that you're comfortable doing so. I will not force you to talk about anything, though I will attempt to bring it up to speak about. If you are uncomfortable about talking about something, then all you have to do is tell me. The green-haired teen watched the pro for a very long moment, assessing his words and the truth to them. It almost made the dog-like hero bare his throat in submission, an instinct that had been unfortunately built into him when he came into the employment of Netsu. All right then, where should we start then? Inui smiled as he leaned forward, clasping his hands together as he settled his elbows on his knees. How about we start by getting to know each other? My name is Inui and I'm terrified of leashes. The greenette blinked in surprise before giving a tentative smile back at the man. I'm Izuku and I'm scared of fireworks. It wasn't going to be easy, and Inui knew this as he began the first session with Midoriya Izuku, but he felt that he could help this child and his counterpart, because both kids deserved a chance to heal and to grow, no matter their circumstances or pasts.